Sword of Coming Chapter 871. 17,000 word chapter. The next small chapter will be updated later and must be uploaded in the early morning. When Qin Pingan was young, he once sighed that Aquarius was too big, but it turned out to be only the smallest continent in the world. But for a monk of the 14 realms, the land of one continent was as small as his own courtyard. Those who have attained Taoism travel far away in the wind, with a bird's-eye view of the world, with a panoramic view of all oddities. I once saw a monk sitting cross-legged under a waterfall to enter the concentration, with his hands folded under the sun, like a golden arhat. A bird leaned low and swept, and the tip of its wings cut through the surface of the pond ripples. In the courtyard of the wealthy family, there is a large magnolia tree, and a woman is leaning on a railing to admire the flowers. She may be silently thinking of a certain sweetheart, with a raised eaves and flowering branches, secretly holding hands. The mountains in the small country of the Dali clan, the mountain roads are steep, the bearers who lift the sliding poles, and the female family members of the guests who walk like flying, and take the sedan chair to climb the mountain are blindfolded and miss the great scenery along the way. In a water town, there is a girl in a lotus skirt on the side of the road, barefoot, carrying embroidered shoes, walking on tiptoes. A wealthy young man with hundreds of slaves drove a mountain and dredged a lake in a secluded place where the mountains and rivers and spirits have fallen and there is no fill. There was Gao Shi drunk lying in the pavilion in the mountain, and suddenly white clouds came outside the cliff pavilion. He raised his glass high and threw it out of the pavilion. Gao Shi was drunk with dim eyes and said loudly, saying that there are 9 water-stubborn rocks lying on the mountain, and I don't know how many thousands of them. 4,000 of years, Bai Yun under this pavilion has provided the most refining methods. Seeing this beautiful scenery, I am grateful. There are several fairy masters riding the cranes, among them the delicate young people wave their whisks, making the white clouds flying around like chaotic snow, and the smiling girls on the side like flowers. In a deep and secluded mountain, there was a 2-foot-tall goddess of mountain goddess. She was walking on the corridor with her skirts swaying on the ground. Behind her were 2 rows of virgin boys and girls who died and were gathered by her after their deaths. An unclear peak, the mountain is steep and slender like a carp's back, the whole mountain is like a knife chopped on the chopping board. On the edge of the cliff at the end of the mountain trail, there was a lonely courtyard built with white walls and tiles, a patio for waters, and only an ancient pine rooted in the cliff nearby. But more, it was the ruins of those cities and towns. It has been many years since the war ended, but it still hasn't been able to restore its former appearance. In the mountains and rivers of the half-continent, there are 2 different things, except for the old cliff-engraved books on the mountain and countless brand-new epitaphs under the mountain. Previously in Dali capital, the imperial examination by Chao Qingqing was named Xuanhuan in the same year. He worked at the Hongfu Temple in Nangsanfang and helped Qin Pingan get some recent imperial residence papers. Qin Pingan went to several places recorded in the Dibao according to the picture. Most of them just stayed for a while and left after reading. In Yuzhang County, which is full of towering trees, whether it is used to build mansions or as coffins, it is of first-class wood. Needless to say, Qin Pingan saw a group of wood thieves fighting in the mountains armed with officials. And there are countless looms in Wuzhou, which is known as the Cocoon Mountain. A Jilua courtyard has been completed, and the official plaques are all hung up. It has been fully budgeted in less than a month, which is enough to show the speed of the various government orders issued by Dali. At the boundary of Yunzhou of Huangting State, I saw that stream. As expected, it was really the entrance to the ancient Shu Kingdom's Dragon Palace ruins. The water quality of the stream was excellent. If it was clear, Qin Pingan chose a spring and drew dozens of caddies of water. I took a trip to the Dragon Palace site again, ignoring the ancient restrictions such as entering the land of no one, entering it earlier than the Dali Geomancer, and ascending first, but Qin Pingan did not take away the few treasures of the immortal family. It was a mountain and river tour. The earliest lotus roots in Tonggishao, and later the Xianfu ruins in Luzhou, Beiju, encountered the old master of the Taoist temple in Donghai and Daochang, son of the Daxuandu temple. Qin Pingan is now looking at this kind of immortal, it's really a bit embarrassing. There is also an official of the Ministry of Industry of the Dali companion capital named Li Chue on the Dibao. The family has been a hydraulic engineer for generations. He carefully drew a guide map, involving the diversion of more than a dozen Dadu vassal rivers. Unexpectedly, the Dali court has dispatched a Qintian superintendent who is proficient in misunderstandings to investigate whether this matter is feasible. For the gods of mountains and rivers, there are also natural disasters and man-made disasters. In a great battle, the entire southern part of Aquarius continent lost countless landscape gods, and only then did the civil and military heroicine spirits from all over the continent, mountains and rivers, make up a large number of city gods and landscape gods at all levels. The diversion of the river is a huge disaster for the gods of mountains and rivers along the way. It can cause the gods of mountains and rivers to suffer floods, flood their golden bodies, and the gods of water suffer drought and expose themselves to the sun. The golden body and temples, under normal circumstances, can't walk, and migration is as difficult as climbing to the sky. There are temples and temples empty, and without the incense on earth, they will be cancelled from the Golden Jade genealogy by the court according to the law, and they can only be reduced to xianxia. Then you can only endure hardships, at least temporarily borrowing incense from the neighboring city gods, not to mention that you have to borrow. Therefore, in the xianxia officialdom, I have always preferred to be the county goddess with extremely limited powers, rather than the landscape subordinates who clearly restrain the lesser mountain gods and the rivers of Hebo and Hippo. An old man with the appearance of a farmer, with a sturdy figure and a tan skin, is like an old village man facing the lust with his back to the sky, squatting on the long embankment by the river now, sighing and sorrowing. There was a young man sitting on the side, placing a bamboo mat with a xuanhuan pattern, and gently swaying the folding fan. The bamboo fan had a similar pattern to the bamboo mat. The young man's skin was a bit sickly white, as if he had been hiding in the study all the year round. A scholar who doesn't get exposed to the sun. The two stayed together. Their ages were very different, and their appearances were in sharp contrast, like a piece of white tofu placed together with a piece of charcoal. The old man said, "Looking back, I will talk to Master Lu from the Department of Dui Dali, and see if I can ask for some mercy and help hand over a copy." The young man shook his head, speaking straightforwardly like a stunned young man who couldn't figure out what's good or bad. "It's just a principal, not a capital official, so I can't speak." The old man said, annoyed, "Who are the lords of the princes? Can you climb high? Just like the little gods like us who are in charge of the mountain and water boundaries of small mountains and small rivers, the Chief Lu is already the biggest official I know. It's better to be a dead horse doctor than to wait for death here." The so-called Longguan refers to the Longzhong and Yuanwai Lang, who are the chief and auxiliary officials of the Ministry of Rites. For these gods of mountains and rivers who are not very popular, they are the great masters of the heavenly officials inside the yamen. The young man smiled indifferently. If the gods are going to marry, what can be done is to admit her fate. The change of course, regardless of self-interest, is indeed beneficial to the people's livelihood. The old man threw a stone into the river and said dully, "The emperor is not in a hurry." The young man was still calm and calm. "Who made you my friend?" The old man turned his head and glanced at him and said softly, "Here is a trainer who is face to face. He can't see the real level. At first glance it looks like a sevuing state." The young man glanced at the approaching foreigner, in a blue shirt, long coat and cloth shoes, breathing long while walking, and he was not a mundane master at first glance. The gods of the world are good at looking for breath, and they can often tell who is better than a monk. Whether or not it is a gash trainer, as to whether you can see the depth of Taoism at a glance, it depends on the height of a golden statue of a deity. The young man folded his fan and smiled and said, "I advise you not to go to the hospital in a hurry. Besides, the rivers here have been diverted, and a total of 6 river tributaries have been abandoned. This is a great thing for you, the mountain god, so don't worry about it. You have annexed the old waters under my jurisdiction, as if the water does not flow into the fields of outsiders." The other mountain gods and land princes in the vicinity are now eagerly waiting for the Ministry of Rites and Engineering Department to start blaspheming and diversion. As for those river gods and the low-ranking Hippo, they are resigned to their fate. Although the courtesy that accompanied the capital, the officials of the two ministries promised that the Dali court would arrange a retreat, but they were afraid that it was just a scene. Once they turned their faces and refused to admit it, who would they complain to? The veteran cried out, "What a good thing, the site is big, there will be more rights and wrongs, not to mention that it was originally belonged to the jumping river. I am so upset. As soon as you leave me alone. Whatever the matter, help you guard the tomb. You were a senior official before you were alive, but at any rate I was also a marquis and a beautiful posthumous post. How come I can't take the turn of Lao Tzu to guard the tomb for Tai Futsen? You really think you are the emperor?" The young man persuaded, "Even if the incense on earth is cut off, the family properties that I have saved, plus I will borrow some incense from you in the future, your pile of yunling will be a waste guest who can only eat and not work. It is estimated that it will not be difficult to make another one. You have to think so, the ordinary master under the mountain, 60 years is almost a lifetime, so what can I complain about?" The green shirt stopped, clasped his fist and smiled. San Xiao Chao Mo, I have seen Doshan God in Dayunling. The man surnamed Chao, who claimed to be xianxia, turned his head and looked at the young man. This must be the Tsinhibo who jumped into the Po River. Dayunling mountain god Do was flooded, and he was named a Ho before his death. He has served as county town god, and mountain god here. In Dayunling there is a fairy illusion that the immortal soars up and down the market. Bo, Sun Wenxian, who jumped into the Bo River, had served as a transshipment agent during his lifetime. He was the abbot of a country's water transport and dredging and granary construction. The old man smiled and nodded, raised his arms high, and held a fist in return with the fairy master surnamed Chao. I am lucky enough to meet. Yo, the little baby looks young and has a good vision. She recognizes herself and Sun Wenxian, especially her old friends who are notoriously simple. No matter who comes to Diaobo River, they will thank guests behind closed doors. Jianghu Zhengshan is still big. Tsinhibo was still pretending to be deaf and dumb, and Do Yen was helpless. The old fish of Sun Wenxian jumped waves to chew flowers and eat. They are all famous up and down the mountain. The mountain masters who come to fish here are as high-ranking officials as the unique apricot perch and giant green in the river. For hundreds of years, I haven't seen Sun Wenxian close to anyone. If I replaced it with the mountain gods, I had met a few big baskets of rich and noble princesses, and then he became a big pilgrim in her own temple. In fact, there are two places, Dali capital and accompanying capital. Even if many literati and scholars have heard of Diaobo, inside and outside the officialdom, no one dares to abandon the public for personal reasons. In this matter, I have to say a word for Tsinhibo and Diaobo. Words. The green shirt guest looked around and smiled and said, Tsinhibo is as good as external rumors, his temperament is weak, he doesn't care about the amount of incense at all, as long as the Hanoi people do not violate the prohibition, and disdain to manage the landscape. If I remember correctly, the hundreds of thousands of people who have been jumped into the Po River's ends have been around for almost 200 years. There has not been a second-class Jianxia, but two fellow Jianxia backgrounds have appeared intermittently. Mrs. ? In fact, the early jumping of the Po River in the morning is very rich and mellow, whether it is the scenery, the atmosphere, the civil and military luck, and it is well known in the mountains and rivers of many countries. It is just that the years have passed and the dynasties have changed several times. There were no floods on both sides of the strait, and there was no drought in her own waters, so Sun Wenxian stopped taking care of any unnecessary matters. So that Sun Wenxian is still a he-uncle today, otherwise because of the reputation of jumping the Po River and the richness of water transportation, how can she be a water who is honored by the court, and even carried the river on the golden and jade genealogy enshrined by the Ministry of Ritual of that country? Xinjiang is not impossible. Do Yen held back his laughter, suffocated his anger, worked well, and relieved his anger. This kid was cursing well, but Sun Wenxian was originally cursing. Regardless of whether it is the officialdom of the pre-mortem or the officialdom of Shanshui today, what a good thing is that evacuation is light, clean and self-conscious, does not go to the same trend, and does not manage contacts at all. Only now, Do Yen feels sad when he thinks of the situation of his old friend Sun Wenxian. But after listening to the Madame ridicule, Do Yen was a little bit ridiculous. This official statement is a bit detrimental. The gift of a scholarship is similar to a little concubine, compared to the first-class 3 and the second-class scholar. Just like a woman is not the original partner of the main house, of course she is, like a wife and not a wife. Sun Wenxian didn't care when listening to a stranger's implicit sarcasm. After all, it wasn't the kind of swearing on the street, so I didn't understand it. Seeing that the outsider chose a fishing spot, he took out a can of drunk corn that he had prepared for a long time, threw it on the nest, took out a green bamboo fishing rod, touched some snails by the river and hooked it. After that, he started to throw the rod and go fishing. Do Shanshan is a natural warm-hearted, and he can talk a few words with anyone. Master Chow, where is the person from? A native of Dei. This time I went out to travel south, just walk and stroll, stepping on the watermelon peel to wherever it is. It's good to dare. If you come a few days later, you might miss the apricot sea bass and large herring. God Doshan, what do you say? Sun Wenxian coughed slightly. Do Yen was too lazy to pay attention to Tsinhibo's reminder. Instead, he got up and squatted next to the Master Chow. Many waters have already started to relocate. By then, the riverbed will be bare and the apricot flowers on both sides will die. How can we talk about the apricot perch? Qin Pingan nodded and said, as a result, jumping the Po River did suffer a great deal. I was so lucky. Do Yan's heart was cold after hearing the following sentence. Brother Chow, when I see you, I want go in circles with you. I might as well say something to Brother Do. Are you an official of the Ministry of Industry of Dali Capital? On the surface, you are fishing for self-entertainment, but in fact it is an investigation. Mountains and rivers? The officials are not big. My brother sees people's eyesight has always been not bad. Look at your official air. Tut, not small, really not small. You have to start with a master, right? In the future you will be in charge of a master. I don't see a big problem. If I'm not wrong, Brother Chow was born in Cheer Street, Jingqing, and was a young handsome man of the great general, so he served as a monk in the frontier army of Dali. When the battle was over, he took advantage of the situation and transferred from Dallas Iron Cavalry. Serving as an errand in the Ministry of Engineering? Isn't it? Looking at the landscape and appearance of old Brother Chow, he can't be wrong, absolutely can't be wrong, but I don't know whether it is in the U Department of the Ministry of Industry of the capital or the Water Department. The two lords of the Ministry of Industry are in charge of all government and decrees in the world, including rivers and mountains, official posts, bridges and weirs and canals. They are not insignificant. Qin Pingan has never spoken. If this Do Shan went to set up a fortune-telling booth, he would starve to death. Do Yen didn't give up. Brother Chow, if you can give the official of the Ministry of Industry, of course, the master servant will be better. You only need to help pass the sentence, regardless of success or failure. I will come to Daiyunling in the future, and it will be my guest of Do Yen. Qin Pingan shook his head and said, Do Shanshan wants to go wrong. I am not a big official. Do Yen asked in a low voice, is Brother Chow the Qingwu of the great Liqin Tianjin? Qin Pingan still shook his head and quickly caught a bass, grabbed it and gently tossed it into the fish basket. Do Yen clapped his hands and applauded, Brother Chow is lucky. It seems that he is really related to jumping the Bo River. For the sake of friends, this Do Shan god really doesn't want any old face. In fact, in the past, no matter it was a colleague of the Shanshui officialdom, or even the top boss in charge of the landscape of dozens of prefectures and counties, Do Yen, the superintendent of the city god, had never been so humbled and smiled. It was determined that this good-looking Master Chow was an official of the Ministry of Industry from Cheer Street or Ichi Lane, Dali capital. Dali officials, regardless of whether they are big or small, are difficult to deal with. For example, the river diversion, many mountain shrines, temples, rivers and water houses, including Daiyunling, and those who had prepared wines and accompany wine beauties, were not able to send in at the end of the day. Those Dali officials will not be guests at all, but they are still very caring about the specific implementation of their official duties, performing their duties in an orderly manner, and doing things in a very organized manner. What kind of people, what kind of friends? Qin Pingan knew it in his heart and asked in his heart, I heard that Sinhibo has not many friends. Except for the Do Shan there are only a handful. I don't know if there is an old man named Chui among his friends? No. The old man's surname is Chui, he is a pure martial artist. I don't know, I haven't had much contact with people from Jianghu. Qin Pingan continued, the old man Chui once taught me boxing with great care, but he felt that my qualifications were not good, so he was officially confiscated as a disciple, so I can only be regarded as an anonymous boxing apprentice of old Chui. At the Luapa Mountain Bamboo House, the old man never talked about the past with Qin Pingan, like things like Chui Ching and Diabo Wenchen being friends, or the old man chatting with Nuan Shu and others. Qin Pingan passed the right guardian of Luapa Shan. Only by hearing God's whistle blowing can we know it. Strangely speaking, Chui Ching has never had a good face on Qin Pingan's side, but on the side of Nuan Shu and Xiaomi Li he is very amiable. Sun Wenchen was silent for a moment. Master Chao Xian can really joke. On a mountain who has accomplished a lot of cultivation went to practice boxing and learn some martial arts, is it a waste of time and material? Isn't Master Chao afraid that his family and the elders in the mountains complain about not doing their jobs? Obviously, compared with the previous question and answer, this Hebo was more concise and concise. Qin Pingan caught a golden base again, threw his rod into the water again and smiled, there are no elders in the family. As for going up the mountain to practice there are guides, but they also don't have the status of master or apprentice, so he claimed to be a casual cultivator. It's not the younger generation deliberately attacking people. Sun Wenchen smiled and asked, how does it feel to learn boxing for a cultivator? Qin Pingan said softly, learning boxing is not easy, especially Mr. Sio's teaching boxing is so hard that people regret learning boxing. Sun Wenchen sighed. Then it can't be faked. This hidden young official of Dali is mostly really an anonymous disciple of Chui Cheng. Chui Cheng's attitude towards martial arts is exactly the same as his rigorous attitude towards family and academic affairs. Sun Wenchen asked, since Master Chao claims to be an anonymous disciple, Can Chui Cheng's one-piece boxing technique have any success? Chen Pingan smiled and replied, I have a great disciple who is a pioneer in martial arts. He has a better aptitude to practice martial arts. He was lucky enough to be accepted as a direct disciple. It's just that Mr. Chui does not stick to the trivial, and each is considered to be his own generation. Sun Wenxian nodded. It was something Chui Cheng had done. Chen Pingan asked, Mr. Chui will also sing harmony with Sun Hebo's poems? Sun Wenxian smiled and said, Of course Chui Cheng's academic talents are very good, and he can be regarded as a literary scholar. When I first met him, Chui Cheng was still a young scholar who had studied abroad. Do Yin still doesn't know. Chui Cheng's true identity has always been mistaken for the reading seeds of a distinguished family in a small country. Sun Wenxian introduced, Lao Do Master Chao Xian is an anonymous disciple of Chui Cheng. Do Yin questioned, Which Chui Cheng? Sun Wenxian smiled, It's the poor scholar who has to drink with you every time I pass by. Do Yin laughed and said, Oh, it means that little Chui I remember. Why don't I remember? I have seen it a few times, but that little Chui has a high vision only close to Sun Hebo. Every time he only knows to cheat from me. Liqueur. Then Do Shanshan found that the face and eyes of the young official from Dali were a little strange. Do Yin questioned, What's wrong? Don't call him what Xiao Chui shouted. The age difference between the two parties is 200 to 300 years. Is it possible that I have to call him Brother Chui? That's too hypocritical. Chen Pingan stared at the river in a daze. The river is as blue as the sky, the perch is just like hanging in a mirror, and if you are not near the cloud, you are by the side of wine. It turned out to have been young. Just like that old mother. This is an unimaginable thing. Just like Mr. Qi, Chui Cheng and old mothers did to Chen Pingan. Chen Pingan is of Pei Qian, Chao Sunny, and Zhao Shu under them. Li Baoping, Pei Qian, and Li Huai are among the children of Bai Xian and the dumb boy in Qilong Lane. And those children who are still young today might also be seniors who are beyond the imagination of the descendants of Luopishan and the next sect. Probably this is what passed on from generation to generation. Chen Pingan squatted by the river and shook the two bass in the fish basket into the river. After putting away the fishing rod and fish basket, he got up and took out a white bowl from his sleeve, changed his name and said with a smile, Mr. Tsin, in the case of Data's diversion, the younger generation is outside the Dali officialdom and cannot change anything, but is Mr. Tsin willing to take a step back and do not need to replace the Jinshin Temple and Heboshui Mansion, just around here as Yihu and Hebo? The man was speechless. Do Shanshan heard it in a cloud of mist. Sun Wenxian transfers to Huhibo? But where are the lakes within hundreds of miles? Yeah, you want to move mountains to build lakes? Young people really regard themselves as old gods of the five realms, have the supreme magic power to move mountains and seas? 10,000 steps back, even if you can move the unowned remnants of a few mountains, and then dig a large pit from the ground to carry the lake water, where the water comes from, it can't be the bridge that builds the river and the water flows in the sky. Dragging the Po River into the lake? Besides, it's a dry season and the Diaobo River does not have enough water. What's more, if you really want to act so recklessly, the landscape will affect the people on both sides of the strait. This will affect the people's autumn harvest this year. At that time, the Dali court will surely inquire, even if Dali is accompanied by the capital. The Ministry of Industry in Beijing can make an exception. The diversion of rivers is a foregone conclusion after all. Even if the new lake is built, it will still be the embarrassing situation of the unsourced water. The water transport of the lake is deadly, and the waters of the old Tiaobo River. The descendant spirit will never follow Sun Hebo to relocate to a stagnant pool. At that time, Sun Wenxian will still be a lonely person with the burning incense, so what's the point of this move? Young and vigorous, I don't know what to say. But having said that, this kindness is something to be grasped. Sun Wenxian smiled and shook her head and said, Master Chao doesn't need to be so thankless, and he will lose the spiritual energy and official connections in vain. Chen Pingan smiled and said, Roam the younger generation to say something without embarrassment, this matter is not difficult at all, and it is like just a drink at the wine table. Do Shanshan smiled with a heartfelt voice. When Qian looked, does this look and tone look like the pauper Chui Qing back then? The juniors will go back. King Shank took the bowl with one hand, just took a step, and disappeared in an instant, thousands of miles away. Do Yin used the magical powers of a mountain god, and after taking back his mind he was shocked and said, Good fellow, it is no longer in the boundary of Dai Yunling. Soon after wearing the blue shirt, he returned to the Diaobo River, still holding a white bowl but an extra bowl of water. Do Yin was greatly disappointed, the thunder was heavy and the rain was little. How much water can such a big white bowl hold even if the immortal family magic is used? Not as much water as a leaping river, right? What's the picture if you don't want to be near and far? But Xuanhuan looked solemn and asked, Master Chow borrowed water from Dadu? Qin Pingan shook his head and said, run a little bit farther and change the place to fetch water. Xuanhuan asked, but the sea water? Qin Pingan nodded and said, Mr. Tsin can rest assured that although the water is taken near the sea entrance, the younger generation has already gone to the mud to clear it. For the time being, the water is clearer than the river that can't jump, but in the future the water transportation products will not be too bad. This a bowl of water, the amount of water is adequate, enough to support a 300 li days lake. Xuanhuan was speechless. This is called acceptable? Legend has it that ancient immortals have the East China Sea in their sleeves. Do Yan's eyes widened, and he craned his neck to look at the bowl of white water. Isn't the young man bragging and not writing drafts? Qin Pingan handed the white bowl full of water to Xuanhuan, and said with a smile, Mr. Tsin and Mr. Chui met once, and friendship between gentlemen is as pale as water. Xuanhuan was not a pedantic person and took the water bowl openly. After Xuanhuan took the non-heavy bowl of water, Qin Pingan looked at the surrounding landscapes, with his fingers close together without the need for talisman paper, drew arcs and talisman, drew a circle, first to find the territory and then turned his palm. In an instant the mountains and rivers vibrated, and a few miles away from the Qiaobo River at the border with Daiyin Ridge, the boundary of 300 miles sank in an instant, but during the period, all the spiritual beings were shaken by the sleeves of the green shirts, and the clouds were driving fog. Was shaken off to the upper bank of the Qiaobo River, and then gently grasped, the collapsed mountain roots condensed into a mustard seed-sized earth ball, held in Qin Pingan, and once again used his fingers to draw symbols to learn from that fairy hairpin the city and Lu Shen are one person and one symbol. The water characters and the mountain characters are drawn on the bottom of the daking and the earth ball in the hands respectively. In the future, the big lake in Daiyunling will form an embryonic pattern of interdependence between mountains and waters. Superb skill. A river uncle and a mountain god, facing such a method of moving mountains and rivers, are still unheard of, so that the golden bodies of the two landscape gods shook, and their minds swayed uncontrollably. What kind of Master Chow? It is appropriate to say that it is Chow Xianren and Chow Xianjun. Qin Pingan handed the pocket earth ball the size of an apricot to Do Yen, and smiled, Brother Do, meet in Pingshui, it's good to see him and he will ask for a drink later. This mountain character can be placed at the root of the mountain. In the future the rustic will grow, and it will be beneficial to the mountain transport in Daiyunling. As for Daiyunling and the lakes and mountains in the future, there is no need to worry about the conflict between the mountains and the water, only the two will be stable. Do Yen took the weird earth ball that was said to be a mountain character. It was actually a stagger and he almost failed to catch it. The mountain god's face immediately blushed. Do Yen glanced at Tsinhibo, who was holding the bowl easily. He was strange, why only he was the one who made the fool out of it. Qin Pingan said, wait a moment, I have to write a temporary letter, and Brother Lao Do will hand it over to the Dadu Chang Chunhao. I and this old Tiefu river god of water are half of the same town. Today's movement here, maybe Chang Chunhao can help me explain something at the companion capital and the Ministry of Engineering. Between words, Qin Pingan twisted his wrist and took out the pen and paper from his sleeve. The paper was hung in the air and the mist filled with water. It became a mysterious landscape restriction. Qin Pingan quickly wrote a secret letter and wrote it to the man who filled the gap. The content of the letter, Yanghua, the of water of Changchunho, is all polite, which roughly explains the reasons for the changes in the boundary of the Qiaobo River today. The last sentence is the key point. It is nothing but the hope that this Changchunho will be able to do so in the future. Under the premise, take care of the Shenduyan of Daiyunling Mountain. Just like every Daiyue mountain monarch in Hauran-Jiuzhou will also govern many rivers, so the Dada Lord, who is in a high position, has many mountains within his jurisdiction. Qin Pingan finally took out a personal seal, which was printed, Qin 11. He picked up the seal, sighed towards the bottom three characters and put it at the end of the letter. This is the first time that Qin Pingan has used the seal that has been collected for many years to formally seal a letter. In the future correspondence between Luopishan and other mountains, as long as it is the handwritten handwriting of the owner of the mountain, Qin Pingan, either the seal Luopishan Qin Pingan, or this party's, Qin 11. This is the proper etiquette on the mountain. Qin Pingan put the letter in an envelope and handed it to Do Yen. Finally, he clasped his fists and smiled with the two of them. Mr. Tsin, Brother Do, the younger generation is still in a hurry, Don't pass this, the mountains are high and there will be a period of time later. Sun Wenxian and Dou Yen returned the gifts. Dou Yen sighed, Wenxian, this time am drenched in your light. Heaven is great fortune just come. Well-deserved fairy handwriting, understatement created such incredible fairy trails. Sun Wenxian smiled and said nothing. Dou Yen suddenly asked, Huh? Sun Wenxian, do you remember the face of that Chao Xianjun? Sun Wenxian frowned slightly, shook her head and said, I really don't remember. Dou Yen said with emotion, What kind of thing is this? The immortals on the top of the mountain really cannot be guessed by common sense. Sun Wenxian whispered, There is nothing hard to understand, it's nothing more than a gentleman showing kindness without repaying it. If he didn't guess wrong in that letter, the mysterious green shirt guest would definitely ask Changchun Ho Xuanhuan not to leak his words on Dou Yan's side. Dou Shanshan carefully put the mountain character in his sleeve, wiped his face vigorously and was about to speak. The golden body vibrated again, and his whole body was radiant. It was not only Dou Yan's Daiyin Ridge, but the mist rose and the colorful clouds lingered. There is also this Qiaobo River, which is obviously the season of summer and autumn, and countless apricot flowers bloom on both sides of the river, just like the spring breeze. Sun Wenxian said softly, It's because of the four-character admonition of mountain high and water long. Dou Yen trembled, Couldn't it be a moral saint who speaks Tianxian? Sun Wenxian was silent. Dou Yen scratched his head, What the is going on? Sun Wenxian smiled and joked, It's not just that I know Chui Cheng, don't you also know Xiao Chui? Suddenly, Dou Yen suddenly realized that he was staggered before. Could it be that Chao Xianjun, who respectfully calls Chui Cheng the old gentleman, is taking a bite of his grudge against him? Dou Yen asked, I didn't ask Chui Cheng what happened. I only know that this old friend has violated the ban several times and left the jurisdiction of Qiaobo River without authorization. If it weren't for Xiao Xiaohe, he has belonged to the lowest rank of the water in the world, and there is nothing to be relegated to, otherwise Sun Wenxian would have been demoted again and again. The official hat is only worn down, but Sun Wenxian doesn't talk about official promotion anymore. The Zhou Qinghuang directly talks to the Qiaobo River Shuifu. The annual Qinghuang temple will be clicked. No need a small temple. I can't afford to wait for you, Tsundasui God. Sun Wenxian looked sad. In the look of the green shirt guest, there is an answer long ago, so why bother to ask more? Chen Pingon then took a trip to Mei Glazed Country, but he failed to meet the crazy drunkard's young county lieutenant in that familiar county seat. He originally wanted to repeat the old tricks, and once again bought some cursive scripts with the county lieutenant. After inquiring about the copybook with the county government, I realized that the county lieutenant had already resigned and traveled north. That deal back then was really a bargain. Chen Pingon bought a large pile of cursive copybooks with only Wuxian distilled spirits, and the writing was both radiant and rigorous. Chen Pingan's own handwriting is mediocre, but he recognizes his appreciation level and doesn't lose to the calligraphy masters at the foot of the mountain. What's more, even Zhu Lian and Cui Dongshan talk about cursive calligraphy, and even they can't imitate the 7 or 8 points. It really can't be higher. Cui Dongshan said directly that each of these cursive copybooks can be used as heirlooms. The longer the year, the more valuable it is. Even Mr. Wei Dashan has a dead skinny face and asked Chen Pingon to take a copy of The Immortal Steps. In fact, there are less than 3 copybooks. The cross is completed in one go. The immortal steps are too weak, the crimson clouds are growing under his feet, the smallpox is scattered by wind and rain, the jade slips printed in dragon mud, the real text is refined by the fire. The master's method is better than Weibo and he doesn't ask for it. He just went to the first floor of the bamboo building and borrowed a copybook from Xuanhuan, saying that he had to post a few more times, otherwise he would rarely get his cursive spirit. Chen Pingon later returned to Luapa Mountain, and when he learned of this he sent out the copybook on his own initiative. The cultivator also said in a serious manner that this is so embarrassing, that a gentleman does not take advantage of others. Chao Sunny was just there at the time and he said, I can help the teacher return this monk under the moon sticker to her husband. Chen Pingon bought a few jars of locally brewed Wui wine in Chishui city of Shujin Lake. Coincidentally, it didn't make a book. Drinking Wui wine, I remembered the ascended ghost repairer who just met, the master of Xuanpu, the city lord of the fairy hairpin, who happened to be called Wui. Fan Yen, the young city lord of Chishui city who had only one seedling, has always been regarded as a foolish fool. Now he has become the city lord. He has also attached to the Dali court, enabling Chishui city to grow stronger under the eyelids of the True Realm sect. Is such a hero who once faced Guken, who was a big boy, and took a mouthful of Guken. Qin Pingan was walking by the water, and looking back he saw a prosperous restaurant in the distance. It seems that for the first time in life and the only time to set up a wine bureau, it was over there. At the banquet that day, Guken was actually more familiar than Qin Pingan, a half-year-old child, chatting and laughing with eyebrows flying. When Xuanhuan was still in charge, he set aside 5 islands from the Shujian Lake where the Xinjing sect was located, and gave them to Luapa Mountain, but this enclave was hung under the name of a young monk named Zenji. Xuanhuan didn't bother with any discussion of the Patriarch's Hall. He decided in one word. Who has objections to this? Weighing who can count his half-son? At that time the chief worshipped Lu Laoqing? Or Lu Zhimao, the true monarch of Zhejiang, who was enshrined in the second seat? Or is it Li Fuyu? The Emperor Han Jingling in Shihao Kingdom on the north side of the book slips, because he had not practiced the Taoism, was nearly 100 years old, and he was already showing a bit of old age. Today, after retiring from the court, I had a leisure time, and then started to play the old tune of a pair of grandchildren again, and over again is the wording, the Luapashen Jianxian. I invited me to have a drink back then. These are not us anymore. No matter how good guys don't talk about the courage of the year, this story of the old man must also be mentioned. As for becoming the emperor that year, Han Jingling began to his tale, and went to Xianxia Island with Huang He, and asked to sit in the accounting room, but was stopped by Gu Kan. At that time the two sides were actually not too quarrelsome. Pleasant, it's just that Gu Kan at that moment was like a different person. The city mansion was deep and didn't show it on his face. What to mention these trivial things? It's not the kind of casually throwing pots of Xinjia wine, it's a serious wine bureau with a large table of wine and dishes, just ordinary drinks. The doorway here, you children don't understand if it's the wine on the mountain, on the contrary it's boring. With these old almanacs, the two children had long been hearing calluses, shaking their heads and making faces at each other. A child opened his mouth early and said silently, helping the emperor's grandfather to say the words that he brought to the end every time. At that time I was sitting on it. Qin Pingan only took 2 steps, making a trip back and forth between Shihaguo and Shujianhu, and he didn't bother with Han Jingling's words that added fuel and jealousy. Bragging is not against the law, let alone an emperor. After that, she quietly went to Myaliu Island and found Li Fuyuan. She recruited an anonymous disciple from a small place called Xianyu County, Guochuanxi, who had poor practice aptitude, but Li Fuyuan taught Taoism. The direct disciple still has to pay attention. Seeing Qin Pingan, Li Fuyu was surprised. Qin Pingan asked about Zenji's practice, and Li Fuyu naturally knew everything he could say. The two sides talked to Gao Mian by the way. It turned out that Li Fuyu served as an offering to the Invincible Fist gang after watching the ceremony at the Luapa Mountain, not Kaching. Gao Mian has stepped down as the gang leader. This old gang leader who has fallen from the Yupu realm twice before was almost interrupted by a big demon on the battlefield near Dadu. He fell again and only barely saved it. In the Golden Core realm, it's hard to be able to compete with others in this life. As a result, when Li Fuyu participated in the first meeting of the Zushitang meeting there, he saw a scene of saliva splashing and 2 people akimbo spraying each other. 2 groups of people were arguing over there, not arguing whether to change the name of the mountain. It's about arguing about which new name is better. After all, a serious monk sect has adopted a bad name that even the jianghu sect can't take. In the early years, if it weren't for the fact that the old gang leader was still strong, he couldn't beat and scolded, otherwise the matter would have been put on the agenda. On the side of Zhenjingzong, where can you see this kind of scene, the 3 sect masters Jiang Shangzhen, Wei Ying and Lu Laoqing are very convincing. The True Realm sect is also quite powerful, and in such a short period of time, 3 suzerains have appeared one after another. At the beginning, Li Fuyu was quite worried, whether the old Gao's gang leader would be greatly lost because of this. The hero was short of breath, but the result was not the case at all. When Li Fuyu found Gao Mian, the old man was in high spirits and it turned out to be positive. Fairy Su Jia of Yangshan has been reincorporated into the ancestral genealogy of the Patriarch Hall. Xuanhuan, nicknamed the One-Foot Gun, nicknamed Yumian Xilangjin, another name of the Wuxia Gao, and the dragon who saw the head and the tail collapse, the true monarch, these few rich people are all famous on the mountain. The hawks, claiming to hold up half of the sky, and half of the country was beaten down by a few of them together. I don't know how many fairies have earned a lot of money from these few people. In addition, there is an unknown deer who is named Xiabatio in the waves. He does not spend much, But he used a few snowflakes to open his voice and help some deserted fairies to create a kind of thousand. All the troops and horses have fallen under the imposing manner of the pomegranate skirt. Li Fui asked, Lord Qin Shan came to Gonglu Island this time, did you see Sovereign Lu or Master Lu? Qin Pingan shook his head and said, forget it this time. In fact, when Jiang Shangzhen served as the sect master of the True Realm, in addition to the act of public gain for personal gain, he also called the chief to worship Lu Laoqing. The two walked on the path by the lake on Myanaji Island. Sect Master Jiang casually folded a wicker and smiled. Said a few words to Lu Laoqing. You think that to break the bottleneck of Yupu realm and become an immortal, you have to kill her yourself. This is your own practice and I can't control it. But if you want her to die, I must let you die first. This is my own business, Jiang Shangzhen, and you can't control it either. Lu Laoqing dare not take it seriously. About Imo is the road to heaven. But Lu Laoqing, who had to find another way, successfully entered the fairyland. From the chief worship, he served as the third suzerain in the history of Zhenjingzong after the two sword immortals Jiang Shangzhen and Wei Ying. Qin Pingan took a trip to Xianxia Island afterwards, but not to find Lu Jimao, but to the Zhuxian mansion. The female ghost of Xianxia Island, Hong Su, her true identity is Huang Sha, the female cultivator of Myaliu Island of the previous life, and also Lu Leicheng's Taoist companion. A few years ago, she resigned as the female officer of Hengbo Mansion and became the concierge of Zhuxian Mansion again. Because she was still not good at dealing with the intrigue between those women, she really couldn't control more than a dozen maidservants with their own minds, so she resigned from the post, which was quite noble and leisurely and could make a lot of money, returned to Zhuxian Mansion, and continued to give horses to the horses. When the master was the concierge, he shook a string of bells next to the door when he met a visitor. I worked in Hengbo Mansion for a few years and saved a lot of snowflake money. Whenever I was in a bad mood, Hong Su would spend one. From the ugly and penetrating old woman's appearance to the young woman's appearance, let seeing myself is not so disgusting. As a result, he cursed the prodigal wife to Master Ma. The ghost of Xiao Ma, who was born as a bare-food man, is far and far away. Now he is still in front of the second-class offering of Xianxia Island. If you have a genealogical status, you don't actually need to do anything, just get a salary for nothing every year. This man, who used to be one of the many handymen in the Jingxing stall, has a very humble status, but has a very elegant heart. Gui Xiu named his mansion on Xianxia Island Zhu Xian. The phrase resound Zhu Xian from a rare poem in the old country, sounded a homophonic think, and Lu Chongrun, the owner of the old Zhuchai Island, was the eldest princess of his old country. It's a pity that the Long Princess Lu Chongrun, with a group of Yingying and Yanyan, moved out of Shujin Lake a long time ago, and settled down on a hill in a foreign land called Clawback. Over the years, Gui Xiu has not cursed Mr. Accountant less. While he said that he had no thoughts, he vowed to say that he had no intentions at all, and would never take the initiative to provoke Her Royal Highness the Princess. On the one hand, he sneaked and kidnapped Her Royal Highness to his hometown. The back of the scorpion, his mother's, the back of the scorpion, the fish, the slippery, the back, the ghost. Just imagine the white and tender back of the Long Princess. Just want to cry. Having said that, the royal princess is such a stunner, and Qin Pingan is a young guy who is a little bit weird and crooked, but it's normal. I just don't know if Her Royal Highness the eldest princess hasn't seen herself for so many years across thousands of mountains and rivers. Will she become sick with lovesickness, haggard and thin, so that her small waist becomes more and more slender? For her back then, this ghost really took his life. I gave her my heart long ago. She slept on her heart for many years. Hey, I really want to give the body to Her Royal Highness the Princess too. Today, Gui Xioma came to the gate of the mansion and wanted to go out, go boating and wander around on Zhuchai Island. If the Princess Long returns here, he will be able to see him at first glance. Isn't it a stalwart figure? The concierge Hong Su courageously asked. Master, does Mr. Qin really become the lord of the Zhongmen Mountain? Ma Yuanji stopped and sneered. Can I make money by cheating you? The female ghost said timidly, that can't be. Ma Yuanji rubbed his chin. I don't know if the lingering love story between me and the eldest princess has been engraved in a book. Hong Su Yen said, there is also the story of the slave and maidservant. Mr. Qin also copied it down. Ma Yuanji stared. You are too stupid to be rescued. In the wealthy township of our chief Liu's Hengbo mansion, I don't know how to enjoy the blessings, but I want to run to a ghost place like me again as a concierge. I am surprised. It's weird. I really want the colored embryos to be in Hengbo mansion. There are more beautiful women and ants inside, all with round breasts. If you don't pick your mouth, you won't be jealous, or it's not true. No one wants to come here as an errand. Look just what you look like now, let alone scare people. Ghosts will be scared to life by you. I can't charge you? Why do you have the face to collect my salary every month? Every time it's just a few days delay in the distribution. I'm ashamed to be awkward. Are you a debt collector? Hong Su did not dare to talk back. Master Ma is always not so pleasant to speak. But after all, it's his own master. Ma Yuanji sneered with arms around his chest and said, next time I see that surname Chin, let's see how I deal with him. Young people don't talk about credit and they are in the world. How about becoming a sword immortal when they become the lord? A blue shirt appeared out of thin air, smiled and asked, what about it? Ma Yuanji took a closer look and laughed loudly. Oh hey, Master Chin is here. On the neighboring islands of Shujian Lake, ghosts and ghosts are gathered together. Almost all of them are devoted to practicing on the island. They don't go out very much. They are not worried about being killed by people when they go out. Just hang the island identity badge and hang on the boundary of Shujian Lake. You can get the identity recognition of both the Zhenjingzong and the Dei garrison if you are in and out of the way. As for the long trip out of the book Jianghu, you need to rely on your own skills. There are also ghosts that are forgotten, and they have done some shameless old business. When a conflict arises with the immortal masters on the mountain, if you kill it, you will kill it. However, he even paid a sum of money to Zenji. According to Zhenjingzong, it was done in accordance with the Dali laws of landscape, and the crime was improperly punished. If you are unwilling to give up on this, you can continue to reason with the Dali criminal department. In fact, Zheng Yi was very hesitant at the time. Ma Di's method is better. Ask Master Zhang to go. What good way can you think of when you are Mr. Chen or Gu Kan? Since you don't have that brain, look for someone with a bright brain. Zheng Yi knew very well that the reason why Zhenjingzong and Xianxia Island were willing to treat their uninfluenced ghost repairs and ghosts extraordinarily was actually the credit of Mr. Chen. Zenji, the former boy on Maoyue Island, was born suitable for ghost practice. There were a lot of opportunities. First he was taken away from the fire pit by Zhang Di, the manager of Xianxia Island, and became the helper of the accountant. Then he followed Gukan all the time. For a few years he has been a cultivator in the Sevuing realm, and now he is a master of the mountain sect. Before Gukan left his hometown for a long trip to the central Shenzhou, he left the peace card with him. At first he was worried about whether this move was in compliance with the laws of Dali, so he dared not take it out. After all, he used Dali. The Li Xing department has nothing to do, it is a capital crime. Later, I learned that Gukan had already done it at the Dali criminal department and moved to Zheng Ye's name. This kind of thing, according to Zhang Di, is actually more difficult than earning an innocent card. As for Ma Dui, she is a ghost, and she has always lived in the fox fur talisman, and she bought a lot of rouge gouache. There are so many weird people and things in Mr. Chen and Gu Kan's hometown. Just talking about Mr. Chen's falling down mountain. At that time, Zenji and Ma Dui were shocked by a thin girl. They saw with their own eyes a person suddenly fell from the top of a very high cliff, hit the ground hard and hit the ground. Out of countless big pits, a smaller girl squatted on the edge of the big pit with her head in her hands. When the girl settled down, the straw sandals on her feet were full of blood. Later, they learned that the dark-skinned girl named Pei Qian was Mr. Chen's disciple. After determining the identities of the two out-of-towners with the girl's unique method, the little girl in black, carrying a golden pole on her shoulders and holding a green bamboo stick, was very cautious at first, and suddenly became lively, saying that we paid money. I'm asking for a fist to give the cerebellum on the ground a big blow. The little girl bounced around, twittering all the way. Anyway, she was talking about how good money is. As a result, Pei Qian held his small head and said with a heartfelt voice, "My sons and daughters of the arena, walking in the arena, just for the sake of being a chivalrous man, not a false name." I was stunned that Zenji and Ma Dui, who were also well informed and hadn't walked away at all, were stunned and looked at each other. Because Zenji and Ma Dui are not pure martial arts after all, they didn't know the many subtleties of the girl jumping off the cliff and smashing the ground, let alone understanding the height of the boxing technique of questing the earth with pure physique. Over the years, I have been paying attention to the movements of Mr. Chen and Gu Kan. The Shanshui Mansion news on the Zhenjingzong side will not be left. It's a pity that Mr. Chen has never heard from him, but it's Gu Kan who was in after the parting in Longzhou. They changed their lives from the direct disciple of true monarch Zhejiang Lu Jimao to the disciple of Zhongtu Beidasheng, and he was still that closed disciple. For the many wild repairs in Shujian Lake, that Baidi city is far away and unattainable. As for the city lord Zheng, who was hailed as the world's #1 demon giant, he was even higher in the sky. I was on Xianxia Island in the early years, and whenever I saw Gukin, I would shudder with fear. Later, following Gukan's travels around, the situation improved. In the end, as long as he was out of the house and even felt that he was by Gukan's side, he could feel a little more at ease. Ma Di once reminded Zheng Yi that in fact Gukan is still Gukan. He has indeed changed a lot. He has become obedient and will do many good things within his power. Even many things are done by Gukan which makes people feel happy and reasonable. He should be happy, but he can't be considered a good person. As for whether Zheng Yi really listened to it, Ma Di didn't care. She only identified one thing. As long as Mr. Qin is in the world, Gukan in the mountains will become better. Even if Gukan successfully reached the summit of Howran Mountain in the future, there will still be a certain unknown criterion in Gukan's heart for a long time. In fact, Ma Di felt a little guilty in his heart for the unpleasant remarks he had said to Zheng Yi. After all, he traveled around with Gukan back then. More or less, Ma Di was a little close to Gukan, so he could be regarded as half a friend. I have to admit that you can stay at ease with Gukan. It's like walking the rivers and lakes with half of Mr. Chen, just eat and drink carefree. Chen Pinggan left Juxian Mansion on Xianxia Island and came here, and found that the island owner had been practicing in the house, so he did not disturb the clean repair of the middle 5 gods. Ma Di was swinging in his yard. Going to the top of the island alone, Chen Pinggan sat on the railing, drinking slowly, and looking at a strange lake with books. I have been wandering around here for several years, but it is also this place that made Chen Pinggan understand a truth: the heaven and the earth are heroic, and the ages are still awe-inspiring. Chen Pinggan threw an empty jug of black wine into the lake. At that time I was sitting on Jianghu. If it's the big and small wine tables of the Great Wall of Jianghu, that's right. Chen Pinggan drank a pot of wine, and passed by a place before going to Yunxia Mountain. Looking at the bleak scene in front of me, it is hard to imagine that this is the Nantang Lake, which was famous in the past. The big lake dried up, and it is said that the water of the lake was drained by the old thrown big demon. Now the water level is less than 10% of the previous year. A few years ago this place was once a place of victory in Aquarius. Nantang Lake's green plum viewing thatched plum dock has the strongest spring. The scenery is beautiful, and it is reputed to have cultivated this plum blossom by several students. In the 1,000-year Taoist temple, every time the plum blossoms, immortal masters, emperors and generals from other towns, gentry and literati, there are endless traffic, leaving countless poems reciting plum blossoms. In these years, the sisters of the green plum viewer, in addition to expending their spiritual energy, trying their best to use the water method to gather clouds and rain, they have been borrowing water to move water from other rivers in these years, trying to refill a lake. However, these two things are progressing slowly. As soon as the new mountain gods and lands near the tops of the mountains have complained, they can't blame them for acting impartially. After all, it involves the changes in the luck of the mountains, waters and air. Trees are badly damaged, and filling the mountains with water is not a simple matter of replenishing rivers and rivers. Chen Pingyan saw a familiar figure and was doing what she was best at right now, turning on the mirror to make money for the gods. This green plum viewing Zhou Xianzi is an expert in jianghu, and he was able to borrow the scenery at his fingertips. In the early years, every time he went to a mountain sect, a fairy family mansion, he would use the secret method of the green plum view to intercept it. And then embedded her figure in the picture, and then sent it to those familiar mountain masters and mountain hawks. Last time she visited Longzhou, Zhou Qianglin was with Xuanhuan and Lu Runyan in Yidefeng. At that time, Chen Pinggan had happened to be a little black charcoal with a red face. At that time, Zhou Qianglin did not want to miss any opportunity to become friends with friends of friends, and wanted to use Yidai Peak as a bridge to build a relationship with Luapa Mountain. At that time, Chen Pinggan didn't like her to do things indiscreetly, too deliberately, and it was easy to get her clothes on the top. He felt that she was too snobbish and there was nothing wrong with her contacts, but there was nothing like her who was not careful, so she declined up. After the two parties were separated, what Pei Qian told Chen Pinggan secretly, but it shocked his mind. Pei Qian said at the time that she saw in the heart of Hu my sister, there were so many poor little people living in torn clothes. They were just like me when I was a child. They were so thin that they were almost starving to death. My sister was very sad, facing a big empty rice bowl. She didn't dare to look at the children. At that time, Pei Qian, who was still a child, didn't quite understand his unintentional words, which would make Master always reflect on it in the future life. At this moment, Chen Pinggan was leaning against a withered plum tree, looking at that mirrored scene. Turning around, somehow he had something to do with his own Luapa Mountain. It turned out to be a matter of observing the ceremony, and there was a lot of turmoil up and down the mountains on Izhou, and there were countless talks. The younger the trainer is, the more disapproving he is. He has a very bad impression of the young sword fairy who has shown himself in the limelight. He relies on his realm, is arrogant and domineering and does not leave any room for things. In fact, Zhou Qianglin didn't think about how to say good things to Luopishan at the beginning. It was just because of habit. After chatting a few words that he was fortunate to be acquainted with that Qinjianxian, thinking that he would raise one's worth by this, it was a simple jianghu road counting, it was a blunder to fry the pot at once, but it made people spend a lot of snow money and said some strange things to that fairy Zhou. Why did you recognize the father of Luopishan and like to be a filial son? Suddenly someone followed up with the money and made a mistake, missed a word. We Zhou Xinzi, maybe we have recognized a wealthy godfather. Zhou Qianglin didn't care at all. With the same smile, as long as those guys spent money to scold others, she would be very happy. There was only one sentence back to great-grandchildren and you were all right. Qin Pingan could tell that she really didn't care. After she took off the mirror, she shook her fist gently, cheered herself up. She understood, she found a way to make money, and next time she will continue to move out of the young sword fairy who can't beat her. It's best. If the relationship between the two parties is more obscure, you can definitely make more money. I believe that with Qin Pingan's current prominent status, how could he care about something with her, a young budding monk? It's just that when Zhou Qianglin looked at the shallow Nantang lake, she was a little at a loss. Even if she could refill a Nantang lake, how about so many dead plum trees? There was also the abundant water transport in the old Nantang lake. She was desperate and burst into tears. It seems that life is always a bit bumpy and I can't get through it no matter how hard it is. Even if it passes, it is only people, not things. Zhou Qianglin suddenly looked up, his face full of incredible. It turned out that in the blink of an eye, there was a vision of black clouds rolling, the sea of clouds gathered in an instant, the lightning flashed and thundered without the slightest sign, the weather was severe and thrilling. The sea of clouds envelopes the land of hundreds of miles in the waters of the old Nantang lake, and day is like night. The heavy rain fell to the world, and the water level of Nantang lake began to rise rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. The robe on her body can shed water, but she doesn't mind the heavy rain. Qin Pingan hesitated for a moment, did not leave quietly but laughed out. It happened to pass by the expensive land. By coincidence, I have to thank Fairy Zhou for saying a few words about Luopishan for nothing. Zhou Qianglin, who had a guilty conscience, immediately turned his head, wiped the tears on his face and cast a blessing on the fallen mountain sword fairy and smiled. I have seen Lord Qin Shan. Qin Pingan said, I just happened to pass by and encountered such a vision of heaven and earth. Although I didn't see the legendary Qingmei scenic spot, it was a worthwhile trip. Zhou Qianglin blinked. Since the young sword fairy didn't want to tell the truth, she had no choice but to pretend to be stupid. Otherwise, how can there be so many coincidences in the world? In fact, in her impression, this young mountain lord has a very ordinary look and feel, very upright and not approachable at all. Later, the shocking ceremony and questioning the sword made Zhou Qianglin even more determined that he should not have anything to do with Luopishan in this life. As for why Qinjianxian acted in this way today, she couldn't understand and she was too lazy to think about it. Anyway, she wouldn't have taken a fancy to her appearance, otherwise she would not be turned away back then. What's more, what is she fancy, what is she afraid of? As long as she can really help King Miguan restore her former style, she is not afraid of anything, and what she does is voluntary. A city orphan who was crawling in the mud ditch, was able to be brought to Qingmei Temple by the master at the age of a girl, and finally transformed into on the mountain to be blessed and to be grateful to pay off his debts. Qin Pingan smiled. If Fairy Zhou doesn't dislike it, you can visit us at Luopa Mountain in the future, and then open the mirror in the mountains, and the money earned from the gods will be divided into 5 to 5. How about? But let's say in advance there are several places on the mountain. The place is not suitable for shooting. What's the specific situation? We should wait for Zhou Xinzi to go to Longzhou. Then let Xuanhuan take care of things as well as the right guardian of Luopishan. Let's take you around and take a look around and choose suitable landscapes. See. Zhou Qianglin nodded blankly, a little in disbelief. Qin Pingan took out the Big Li Innocence card and used it again. I can help explain the several mountain gods near Nantang Lake. It's their business to listen. Zhou Qianglin once again sincerely thanked him. Qin Pingan continued, in addition to water transport and plum trees, I may be able to help a little bit, and Zhou Xinzi can watch the changes in the future. After a tug of war with Fei Fei, the self in the wild world got some water transportation in the river. As for King Meiguan's dead plum trees, naturally there is a way to remedy it. After all, I was fortunate enough to meet the old owner of the Mountain Plum Garden, Mrs. Yan Yan. Zhou Qianglin wanted to say something but stopped. I really want to ask the young sword fairy, what is he doing like this? Qin Pingan finally smiled and said, I have to continue on my way. I will stay here soon. If I can pass by here next time, I will definitely go to King Miguan with empty hands as a guest and ask for a bowl of iced plum soup. Zhou Qianglin smiled and nodded slightly. After the figure in the green shirt disappeared, he raised the back of his hand and rubbed his red eyes. Some warmth more shocking than thunder. Sword of Coming Chapter 872. Mengliang Country. The Sea of Clouds in Yunxia Mountain is the most prestigious scenery of Xianxia and Aquarius Island. Especially when the Sea of Clouds is illuminated by sunlight, it is not just golden, but aura rises, and the colorful colors are so gorgeous that it is praised by Qi practitioners. Stunner in the sky. Otherwise, it will not be able to be included in the best-selling book of Jianghu's mountains and seas, and those unpredictable clouds and mists at certain moments, with a little real spirit, transformed into the ancestors of the past dynasties, the disciples of Yunxia Mountain. As long as they are destined, they can follow words, ask the patriarchs for advice on this method. Qin Pingan stood on the Sea of Clouds, looking at the distant capital of Mengliang Country, turning the country's vitality into a panoramic view. There used to be a small wine shop in Daoxin Mountain. It was a broken yellow beam. It means that after drinking wine, you can get a dream of yellow beams. I just don't know that it has nothing to do with this dream country. Retracted his gaze and looked at a low mountain that was not over the top of the mountain by the Sea of Clouds. Yunxia Mountain has a total of 16 peaks so far, and the female ancestor Kai Jingjian of the Green Cypress Peaks is sitting on a futon today, with purple smoke curling from the incense burner, holding an old bamboo and wood rui in her hand. She is giving classes as usual. Towards the end, she began to explain the characters for those juniors from the sect, and she was solving a fate character at the moment. According to Kai Jingjian's understanding, life is the word. Can be dismantled into humans one knock. Therefore, people will cultivate Taoism as soon as they tap a pass. Cultivating the Tao and asking the heart, life is at stake, life and death. If a monk cannot be tired of foreign objects and corpses, he will see the Luotian when he opens his eyes. In the 16 peaks, including the Yunxia Mountain Zhu Mountain, all the ancestors who are qualified to open the peaks will follow the ancestral rules and open the preaching on time. It can't be said that there is no view of the door. Of course, some key practice tricks will also be private. If it is not the original line, it is secret, but compared to the general Xian family sect, it has been considered very enlightened. Some ancestors speak well, but unfortunately they are boring. Some ancestors are interesting in speech, but they are often eloquent and digress. They often talk about landscape anecdotes and fairy anecdotes within an hour, but there are not many anyway. Speaking of the idea, the disciples of Biefeng listened happily, but there are many difficulties in practice: how to be ignorant before entering the class, and how to get confused after going out. And Kai Jingjian's Green Jade Peak is overcrowded every time she preaches, because Kai Jingjian's lecture not only talks about the leisurely and interesting things like this kind of literary explanation, but also because she has detailed explanations and understandings of the practice barriers, and has no selfishness. Kai Feng, the master of preaching, has something to say, and the density is proper, and he is ashamed of it. In fact, what Kai Jingjian really made the old monk Zhu Feng feel inferior was her preaching and teaching karma. She regarded the disciples of Wai Feng as the direct inheritance of the original line. It seems that as long as it is the disciple of Yunxia Mountain, even if it is not the outer door of the ancient teacher, disciple, Kai Jingjian still treats everyone equally, and doesn't mind the spread of the original vein technique of green juniper. A good green hill and green cypress, Danxia dense fog surrounded by the fairy house. The hostess of this mountain is refreshing and energetic, with the wind under the woods, and she is so celestial. In fact, it was not a small accident that Kai Jingjian chose to build a mansion on the Green Juniper Peak, because this peak has been left out in Yunxia Mountain for many years. It is not surprising whether it is the spiritual energy of the heavens and the earth, or the scenery of the mountains and waters. It is not that there is no better mountain for her to choose. But Kai Jingjian selected this peak alone. Qin Pingan's vision shifted slightly. On the top of a mountain like an island on the sea, there was a young Jindan Dixian sitting on a white jade railing, as if he was borrowing wine to soothe his sorrows. Relying on the robe on the opponent, he recognized him as Huang Zhongho, who cultivated Yunfeng in Yunxia Mountain. Before they formed their own alchemy, Huang Zhonghe and Kai Jinjian were once recognized as golden boys and jade girls, and they most hoped to become a pair of gods and Taoists in Yunxia Mountain. The robe on his body is a treasure of Jinshan that has been passed down for a long time, named xuanhuan. Chen Pinggan's imperial wind fell on the top of Gingyun Peak. Huang Zhonghe turned a blind eye to this, and he was too lazy to pursue the impolite behavior of a foreigner who did not go to the mountain gate. The young fairy just drank on his own, but no longer looked at Zushan infatually. Xianxia Mansion. Chen Pinggan sat on the railing and took out a pot of wui wine. Huang Zhonghe turned his head and glanced at the flask in his hand, shook his head and said, "This wine is not good." Huang Zhonghe twisted his wrist, and there was an extra pot of xianxia xuanhuan wine, which he threw to the uninvited guest who did not know. "Drink mine." Chen Pinggan took the hip flask, thanked him, lifted the mud seal, and drank a big sip of wine with his head up. Heaven and earth, a wine urn, are all drunk folks. Huang Zhonghao's self-registration number, Gung Yun Feng Huang Zhonghe. Chen Pinggan smiled and said, "Luopashen Chen Pinggan." Huang Zhonghe almost squirted out a sip of wine, raised the back of his hand to wipe the corner of his mouth, turned his head and looked at the man, looking from left to right. Nothing was right. He was not the young sword fairy from the fallen mountain, but he was dressed in costume and he was pretty good at drawing a gourd. "Make do," Huang Zhonghe said with a smile. "Friends of Taoism are not authentic and I was blinded by this pot of good wine. After drinking the wine I'll get out." Chen Pinggan asked with a smile, "I was more curious when I went to the Lizhu cave to look for opportunities. Why is Fairy Kai instead of the better qualified Huang brother?" Yunxia Mountain Chi practitioner, the root of monasticism is to subdue the heart ape and tether the immortal horse. At the beginning, Kai Jinjian traveled through the Lizhu cave, seeking magic weapons and other external objects, but also seeking a chance for the fairy family. It's a pity that Kai Jinjian at that time didn't even seem to figure out what the heart is. In Chen Pinggan's view, even if the young land immortal with excellent Jindan weather is in love, Huang Zhonghe is more suitable to go down the mountain to try his luck than Kai Jinjian in those days. Huang Zhonghe held the hip flask in both hands and twitched the corner of his mouth. This fellow Taoist pretending to be a sword immortal and still pretending to be addicted? Drink quickly or I'm going to drive people. Drink one pot and spit two pots. The contemporary mountain owner of Yunxia Mountain is a female ancestor who does not like to show her face. In addition, two ancestors who are really in charge of things, one is in charge of the laws of the mountain gate, and the other is in charge of the treasure house of money. Kai Jinjian's teacher is the one who is in charge of the money, and Huang Zhonghao's preacher is the Yunxia Mountain. The former has spared no effort in the cultivation of Kai Jinjian. It is simply a desperate bet. At the beginning, Yunxia Mountain collected a bag of gold and copper coins and went to Lizhu Cave to find opportunities. There was a big noisy argument, and the better qualified. Huang Zhonghe was obviously a more suitable candidate, but Huang Zhonghe himself was not interested in it, so he persuaded Master to forget it. But when he got outside the mountain, Huang Zhonghe was another face when he was dealing with people. When Kai Jinjian was empty-handed, during the 2 years when she returned to the mountain gate, for some reason, it seemed that her Taoism was severely damaged. She practiced the magical powers of the gate and was in a state of being absent-minded and half-dead about everything. The preaching teacher who had troubled her was so blinded at the Patriarch Hall, and every time she discussed matters, she had to be full with breezy words. Unexpectedly, it didn't take long for Kai Jinjian to suddenly open up his mind. He learned by analogy and climbed up to the heights. The power was like a broken bamboo. First he closed the door and closed the golden core. After that, even some of the Yunxia Mountain ancestors were helpless in practice. So that Yunxia Mountain counts Dao Patriarch's superior skills, to be able to complete a lot. Kai Jinjian's preaching mentor immediately raised his eyebrows. One time when the mentor and disciple talked, the old man revealed his secret, saying that he had chosen her as the protagonist at a glance, and he had helped her calculate a hexagram, signed it, and got a horoscope, broken. Standing thereafter like a divine help. After hearing this, Kai Jinjian just smiled and said nothing. Of course Huang Zhonghe didn't mention a word about these secrets of his own. He likes to drink, but he wouldn't be so close to an outsider after drinking such a little bit of wine. I never thought that the green-shirt foreigner laughed and said, "Spit out 2 pots and drink 2 pots? If you treat guests like this, you will be very polite and then behave." Huang Zhonghe was surprised because I heard Kai Jinjian once said that the young people on the side of Lizhu Cave are simple and subtle, and they can talk more than one. The man next to him is a bit interesting to talk. Is it true that he is a young man from that small town? Chen Pinggan glanced at the summit of the ancestor Shandan, and changed the subject. It seems that even if Fairy Kai is among the Yuanning, he will help Yunxia Mountain invisibly gather a group of people in luck, but the luck of the mountain gate is still leaking. 30 years have passed, and you still haven't been able to find a treasure of Jinshan that can bring you luck? If you continue to consume it like this, be careful to fall into the fate of a golden jade. A Yunxia Mountain, 10,000 hills and thousands of rocks, a pale mountain home. Cloth robe and straw sandals, the dwelling is true and refreshing, leisurely watching the flowing water and falling flowers. The root of Shanmen Taoism is to train Qi practitioners to enter the realm of refreshing mind and body, seek a cloud and lock the fog, understand clearly and cultivate cloud and water emotions. In the end, the 3 mountains are my home. Huang Zhongho raised his hand and rubbed his forehead. This guy has a good tone. At that time, the Dali dynasty selected a group of earth immortals to ascend to the platform. Kai Jinjian of Yunxia Mountain happened to be on the list, and her performance was quite unexpected. Originally, several ancestors of her family were not optimistic about her. They thought Kai Jinjian could be among the golden cores. It was surprising enough to open the peak in Yunxia Mountain. I think she will be able to become the nascent soul in this life. Unexpectedly, Kai Jinjian was once again impressive. Supporting it to the end, she caught a glimpse of the heavenly gate. You must know that even among the talented monks, all of them are considered to be the most top-notch cultivating embryos in Aquarius Island, such as Xia Ling of Longquan Jianzong, Lu Baqiao of Fenglei Garden. At that time it was Sui right side of Zhenjingzong monk. Yunlin Jiang's Jiangyun, etc. picked up a genius which was not a genius that Kai Jinjian could match. Afterwards, it was proved that these proud sons of the sky did live up to the expectations and ranked among the 10 young people or 10 alternates in Aquarius. According to the rules of the Ancestor Hall of Yunxia Mountain, in addition to being able to reach the peak, you can also raise a generation on the top of the landscape genealogy. If you go further, you are lucky enough to become the Yuanning Old God, then you will be a higher generation. As for the master-disciple inheritance that originally belonged to the Dao vein, it is calculated separately. So when Kai Jinjian returned to the teacher's gate, he replaced the previous seat in the Golden Core realm at the Patriarch Hall and became the youngest female patriarch in the history of Yunxia Mountain. Kai Zushi in the mountains, Kai Shenzi outside the mountains, it is recognized that 2 steps to heaven. Kai Jinjian withdrew from the ascent platform that year, and was alone in Huaihuang County, and walked outside an empty old school. The imperial examination has a saying of the same year, because a large group of earth immortals once boarded the ascending platform together, and in a small area, they fell in love with each other, and they had a mountain incense similar to the same year. For example, a pair of young Jianxiu from the True Realm sect, Suiyu and Yanjiu, the pair of seniors and younger brothers, originally had a relationship that could not be achieved by the 2 sides. After that, they had some contacts with Kai Jinjian and Yangxiashan. The real names are Wei Gisu and Wei Xianxia, 2 sword repairmen, and they are also the direct disciples of the current lord of Tonggishao Yuguizang and the great sword immortal Wei Ying. That is a big figure who is qualified to participate in the discussion of the Confucian Temple. Climbing and practicing together, it's such a slow step and people are more popular than others. Fortunately, Huang Zhongho didn't think about comparing it to Kai Jinjian. Chen Pingan handed over a pot of wui wine. No matter how common the taste is, it's still a drink. Huang Zhongho slapped the pot of wine back, shook his head and smiled. The heart is unpredictable. You dare to drink my wine, I dare not drink yours. Why, your kid is fond of our Fairy Kai who came here especially. Don't worry, I'm not a rival in love with you. But to tell the truth, you Taoist, your Longmen realm cultivation base, I guess Kai Jinjian's parents simply look down on it. Of course, if you can make Kai Jinjian fall in love with you at first sight, it doesn't matter. Kai Jinjian, who entered the Green Mountain Peak, was a typical immortal Taoist couple on the mountain. Her parents were both cultivators, so she was born half a mountain person. It's just that her parents are not high in realm, one is Longmen realm and the other is Sevuing realm. At the ancestral hall, only the father has a seat. Therefore, Kai Jinjian is very awkward every time she discusses matters, because her father's seat is close to the door, and her daughter, now in position next to the mountain lord and master, is already tied with the master. In fact, there are only 2 top-notch things that matter most to Yunxia Mountain today. The first one, of course, is to remove the suffix of the alternate sect, and go to Dali capital and the accompanying capital. Walk around, among them the King Song Mu, who is still very talkative, will take the time to attend every time, and it can be said that he is not close to Yunxia Mountain. The second case is about Kai Jinjian's Taoist couple. Not only Kai Jinjian's master, but even the mountain owner went out in person several times and flanked with Kai Jinjian. It's not easy to directly ask unintentional people, so he whispered around and talked about Aquarius Island, who is similar in age and has good aptitude. It's a pity that Kai Jinjian always avoid the important thing every time and just bypass the topic, or just say a word. Marriage can only be reckless and cannot be forced. Qin Pingan put the pot of wine back into his sleeve, laughed blankly, and waved his hand. Brother Huang thinks too much. After drinking a pot of Yunxia Mountain's secret brewing xuanhuan wine, Qin Pingan said, "Since I dare to like it, why dare not to say it?" With Brother Huang's cultivating aptitude, his heart is a bond of love. As long as this test is passed, he will become an infant. It's not difficult. The relationship is just a breakthrough. Huang Zhongho laughed angrily. You know what a fart. Fellow Taoist really considers himself an old in the upper 5 realms? Seeing the green shirt guest, he was about to get up and leave. Huang Zhongho said, "Where are you going?" Just a reminder, Yunxia Mountain is not on the other side of the mountain. Unlike my unruly farming Yunfeng, there is no such thing as a mountain gate restriction. It's easy to suffer. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Of course I went to Lvui Peak to talk to Fairy Kai." Huang Zhongho couldn't help being handsome. He was still a guy who didn't dare to say but dared to do it. He waved his hand. Going to the Green Juniper Peak is not a big problem. Kai Jinjian went down the mountain at first, but after returning to the mountain, it changed a lot. People have to look at it with admiration. It's definitely not a problem to be a mountain owner, right, Luapa Mountain Master Qin? Qin Pingan stood on the railing with a little toe swept forward, turned his head and smiled. I think Brother Huang, who has been in love, may be more suitable to be the lord of the mountain. Huang Zhongho smiled and put it down. This not-skinned Taoist friend seems good to be a drinker. If there is no nonsense on the wine table, no matter how good the drink is, it will not taste good. It's really going to be too high. Maybe Huang Zhongho is going to compete with that fellow Taoist to become the master of Qinshan. After all, Huang Zhongho had long admired the young sword fairy who was born in poverty in the Luapa Mountain, and he only hated that he could not meet and drink. Different from Kai Jinjian, Huang Zhongho was born in the market like that Qinshanju, and he was only a young man who only practiced mountaineering. The only difference was that the latter was romantic and infatuated. So Huang Zhongho opened another pot of xuanhuan wine, and from his sleeve he drew out a book of landscape travel notes of constant adventures, and brought it to drink in dishes which tasted great. I will be fortunate to see Qin Pingan in the future, and I must humbly ask him for advice on how to get along with a woman in order to be decent, so that everything is silent. On the Lvui Peak, most of the monks on Yunxia Mountain have dispersed, leaving only a few disciples from other peaks, and there are some problems that need to be asked face-to-face with Master Kai. Waiting for the last outer disciple to leave respectfully, Kai Jinjian looked up and found that there was still someone left and smiled and asked, "But you have any doubts to ask?" I was a little bit impressed. It seemed that someone came here halfway to listen to the class. Without a place, I was sitting on the ground over the pillar. Is just a face of life. I have never seen it before. Most of it is a new disciple of a certain peak in Yunxia Mountain. As one of the few candidates for the sect on a continent, coupled with the close relationship between Yunxia Mountain and the Dai dynasty, there are many people who visit immortals, apprentices, learn skills and seek Taoism like Crucian Carp who crossed the river so that the ancestral hall complained. It's not over and over, and I'm most afraid that those old immortal teachers who are somewhat familiar and have a mediocre relationship will force some children to xianxia, refuse to accept it and will be hurt, but if it is really accepted, xianxia can never perfuse. It's up. In the end, Kai Jinjian made a suggestion to solve this big problem. Let an old-fashioned monk in the Dragon Gate realm who only knows how to practice cultivating and is not very good at life, to be responsible for welcoming the guests who are sent to and from him, and at the same time in charge of the selection and inclusion of the outer disciples. The man smiled and said, "Fairy Kai, goodbye to the alley. I haven't seen him for many years." Cai Jinjian gripped the Ganoderma lucidum in one hand, awe-inspiring, and squinted his eyes. Who? Wait until she saw a figure that seemed as if the clouds and mist had dispersed to show the true face. Kai Jinjian had a complicated expression, sighed in her heart, held the wood lingji, bowed and said, "Lv-Kai Jinjian, I have seen Lord Qinshan." Qin Pingan smiled, clasped his fists and replied politely, "I have seen Master Kai Feng." Qin Pingan opened the door and said, "It's very difficult for xianxia to remove the word candidate in the near future. Dali Court is extremely pragmatic." Kai Jinjian nodded and said, "I have talked about this with several ancestors but I don't feel optimistic unless." She paused for a moment and then smiled bitterly, "Unless Yunxia Mountain rushes to settle down before the overall situation is settled, a cultivator of the upper 5 realms suddenly appears. Otherwise, the Zhongtu Confucian Temple will never make an exception for Xianxia Mountain in Aquarius. Of course, it is not an unprecedented precedent. After the Confucian Temple's discussion, Shanshui Mansion reported that the ban was lifted, and 16 new Jin sects appeared one after another. Of course, there was the Luapa Mountain of the Qin Shanzhu in front of him. In addition to the 7, all sects were supreme. The 5-realm cultivators sit in town and they seem to be in large numbers, but they can be placed in the entire Hauran Jiuzhou, and there is no one on one continent. Where can the confidence of Xianxia Mountain be one of them? In the previous Battle of Aquarius, Xianxia Mountain had a lot of military accomplishments, but it was far different from the other mountains that were able to break into the sect. Those Zongzita sects that do not have the cultivators of the 5 realms for the time being are not the existence of the officialdom at the foot of the mountain that have been teased as the Machi slanting official. They will never be looked down on because of the lack of a Yupu realm, without exception. Those young sect masters who were only in the nascent soul realm for the time being, were all figures who made great achievements in the war. But if Xianxia Mountain took the right path, and got a fate of a Confucian temple similar to the official seal of a yellow paper and vermilion pen, how could this be possible? Kai Jingjian knows herself that she will need at least more than 100 years of hard work to get a little bit. Hope to see the bottleneck of the nascent soul realm. Today's Kai Jingjian has a broad vision, and he really doesn't feel that he is a genius for monasticism. My climbing trip is here to discuss a business. I want to buy some Yunzhen stone and Yunxia fragrance from Xianxia Mountain. The more the better. Qin Pingan said, I know that supply is in short supply, and almost all of them are monopolized by Dai, so Fairy Kai may need to use some fellow friends. The price is easy to say. Yanggenshi and Yangxiaxiang, as many of these two things, I want as much. Yangxiashan just asked for the price. Intends to place those Yunzhen stones in the dragon caves of several mountains in Kaiyun Peak, and then give them to little Nuanshu as her place of cultivation and choose Keifu. Xianxia Mountain is rich in Yunzhen stone, which is a key material used by Taoist Danding School to refine Huaidan. This kind of earth treasure is known as flawless and unstained, and is most suitable for refining Huaidan. It is somewhat similar to 3 kinds of gods. Money contains the aura of pure heaven and earth. One side of the water and soil nourishes one side, so most of the Qi trainers who practice in Xianxia Mountain have a tendency to cleanliness, and their clothes are abnormally clean. As a candidate for the sect, the Yunzhen stone of Xianxia Mountain is the foundation of one's life. It's just that Yunzhen stone has been digging and quarrying too much in the last 30 years, and it is suspected of being sloppy and fishing. Fortunately, there is also an additional benefit, which is the secret Yunxia incense made by Xianxia Mountain. The Dali dynasty extradited the heroic spirits on various battlefields to return home. In addition to the mountain perfume incense, we often need to use the Yunxia incense, whether it is to burn incense to pay homage to the gods of the mountains and waters, or the ancestor-worshipping ancestors of high-ranking officials under the mountain. Yangxiaxiang is a top grade. Because Xianxia Mountain can be regarded as one of the most authentic Buddhist sects from Middle-earth if it traces its origins. According to legend, the old Xianxia immortal who founded the mountain is actually some kind of mysterious background in an ancestral Buddhist temple in Middle-earth. Only after listening to the Dharma and understanding the meditation can the form be successfully refined. Therefore, Xianxia Mountain highly praises that every dependent arising and ending is a crossing of catastrophes. At that time, the Middle-earth Confucian Temple was discussing matters, and the 2 worlds were facing each other. At that time, several eminent monks and great virtues appeared, and their treasures were strict and each had their own visions. Among them was the Quarren monk from Shenkong Temple. Therefore, the secret teaching methods of the Patriarch Hall passed down from generation to generation in Xianxia Mountain are similar to Buddhism. However, although Xianxia Mountain is close to Buddhism and Taoism, it is necessary to discuss the relationship on the mountain, because the relationship between Yanggenshi and Taoist temples is more fragrant. Kai Jingjian was a little embarrassed for a while, and it was not difficult to get some together, but as Qin Pingan said, she really needed her to piece together, not to mention that she didn't want to have a good relationship with Luopashan. The problem is that Luopashan's strong background is how it is possible. Just for the sake of dozens of caddies of Yunzhen stone and more than 100 barrels of incense, can a mountain owner who is already a young sword immortal come to Xianxia Mountain to ask for it? Furthermore, after that year's list appeared, Kai Jingjian saw the Qin 11 of the Great Wall of Sword Qi surrounded by clouds and mist. Kai Jingjian had almost no doubt, it must be Qin Pingan in Mud Bottle Alley. So Qin Pingan has a more hidden identity, the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Jianghu. Kai Jingjian had to bite the bullet and report 2 numbers. Qin Pingan nodded and smiled. Yes, it's already beyond expectation. Kai Jingjian was surprised but still relieved. Qin Pingan suddenly thought silently. Kai Jingjian was shocked at first and then knew it instantly. She hurriedly avoided the surprise and never dared to accept the gift. She just helped with that little thing back then, and she was just a small effort to pass the letter on her behalf. Therefore, there are still a lot of ancestors in the mountain top who speculate that you, Kai Jingjian, and the Great Wall of Jianghu, are there any unspeakable incense feelings? After Qin Pingan left, Kai Jingjian hesitated, but Yu Feng went to Zhenjianfeng, which was not very frequent. In the past, the main reason was to prevent the ancestors of Shanmen from misunderstanding what she had with Huang Zhonghe. Huang Zhonghe saw Kai Jingjian from a distance. He was obviously a little surprised. He quickly put away the mountain and water travel notes, shook his hip flask and said with a smile, Kai Feng is a rare visitor. Kai Jingjian asked in his heart, I heard someone say that you plan to formally confess to her? The woman Huang Zhonghe likes, named Wu Yuani, is a close disciple of the previous mountain lord, so she has a high seniority. Even Huang Zhonghe, who is the lord of the peak, has to call her uncle when he sees her. Huang Zhonghe was stunned. What? Cai Jingjian smiled knowingly and said softly, What's so embarrassing about this? It's been so embarrassing for so many years. Brother Huang should have been so refreshing. It's a good thing. Jin Jian here wishes Brother Huang through the relationship. Huang Zhonghe flushed, slapped the railing vigorously and said angrily, It's the who claims to be Qin Pingan talking nonsense on your side? Are you a fool? Dare you believe this kind of bastard? Kai Jingjian said cautiously. Before he left, he said that senior brother Huang had a thin face and met him at Gung Yunfeng. He uttered the truth after drinking, but he still didn't dare to speak by himself, so he hoped that I would help Feijin to spread the word to the ancestral mountain. Let's meet with Uncle Wu Yuani. Feijin is probably all ready. Huang Zhonghe was dull and speechless. He was silent for a long time. He gritted his teeth and said, Let's talk about who the outsider is, I'll hack him to death. Kai Jingjian smiled and said, Can't you be who you claim to be? Fenglei Garden. Owner of the garden, Huang He, after inquiring the sword in Xinjiang Mountain, wandered away with the sword alone and left Aquarius Island. First go to the site of the Great Wall of Jianghu, and then go to the barren world that he said is, the sky is high and the earth is wide, and the best for swords. If it weren't for Master Li Tuan Jingbing's dissolution, Big Brother Huang He would have to take care of everything, otherwise he would have gone to Jianghu Great Wall long ago with his temperament and temper. On the railing of the high-rise building, Lu Baqiao spread his hands and walked here. An originally handsome man, shabby Hulila scum. Today is another day without incident, and Lu Baqiao is really boring. The brother Huang He made Lu Baqiao sincerely respect, fear, feel ashamed and feel guilty at the same time. The last time Lu Baqiao was the owner of Fenglei Garden in his life was that before he went to Daolong's brother Huang He planned to remove his identity as the owner. At that time, the brother had already done a good job and died on the battlefield in Aquarius Island. Ready. Following the ascension platform to fly ascend, that time, the one who benefited most was Xuanhuan, the Qingfeng city wearing a scorpion armor. Although it was only a breakthrough, it was Yupu who had become a member of Yuanying. But the most regrettable thing is to be with Xuanhuan climb to the top of the Sea of Clouds. You can see the Luba Bridge at the gate. In fact, he almost had the opportunity to break through the 2 realms in a row and complete a feat, but Lu Baqiao had already taken a big step and he took a small step back for some reason. Lu Baqiao hugged the back of his head with both hands and couldn't help sighing. After senior brother traveled far away in the wild, Fenglei Garden only had him as a cultivator of nascent soul stage. Lu Baqiao is not a piece of material that can take care of affairs. All the general affairs are entrusted to those junior brothers and nephews. Song Daoguang, Zaixiang Xingyoheng and Nangong Xingyin, these 4 sword repairmen, are very young, 2 golden pills, less than 100 years old. A dragon gate, a view of the sea, naturally younger. Not surprisingly, Fenglei Garden's next master selection will be chosen from these 4 young people. As for Lu Baqiao, who was already a sword repairer in the Yuaning realm, he was both unintentional and powerless. Lu Baqiao sometimes he can't wait to give his realm to the boy Xingyoheng. As long as he can, Lu Baqiao will never frown. Of course, don't look at the guy Xingyoheng who is usually scornful. In fact, just like the brother, he is very arrogant and will not accept it. As for the old antiques in Fenglei Garden who have a strong temper and speak loudly, they have no objection to them, they just concentrate on practicing swords. Fight for power? Since the establishment of Fenglai Garden, there has been no such saying. Occasionally the old people met Lu Baqiao, and they were so unpretentious and inattentive that they would hurt Li Tuanjing, the owner of the garden. They could not beat Lu Baqiao or could not catch up with Lu Baqiao's sword, otherwise they could put the soul of the shoe on Lu Xianyang's face. Anyway, these elders always look for Lu Baqiao, who is an unobtrusive, every time they have trouble practicing their swords. Since it is an unobtrusive, it would be a waste not to go to the door to curse a few words. As one of the 10 young people in Aquarius, but Lu Baqiao's ranking has been declining. First he was surpassed by Xie Ling of Longquan Jianzong, and then he was squeezed by Ma Kexuan's uncle and military clerk Yu Shiwu. Behind. Baqiao, I call you Uncle Lu, can you do it? 10 young people, there are only 10 people, not 100. Uncle's words are so bad, I can still fall to 10 candidates. The old man said earnestly, can you serve snacks when practicing swords? Isn't it just a Yuaning Xing Yupu, what a big deal, let the uncle, I am Yuaning? Lu Baqiao immediately slapped the uncle in the Golden Core realm. What Yuaning is left, the uncle is aggrieved in Yupu realm. Little bastard, stretch out your face quickly, uncle's hands are itchy. Lu Baqiao has promised his seniors to be among the 5 realms within 100 years. If the senior cannot return from the wild world, Lu Baqiao will have to fight for a fairyland, and if it is done, even if he has a decent confession to Fenglai Garden. Lu Baqiao took a deep breath, turned his head and looked into the distance. Su Jia regained his status as a descendant of Xinjiang Mountain Zhu Shirtang. I heard that she seems to stay in Xiagushan, but she will also go to Jiu Peak. After practicing swordsmanship, Lu Baqiao would sneak down the mountain from time to time to take a trip to the bookstore in Xiaoguo, a tributary of the old Zhuang dynasty. The bookseller was an ordinary young woman who was at that time. His name is Jia. After she left, Lu Baqiao bought the shop, leaving everything intact. Even if you just look at the closed shop every time and step into it without opening the door, Lu Baqiao will feel relieved. As a swordsman, the practice of swordsmanship seemed to be to prevent the master from being disappointed before, and then to prevent the senior from looking down too much, but now it is for Fenglai Garden. What's next? Lu Baqiao don't know. It seems that she only likes that woman. In this matter she will die from one thing. A warm voice sounded above Lu Baqiao. Hey Lu de Jiangxian, who do you miss? Lu Baqiao leaned forward, raised his head, and saw a man in a green shirt sitting on the edge of the roof, with a familiar and unfamiliar smiling face, which was quite awkward. Yeah, isn't this Chen de Jiangxian, I'm lucky enough to meet. Lu Baqiao immediately reached out his arm and waved his hand. Let's relax, our Fenglai Garden swordsman has a bad temper. Outsiders trespassing here without permission, be careful to be beaten by chaotic swords. There is nothing to disagree with Chen Pingan. Furthermore, Fenglai Garden does not have any red tape in its hospitality. Anyway, there are not many customers throughout the year because Fenglai Garden swordsman has not many friends, but there are so many people who look down on it. Chen Pingan jumped slightly from the roof, stepped onto the railing, and threw a pot of wine to Lu Baqiao, and the two sat on the railing together. Lu Baqiao raised his head and took a sip of wine, raised his sleeves and wiped the corners of his mouth and smiled. In fact, it hasn't been a few years since the last time. 20 or 30 years on the mountain is nothing. How do you feel that we haven't seen each other for a long time? Chen Pingan smiled and joked, I almost didn't recognize you. Why, now the fairies in Aquarius all like this man with Luotua appearance. Lu Baqiao said with a hippie smile, the autumn wind blows Lu Lang's waist thin, and it is difficult to raise autumn fat. Lu Baqiao remembered something, lowered his voice and said, you really have to be careful. We have a young girl named Nangong Xingyan. She looks pretty but she has a violent temper. The girl's eyes were shining, and now the mantra every day is the phrase, there is such a handsome man in the world? Chen Jianxian asked you if you are afraid? Chen Pingan didn't care about this at all and said, your brother seems to have gone to the wild world. Now you are at the Rishang Ferry, and you are very close to Weiying of Yuguizong. I heard that the Yellow River was at the site of the Jianqi Great Wall. I just stopped for a while, chatted with the fellow swordsmen Wei and Jin, and quickly went to the sunken side. But when the Yellow River arrived at the ferry, he would directly clarify the matter with a few garrison monks. He would take out the sword alone as a casual cultivator. However, it seemed to have changed his mind afterwards, temporarily serving as a bearer monk with a large iron cavalry. On the side of Rependant, in addition to Su Zi and Lu Qi, there are also Dalisong Changjing and Yuguizong Weiying. Chen Pingan has always believed that whether it is Li Tuanjing or the Yellow River, if this pair of masters and disciples were born in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, they would definitely achieve high kendo achievements. Maybe it can stand shoulder to shoulder with great sword immortals like Mi Hu and Yu Qin. Lu Baqiao asked curiously, how did you know that my senior brother was at the ferry crossing in Japan, and even knew that he had a relationship with Wei Ying? Your kid opened his eyes? Qin Pingan smiled and said, you can guess it. A wind and thunder garden, there is no mirror flower water moon of its own, no landscape mansion report, no unnecessary human relations, and foreign trade and trade are extremely limited. In the eyes of outsiders, Fenglei Garden is an isolated, boring practice. In addition to swordsmanship is still practiced. Dozens of ancestors from the Patriarch Hall, plus unregistered outer disciples, and some stewards and maidservants who help with secular affairs, but more than 200 people. According to the ancestors of Fenglei Garden, this is a place where kendo is taught, not a place to raise idlers. Other mountain tops, every time a Chichi practitioner breaks the boundary, the Patriarch Hall will generally reward a sum of money from the gods. There is no such saying in Fenglei Garden. You can follow Fenglei Garden to advance the gods' money for all you need for sword cultivation in the lower 5 realms, and you can use it to advance the money. After entering the middle 5 realms, you need to repay the money. Go down the mountain to practice. Of course, if you are in the sword vein, the elders of the sect, if he was willing to help pay for the money, Fenglei Garden didn't stop him either. Several mountain dynasties near Fenglei Garden, in addition to the sword fairy embryos sent from Fenglei Garden, there were also named offerings and the title of Kiching who took the initiative to send them to the door. Was a lot of money. Even after Li Tuanjing died that year, no dynasty or vassal country under the mountain dared to take away the titles of sword repair without authorization and deduct the money from the gods. Is really the kind of awe for Fenglei Garden xianxia which has penetrated into the bones. Fenglei Garden sword repair, regardless of men and women, apart from the level of realm, it is also like a temperament carved out of a mold. The sword is straightforward, he is clear about his grievances, and he acts vigorously and resolutely. Once there was a middle 5 swordsman who had his arms cut off during his experience and deliberately left his mouth alive. The owner of the garden, Li Tuanjing, asked clearly what had happened, and went down the mountain alone with a sword to go to the big mountain of the old Zhuang dynasty. Without saying a word, he just cut off the arms of all the 12 people from the other party's Patriarch Hall. The old Zhuang dynasty, once known as the sword repairer like a cloud and crowning a continent, was surprised that no sword repairer was willing to speak out. You should know that Li Tuanjing also made a special trip to the outside of Zhuangjing. He stayed at a ferry crossing over there for 3 full days, and was here deliberately waiting for someone to ask the sword. Lu Baqiao asked, how did you think of coming to our Fenglei Garden? How long will you stay? Qin Pingan said, leave right away. Lu Baqiao joked, I'm really afraid of a little girl? Qin Pingan shook his head and said, you remember to go to Luapa Mountain when you have time. I have to take a trip to Old Dragon City. Lu Baqiao noticed something strange and nodded, not keeping Qin Ping in. The ruins of the Old Dragon City, the magnificent inner and outer cities of the past are being rebuilt, and the construction is in full swing. Is just the Bailey Long Street under the name of Sun Jiashu. The dragon platform, the sea of clouds in the sky, the dusty medicine shop in the alleys, and the Shirley Hawapu that me Jiangxian mist are naturally gone. In the vast night of the world, the daytime of the wild world. Qin Pingan is standing on the shore of the South China Sea at this moment, seeming to close his eyes and rest up his mind, but in fact he is reading a picture of time and time, as if he saw the minefield with his own eyes. After opening his eyes, Qin Pingan immediately returned to the north, choosing his hometown as a foothold, standing on the top of the steps in the long riding alley with both hands and sleeves. Just here in my hometown, there was a heavy rain that fell from the sky and landed on the earth. The battle of Tuiyue Mountain has come to an end, and the sword slashes a pinnacle of the Ascension realm. Qin Pingan walked down the steps slowly. Countless raindrops fell on the ground as if following a blue shirt pouring down the steps. Qin Pingan reached out to touch his eyebrows, walked halfway, suddenly stopped, first glanced at the Yang family medicine shop, and then turned to look towards Luapa Mountain. Even in the heavy rain, the right protector of Luapa Mountain still performed his duty, looking at the gate alone at the foot of the mountain. The millet grains seemed a bit boring and they shook their heads there as if talking to themselves or trembling with someone, with a golden pole in one hand and a trekking pole in the other, pointing at the rain screen saying that you can't see it anymore. Well, in fact, my temper is bad, or bad petty temper, so fierce. Believe it or not, a pole will fall to the ground and a bamboo pole will be beaten into a pig's head. That's it. Let's forget it this time. Let's not take it as an example. To make a discussion, both of us have to have a long memory and a little bit more, otherwise it will always cause trouble, which is not appropriate. Besides, we are all walking in the rivers and lakes. We must be friendly. It is not good to fight and kill. Is it this reason? Well, since you don't deny it, just assume you understand. The little girl in black stopped talking suddenly, wrinkled a small face and two sparse eyebrows, motionless. Could it be that the enemy came to the door? Even the rain stopped? It seems that the other party's Taoism is very high. What should I do? Qin Pingan smiled and asked, why? So fierce? Xiaomi Li suddenly raised her head and laughed. It turned out to be a good mountain lord. Qin Pingan rubbed the head of the millet grains and asked softly, tell me, why is it troublesome? The millet grain carried a golden pole on his shoulder, took the trekking pole and poked the ground, grinned. What the hell, I am composing a wonderful story about the rivers and lakes. Qin Pingan turned his head and looked at a river beyond Hangzhou town. Xiaomi Li quickly stretched out his hand and pulled the sleeve of the good man Shanju and said, don't you eat melon seeds? Qin Pingan gave a hum and stretched out her hand. The millet grains immediately opened the messenger cotton bag and took out a large handful with both hands. When the master of the good man took the melon seeds, she rushed away and brought in two bamboo chairs, one large and one large. Small, sitting side by side eating sunflower seeds together. Xiaomi Li scratched his face and asked, good man mountain lord, when will you go home? Qin Pingan smiled and replied, he'll be back soon, waiting for me to finish engraving a word on the city's head. Sword of Coming Chapter 873. Qin Pingan stood on the spider silk that bridged the 2 rounds of bright moon, took a step back and fell straight, chasing after the ancient great demon who took the initiative to evacuate the battlefield. At the same time he stretched out his hand and tugged, and put the spider silk that the master was too late to take away and put it in his sleeve. Anyway, there was Lu Shen and there was no future trouble. Qin Pingan glanced at the gate. Across the gate there was the Qingming world. There was a lot of Dao Qi in the weather, and it seemed that a large number of mountain Taoists gathered one after another. Bai Zhe and Li Sheng, a pair of friends who had fought side by side and were extremely close friends for thousands of years, turned out to be merciless when they waited for each to take action after thousands of years. For the bright moon that was about to move out of the wild world, one blocked the 4. Jianxiu dragged on for a month, one of them blocked by Zhe's obstruction, and the 2 sides fought into chaos from time to time. Both parties were already 14th realm great monks 10,000 years ago, and because of the great path in their hearts, each took the initiative to abandon the 15th realm. A portrait in white clothes with vast ancient meanings and a portrait in Confucian shirts with great righteousness. Every warp and weft thread on the Saint Confucian shirt is a rule in the world. Looking at it carefully, the Baizhe Fa Xiang was made up of countless real names of monster races. Therefore, every time the 2 sides collapsed, it was a veritable upside-down, great dispute. With great difficulty, Lu Qin found a fleeting opportunity, tweaked a page of Taoism from his sleeve, read a word, and then threw a purple lingering talisman of his own creation, and went through the gate connecting the 2 worlds. Bai Yujing, give good news to the second senior brother, and quickly lead the brother Bai Yujing to pick up the bright moon, and he will be relieved early, and then immediately close the door. Otherwise Bai Zhe will be ruthless and will directly change the battlefield to the Qingming world and punch again. The consequences of breaking the bright moon would be disastrous. With Bai Zhe's realm of cultivation, even in the Qingming world, even if the senior brother Yudo is wearing a robes and a handheld fairy sword, he is destined to be unable to keep it. Once the saint of worship has reached the Qingming world, the great power is so heavy that it is unimaginable. Even more exaggerated than the most sacred master going to the Qingming world. Moreover, Lu Qin knows the temper of the brother best and he is absolutely unwilling to join hands with the enemy, especially by Zhe's way of harmonization, which is not seriously injured. No different as long as Bai Zhe returns to the wild world with Bai Zhe's real body toughness, coupled with Bai Zhe's deep understanding of the world's many Taoisms, I believe he will soon regain his combat power. After all, not everyone can give pointers to the Fei Fei water method. The skinny old man who woke up from his long sleep in the depths of the ruins of the Moon Palace had turned into the appearance of a middle-aged man with just a few breaths during the fall, and he was still in a state of mystery similar to Taoism's return to innocence, without accident. I believe it will soon be transformed into a young posture, and this change is not dictated by blindness, it is an unstoppable manifestation of the road. This ascendant peak great demon straightened a line and fell to the ground. Never wanted to be followed by the guy wearing the lotus crown. The big demon held a long sword wrapped around his back, his heartstrings moved slightly, but quickly weighed the pros and cons, or gave up the urge to hand the sword to kill people. The distance between the two sides was less than 10 feet, and the two sword auras and rainbow lights slammed into the wild land together. The movement was so loud that it vibrated like thunder. The big demon asked in a wild old saying, "Don't help that little master?" Unexpectedly, the human monk smiled in an extremely skilled savage old saying, "You didn't help Mr. Bai either?" Is the peak demon who looks like a young man slightly surprised? "Is it because I missed you, you are not a human being?" A young Terran monk, who would eat and hold on and go to delve into the ancient sayings of the wild. Furthermore, there is indeed a trace of vague familiarity in this monk. Seeing the man smiling and not talking, the ancient monster asked, "What will you do with me?" The person is sincere. See if you can take advantage of your unstable realm and haven't really returned to the top. Find a chance to kill you. One net hangs the void, tens of billions of murderous. The most suitable battlefields are for those who occupy the most favorable terrain. As long as you create a nest in the deep underground, you only need to stop the bugs from flying. For those who throw themselves into the net, the monks of the lower 5 realms, and the soldiers and horses of the mountain similar to the big Li cavalry. In terms of this ascending realm great demon is simply the most terrifying formation master. What's more, this ancient monster is still a pinnacle swordsman who carries a certain or even several ancient swordsmanship. The big demon laughed blankly. Today's young monks, one by one, are so high in realm, have such a bad temper and speak so directly? Compared with the previous ones, the sword repairman only talks about age and is even more weird. The mountain and river scene of the small world, calculated by the 1-year-old age, is obviously less than 50 years old, but it can be shaped according to the long river of time. Calculated by a certain number of years, the sword repair in front of him is still not old, but at any rate it is about 300 years old, and only occasionally reveals 4,000 or 5,000 years old. Looking at the young sword repairman with both hands and sleeves, the big demon sneered and said, "Don't cheat me here. If you are really capable, you are 50% sure, you will have a sword long ago." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Then try it?" The big demon didn't have a reason to think of his Taoist couple, that little lady. It was really ruthless to have a sword. "Don't try it. No need." The real reason was that the servant glanced at the ground intentionally or unintentionally, as if he had seen his mind. Once his feet touched the ground, he would form a formation of heaven and earth, the sky and the ground, and there were many nets. In your own world, call out a few more helpers and fight a 14th level monk. Even if the chance of winning is not great, you have to peel off the other side's skin, such as telling Tuyueshan. Fuck, why is Tuyueshan gone? Has Howran already hit Toyua Mountain? Looking around and seeing the formation of the human race, it didn't look like it at all. This big demon instantly felt cold and quickly weighed the pros and cons. It was better to get back to the 6-hole goblin and goblin under his command in the past years. After eating and drinking, he returned to the peak, and then he asked the sword to be more secure. "I just don't know if those disciples and grandchildren will spread their branches and leaves in the wild world after 10,000 years. Why do you have so many accidents after being awakened by Baizé this time? Is it over?" This big demon looked rather helpless. He became more determined, and had to stubbornly and temper his temper. It is better to do more than to do less, so he said straightforwardly, "Let's talk about it. How can you go on both sides?" Faces nothing. In the past, the spells fell like rain on the earth, and on the earth, regardless of the demon race, only those who had a good chance were able to climb the mountain and practice. In fact, compared with Baze and the newly risen group of monster monks, it is considered a junior in cultivation, and has a mediocre aptitude because it is a matter of sword practice. It is with a supreme existence, squatting on the ground and kowtowing. Lu Xun noticed the change in Qin Pingan's mood and had to remind him, "Don't really fight, the Saint of Rights is going to suffer a lot from fighting with Baizé here." Qin Pingangsen said, "There are counts." Lu Xun breathed a sigh of relief. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "I think the sword in your hand is not bad." The essence of the moonlight from the previous round of Houtsai was condensed into a long sword by this pinnacle great demon using a secret method. After the big demon walked around holding the sword's hand, he shook the sword flower and the moonlight overflowed. "Said it earlier, I will send you." Qin Pingan put out a hand from his sleeve, not to pick up the sword, but to hold the night you behind in his hand. The demon nodded, kind of interesting. After, the double convenience is to make a sword with all your strength and cut a sword against each other. Each body retreated 10 miles, the long sword in the hands of the big demon instantly shattered, turning into a large cloud of rich moonlight, the moonlight as thick as mercury. The big demon's figure dissipated, and a huge pit suddenly appeared on the ground. The demon young sword repairman who returned to the world from the ruins of the moon slightly bent his knees, straightened his waist, and looked up at the human race who had not pursued him. Jianxiu, it seemed that he had to remember that face well. Chen Ping waved his sleeves and took those moonlights into his bag. The sword light flashed and went to the side of the Great Wall of Jianxi. When Qin Pingan stepped on the top of the city, Lu Qin leaned back and lay in the Lotus Dojo. The third master of Baiyujing was relieved, and Pandao finally didn't have to worry about it. It is more than just living like years, it is almost 1,000 years of things done in one day. He Shou fell from the sky, still observing the rules, hanging outside the city, his feet staying on the ground. The old master carefully took out the ancient soldier, only dared to hold it but didn't dare to hold it at all. Narrow sword, He Shou gently pushed the young hidden official who returned to the head of the city. This sword is the weapon left by the old sword immortal after slaying the executor. With a single sword, the old sword immortal let I will transfer this knife to you, which is regarded as a wedding gift for you and Ning Jianxian. Lu Qin craned his neck in the Lotus Dojo inside the crown, staring wide-eyed, and carefully examined the legendary weapon. This is a well-deserved spiritual soldier, compared to the spiritual fairy soldiers of later generations. It's even higher, no need for refining. As long as you can make this type of weapon recognize the master, you can get one or even several ancient magical powers. He Shou reminded, hidden officials must be careful, this blade is extremely difficult to control. The narrow sword Xuanhuan exchanged from the Huawei heavenly demon was once the object of execution in the dragon-slashing platform. Across the wall of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the two blades are adjacent to each other, and there is a difference between monarchs and ministers. The ancient high-ranking god, the executioner once said at the time of this world that those who are lucky enough to see this blade are unfortunate. Chen Pingan nodded, still reaching out to hold the handle of the sheathless long knife without hesitation. There was nothing strange but very docile. He Shou the old master was quite ashamed. Chen Qing had previously held this god's blade in his hand. It was not a bit awkward, that's all. Unexpectedly the young hermit took it and it was still so handy. It is necessary to know that this period of time to temporarily take charge of this weapon is just to suppress the many anomalies caused by that pure divinity, which makes He Shou quite difficult. Lu Xun sighed in his heart. Not only because Qin Pingan is a certain one, but also because the young hermit is a martial artist of the end, and a mysterious master. The entire Qingming world, working hard to collect and search around, not only fished from the broken secrets in the long river of time, but even the great monks traveled far beyond the sky, using the stars as the ferry, moving the stars for battle, and a total of only 18 relics of the gods. There are only 2 of them which can be equal to this item in Lu Chen's eyes. One is in the Baiyujing Biyun building which has been sealed for thousands of years. It is a pair of armor. According to legend, it is one of the 3 fakes of the armor on the armored person. And these 3 fakes have derived from the 3 strategists Jiuan, Jinghuijia, Jinwujia, and Godman Manlujia cast by later generations of military strategists. At that time, Ganlujia cast 8 ancestors' pioneering works in one go. The broken and restricted Xia was picked up by Qin Pingan from Lingzizhai. The rest were Buddha Kingdom, Bud, Mountain Ghost, Narcissus, Xiaoguang, Sai and Sea of Clouds, but most of them were destroyed. Back then Lu Qin originally planned to steal the armor from the Biyun Tower and give it to the junior apprentice, but he failed and was blocked by the host, and then he filed a grievance with senior apprentice Yudo. Yudo didn't feel distressed about this precious treasure, but thought that the little junior brother, now his realm was too low, he couldn't control this precious treasure at all for the time being, at least he had to be a fairy to offset that divine aftertaste. Another magic weapon, which ran outside by Yujing, was in the hands of the wives and aunts of the 14th realms who had a bad temper, which enabled the female crown to acquire a kind of magical power of the caster, enabling her to rely solely on her own power. Forged half-celestial soldiers, even fairy soldiers. The other 16 divine weapons were not owned by the 12 high-ranking gods, and their ranks were about to be inferior. One of them was the narrow sword of Sui Chu Gong Wu Shuangjiang. The result was tossed all the way. The Great Wall of Jianxi was again obtained by Qin Pingan. And this kind of magic weapon has another weirdness. It will be very smooth when used by a pure martial artist, and there are almost no sequelae. On the other hand, if a qi practitioner holds the treasure in his hand, he must be careful and careful, even if he is successfully refined by the cultivator. It is still easy to rebel. Qingming world, there have been more than a dozen such tragedies in history. The monk's Taoism is infiltrated, imperceptibly, and he will change his temperament without knowing it. The most tragic time was an ascendant monk who seemed to be in a madness. He almost broke the barrier between the heavens and the heavens with the help of magical weapons in his hand, and stabbed him. After breaking the sky, Grandmaster Bai Yujing made the shot himself to fill the hole in the sky, and stopped the younger brother Yudo, who was traveling far away with a sword and planned to chop off the head of the monk, and personally turn that man into a big hole. The wrong monk returned to Bai Yujing, followed him in cultivating for hundreds of years, and finally returned to normal Taoism, and even served as the lord of Bai Yujing. And this Bai Yujing Taoist official is the former city lord of Xinxiao City, and also the Taoist saint who sits on the canopy of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Therefore, Bai Yujing will always pay attention to the whereabouts of every magic weapon and every time it appears. Qin Pingan suddenly asked in his heart, "The nectar armor that was unsold by hanging mountain Lingzi's high back then was deliberately let me pick it up? Whose handwriting? Dao second child. It's not like it, is it Zhou Zi?" Lu Xinhuan sat in the dojo, pinched the tactics with one hand, and put on a silent expression. Qin Pingan immediately understood that it was this guy who had eaten all day and had nothing to do. Take out the narrow knife and cut it out, add the execution, and Qin Pingan stacks the two narrow knives around his waist. Crouched down, Qin Pingan gently took out the two jugs of ashes, one in each hand hanging outside the city head. The jug was against the wall, and with a light knock, both jugs were broken and drifted away in the wind. Returned home. After a long silence, Qin Pingan stood up, and took the initiative to smile with He-Shou. "Master, he just land on the city's head. The specific route for this trip to the barren hinterland, we need to report to the Confucian Temple on the side of the Great Wall of Jianghu. Record files." He-Shou smiled and nodded. Thanks to the understanding of Wensheng's closed disciple, otherwise he really couldn't open his mouth. As a sage who sits here, he asked the 5 sword repairmen about matters. Of course it was reasonable but not necessarily sensible. But since Qin Pingan is willing to take the initiative to mention it as a young hidden official, there is no problem. He-Shou immediately called a Confucian gentleman, and the two fell on the top of the city together. The latter thanked the young hermit. Qin Pingan opened the door and said, "On our trip, we went to Baihua City in the Wild World, the ancient battlefield site named Longhong, Deyue Qingshan. Yunwan Dynasty Jade City, Chengjian Mountain, Xianshan City. Jiuquan Sect. Yiluo to Yueshan. There are 9 places in total." Qin Pingan raised his head. "If you add Mingyu's Haotsai, there will be 10 places." The Confucian gentleman had already taken out the pen, ink and paper and recorded the addresses one by one in the book. The more he listened, the more shocked he became. Except for the relatively unfamiliar Chengjian Mountain, the gentleman couldn't be more familiar with the other locations. Especially the fairy hairpin city dragging down the river, Toyua Mountain. This gentleman was shocked and even more absurd. If the person in front of him was the last hermit of the Great Wall of Jianghu, he couldn't help but say something. Questioning the true and false is not because he doesn't want to believe it, but it's too unbelievable, it makes people incredible. Baihua City, a barren sect named Head Mountain Gate, the sect was destroyed except for the immortal realm suzerain who barely escaped from birth at the price of damaging the Yinshan. The other 5 realm palm disciplines and the earth immortal monster cultivator are all dead. The ancient battlefield of Longhong after was swept away by sword light. However, Qin Pingan did not forget to mention that the Confucian Temple still needs to ask Qi Tingji and the others for the specific combat achievements of the 2 places. Old master, he sat cross-legged, squinted his beard and smiled happily. Hidden officials Qin Pingan, Ning Yao, Qi Tingji, Lu Ji, criminal officials Haosu. When these 5 swordsmen sword repairers from the Great Wall of Sword Qi traveled together, they were so long and unstoppable. After, the young hermit set about breaking the Xiandan city, which is known as the highest city in the world, into 2 pieces and smashing the Patriarch Hall. Hearing this, He-Shou laughed. The gentleman who was in charge of picking up the pen was so stunned that he didn't dare to write the pen for a while and had to ask, "Hidden officer, the fairy hairpin city is beaten in 2? Can I ask a digression how?" Interrupted? Qin Pingan sat cross-legged, originally clenching his fists, gently resting on his knees, smiled and raised his hands at this moment. The Confucian gentleman understood. The current city lord of Feishing City, the old monk Xuanpu, has been killed. Qin Pingan said, beheaded by criminal officer Haosu. This ascending realm great demon is really an ancient mysterious snake, and even a demon pill can be preserved. Generally, this level of catch and fight can be achieved only when the strength of the two sides is very different. One side will kill it instantly, such as the flying sword. According to the agreement, Qin Pingan gave the criminal Haosu to the criminal officer, and he kept it in his opponent's name to help Haosu atone for his merits and fulfill the agreement with the Chinese temple of Confucius. For Qin Pingan, it is a good thing for Haosu to go to the Qingming world to bear the title of the last criminal officer. Yan Ming and Dong Huafu, who are the Yuanyu sword repairmen, are temporarily not high in realm, especially before entering the 5 realms. Need to have a senior protector from his family. Also, this person is the most nostalgic, otherwise he would not be obsessed with this spiritual and blessed land in his hometown, as if he was practicing swords in this life, just for revenge. Qin Pingan added, the criminal officer will hand over the real body of Xuanpu together with the demon pill to the Confucian temple, and the Confucian temple will examine the matter. He said in amazement, what a criminal officer! If you don't sound, you have already made a blockbuster, and I have made a great battle for me. If there is a chance, the old man will also sincerely apologize to Haosu. I learned about this person earlier. Cut down Nanguangzeo's head. It's actually nothing. It's just a grievance. The old man just felt that a sword-powered Great Wall criminal officer could not make a half-sword in that battle. He was not even as good as an old deaf child from a demon clan. It was only after I returned to Howran that I began to fight fiercely and fiercely. I really can't afford the title of criminal officer. So at that time I made a suggestion with Li Sheng to throw this band hero into the Forest of Merit, and happened to have a companion with Lu Cha. The one who is in charge of fishing and the other who makes the fire and cooks the rice. Isn't it better than a fairy tale couple? Now it seems that the old man misunderstood Haosu. Qin Pingan glanced at the bright moon that was getting closer and closer to the gate, and said, Haosu may not personally give out the true body of Xuanpu, it may be handed over by Sect Master Qi, and I hope that the Confucian temple will be accommodating. He nodded and said, these are all trivial things. I can agree to it here. Qin Pingan nodded slightly and then continued, I'm in Xinjiang City, and I have joined hands with the head teacher of Baiyu Jinglu to do another thing, which is to get the blessed land in the bag. Afterwards, head teacher Lu, before returning to Qingming, he will hand over the Yaoguang blessed land to the Confucian temple in exchange for 3 chances to return to Howran in the future. In addition, Qin Pingan only briefly talked about the process, which is convenient for the Confucian temple to find opportunities to verify. Was named Yaoguang Fudi by Gui Lingxiang, the founder of Xiandan City. In fact, it is the root of Xiandan City's reputation as the arsenal of the world by the wilds. Without this first-class blessed land, the future fairy hair city would be tantamount to completely losing the source of weapon casting. Master Lu suddenly no longer felt sorry for those invaluable Sanshan talisman, moon talisman, and sword talisman. Is all small money, a cultivator who claims to be poor and poor every day, cares about what a small amount of heaven and earth treasure gods do. He coughed, stretched out a hand, patted the arm of the gentleman's pen, patted it gently and said with earnestness, the hermit and Lu Zhangjiao, this time sincerely cooperated and won the Yaoguang Fudi. One thing, the primary and secondary point of credit, still need to be realistic and write the first one. The gentleman immediately understood his mind, his brilliant pen gave birth to flowers, and his writing was intertwined and drip-proof. Lu Shen didn't care about this, but he didn't understand it. According to Bai Yujing's intelligence, this old master, he was a notorious and unreasonable old man, so he hadn't directly spoken to a corrupt scholar. Regarding the Battle of Drago River, Qin Pingan was very brief, only talking about a tug-of-war, and he forcibly intercepted 30% of the water transport from the hands of the old throne Fei Fei. Qin Pingan asked, does Mr. He drink? He smiled and asked, don't the hidden official know about this? Qin Pingan was stunned, a little confused, I know what this kind of thing is doing. He laughed and stretched out his hand, I haven't been drinking for many years, but today I can make an exception. This old master wine can drink, but he really doesn't like it. It belongs to the wine that even old talents could not persuade. What really made he feel comfortable was that the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi did not understand the so-called accompany saints who ate cold pig's head. He did not understand the slightest trivial matter. This means that the relationship with the Confucian temple is so delicate that people do not think that he is one of the Confucian scholars. The attitude towards the Confucian temple, especially the subsage family, is not close, even if it is not close. As for the resentment, Otherwise, Qin Pingan would have been able to understand the details of the Confucian Temple Academy and the sages of the sages and elders in his work style during his tenure as a young hermit. Qin Pingan laughed and handed a pot of wine to the old master, who was quite old. It was the Xianxia wine from his own wine shop. Lu Xun asked heartily, "Where is that senior?" On the way to the moon with amulet on both sides. It seemed that the long sword that came from outside the sky disappeared, and even Lu Qin was missing. Qin Pingan gave an answer that was not an answer with his heartfelt voice. "I didn't say it before. That feeling of mind has been cut off by senior brother Chui." Lu Xun asked again, "The other, where are you in Aquarius?" Qin Pingan said, "I'm already at home. I just arrived in Qilong Alley. While the realm is still there, I will confirm whether Master Lu has left behind Shiro." Lu Xun complained, "Pan Dao, this person has always been harmless. Besides, as for your student, how clever the method is in the matter of spirits, would you not be clear?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "You must have a defensive heart. There are 2 shops in Qilong Alley, one is called Chao Tu and the other is called New Year's Eve. Chao Tu is a wild vegetable that can be seen everywhere in Qin Pingan's hometown. It is also known as golden cauliflower. According to ancient records, seedlings multiply in February and bloom in summer and autumn with fine yellow flowers. The leaves are in the shape of an inverted heart, and the plaques are like spirals. As for the word New Year's Eve, it means more beautiful, the homophony is overwhelming, the world is peaceful, to eliminate the evil and to bless peace. This is also one of the reasons why Qin Pingan bought 2 shops without saying a word. Of course, the more important thing is that it is related to the fact that he can own 2 properties for a small amount of money. Lu Qin said tentatively, "The next battle at Toyue Mountain, why don't you let Xiang Dao explain the process in detail? You can just relax your mind for a while. You need to prepare early for the fall." He has been setting up a stall in Liju Cave for many years, and Lu Qin thinks he is good at eloquence. Qin Pingan nodded. Lu Xun got a bit of mind. He slid out from the Lotus Dojo, squatted beside Qin Pingan, smiled and waved with the 2 opposite people. Isho smiled and got up. The courtesy he should have is indispensable, and he salutes the 3rd master of Baiyujing. The Confucian gentleman was even more like a big enemy, immediately got up and followed Isho together. Lu Qin got up and made a return with the 2 of them. Qin Pingan said goodbye to the 2 of them, saying that he would go to the city head next door to find someone to talk about the past and return soon. Only one Lu Qin remained, and he became a storyteller. When Isho heard that Qin Pingan had attacked the mountain more than 3,000 times with his sword, he finally cut ahead of the ascended peak great demon with his own sword. It was the chief culprit of the great ancestor of Toyue Mountain. The gentleman seemed to be numb. It was Master He's turn to be stunned and speechless for a long time. He raised his head and drank the wine in the pot. The old master wiped the corner of his mouth and turned his head to look outside the city. Qin Kingdus last soul, slaying the executor, one of the high gods with 1 sword. I have to admit that there is actually no great wall of sword chi in the world. But there are still sword repairs from the Great Wall of Sword Chi. After Qin Kingdus' sword was released, Qin Pingan still asked the sword to support Yueshan, and the sword flew soaring. Moreover, according to the teaching of Lu Zhang, the culprit of the great demon was still a sword repairman. Lu Xun squatted there learning from a young hidden official with 2-handed sleeves. He smiled. If you add Li Zhen, then the disciples of Kaishan and Guanmen of Tueshan Dezu seem to have died under Qin Pingan's sword. In addition to the Battle of Toyue Mountain, there were only 3 monsters in the fairyland. There are naturally more monks from the Jade Pu realm and the Earth Fairy Demon race. However, one of the immortal demon clan was replaced by a nascent soul realm sword repair. Lu Qin intercepted fragments of the time-traveling picture. The sound, appearance of those monster monks were all made into hanging statues by the Master Lu. However, Lu Qin knew Qin Pingan's plan, so all the exploits other than the culprit of the great demon were allocated to Qi Tingji's Dragon Elephant Sword sect and Ningyao's Feishing City. These brushstrokes can be described as shocking and terrifying war exploits, and Zhongtu Confucian Temple will carefully record the files. Qin Pingan first went to Ma Kushuan and Yu Shiwa's neighborhood. Yu Shiwu clasped his fists and smiled, "I have seen Lord Qin Shan. Except for the rest of the time there is nothing left." Ma Kushuan's first disciple and maidservant did not dare to speak. As for the disciple of Ma Kushuan, he was confirming the identity of the Taoist in front of him. Qin Pingan held his fist in return for Yu Shiwu. Just as Ma Kushuan said, Qin Pingan was jealous when he first met at Dadu Temple. A young man with a hatchet hanging on his waist suddenly took a step and asked, Master Qin, can you still accept disciples in Luapa Mountain? As a result, Ma Kuxuan kicked his on the ass, fell a dog to eat shit. The teenager didn't care, patted the ground with a palm, his body turned and fell to the ground. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "We will not accept disciples for the time being." The young man still didn't give up and asked, "Can you save me a place first?" Qin Pingan shook his head. Ma Kuxuan reached out and held the closed disciple's head and said with a smile, "A person rarely cares about his own shadow, but it doesn't matter if he has stepped on a foot anyway. The people on the mountain are alone, it's a trivial thing that doesn't hurt." Qin Pingan frowned slightly as if he couldn't guess what medicine was sold in Ma Kuxuan's gourd, so he didn't talk to him, just turned his head and asked Yu Shiwu, "Where are you going next?" Yu Shiwu smiled and said, "I plan to go to the high city built by Imo Jiajue first." Then Qin Pingan came to Wei Jin and Chao Jun. Wei Jin talked about his predecessor Xuanhuan with his heartfelt voice. Qin Pingan looked solemn, nodded and said, "Fortunately, you got those sword intents, otherwise it will be very troublesome and troublesome." Wei Jin asked, "I changed my mind halfway, didn't you go to the battlefield?" Qin Pingan said, "I have been detouring and finally walked to Toyue Mountain." Wei Jin pointed to the big moon in the sky and asked with a smile, "The result is such a big movement?" Qin Pingan laughed off. Chao Jun asked coldly, "Master Qin, you can tell me if I come to the Great Wall of Jianghu earlier, can I enter the Summer Palace?" Qin Pingan was a little surprised. He didn't know what Chao Jun asked about this. After thinking about it, he still treated people with sincerity and gave an answer, "I'm too boring to get in." It's not that Chao Jun's talents are not enough, but that the Summer Palace presided over the battle in those years and all lined up troops. The sole purpose is to pursue the smallest battle loss in exchange for the greatest battle exploits, to delay the war for longer, and to delay the day as much as possible. To drag a day is a day. If it were changed to a battlefield that was evenly matched with Chao Jun's slanting character, most of it would make a difference, but compared to Lin Junbai and Scrofulariaceae, Chao Jun would definitely be inferior to them. After returning to his hometown, Qin Pingan specifically learned about Lu Sunmai's seed brother Lu Xuanmei, fellow villager Chao Jun's temperament, and the style of leading soldiers, because Wei Xian and Chao Jun had both eaten with Lu Xuanmei in the Dali army. Although they both held the title of a monk with the army, in fact they each led a battalion of cavalry in the end. Lu Xuanmei is no doubt about employing people. Regarding colleague Chao Jun, Wei Xian gave a saying that he is good at skirts and feet. Generally speaking, there are both praise and criticism. It sounds good, it means the use of soldiers is dangerous and it is ugly, it means that it is a shameful attack for the sake of battle regardless of the cost. Of course Chao Jun himself will also take the lead. Chao Jun asked, "On the Toyue mountainside did you go with the Ascended Realm Great Demon?" Qin Pingan ignored Chao Jun's words, but took out 2 jugs of wine and handed them one to Wei Jin. Chao Jun stretched out his hand, "Lord Qinshan, don't favor one and the other." Qin Pingan knocked out Chao Jun's palm with one elbow and asked Wei Jin, "Have you heard of the monster sword Xiaohui Ting of Hongye Jianzong?" Wei Jin nodded and said, "Of course, but it seems that he didn't show up during the last war. It is said that he fell in the mountain gate to recuperate." Qin Pingan stretched out his thumb, wiped the corners of his mouth and said with a smile, "I slaughtered it easily this time." Wei and Jin did not say much, raised the jug and lightly touched Qin Pingan. Only the sword repairman of the Great Wall of Sword Chi will know how the monster sword repairer is. Wei Jin asked with a smile, "This far tour you'll just accept it when you see it?" Qin Pingan smiled, "I still make do with it and it's a little bit rewarding." Wei and Jin joked, "I am the ancestor of Tiyueshan, so I must regret saying such a thing." Qin Pingan nodded and said, "It is necessary. Chao Jun is a little helpless since he can't even talk. What Hongye Jianzong, I have never heard of it. What is the allusion to, getting it right when you see it?" The great ancestor of the wild and Qin Pingan talked about this for what? In the capital of the Clouded Dynasty, Qin Pingan obtained a set of sword formations as the center of the defense formation from the hand of the Emperor Yi Bao, who was named One Step. This set of sword formations, 12 pocket flying swords, were placed like a pen on the red coral penholder. So, to be precise, they are 2 fairy soldiers. At that time Yi Bao was full of confidence and felt that he could smash Qin Pingan. It was just 1,000 calculations. He could not count as the Qin Daoyu, who was wearing a lotus crown and a green gauze robe, but pretending to be a hermit. Qin Pingan, and with a third-in-chief by Yu Jing next to him, was able to dismantle the formation, but the meat buns beat the dogs and there was no return. Earlier, I heard Lu Chen said that the owner of Lin Langlu, one of the 12th floors of Baiyujing's 5 cities. Most of the family's children have a Ji suffix in their names. If Chen Pingan is willing to cut this coral pen holder, the price can be more than the real value. Double. Zigzag suffix. The Yao family, Yao Jingji, Yao Xianji, and Yao Lingji of the frontier army of the Dequan dynasty all carry the word Ji. As for the old lady in Xiandan City, the ascending ghost great demon of the Dao Qianghu, she is the ancestor of Xuanpu, the master of Wudi, and her real body is actually a mosquito. At that time she was forced to leave a tale of unknown origin. It was a well-deserved high-ranking immortal soldier. The 2 characters were inscribed with a worm and bird seal, Flick. Anyone who dared to name it this way should not be underestimated, such as the Tongye sect of Tongyi's Hao, the Daiyue Qingshan in the wild world. A whisk, crimson long wooden handle, more than 3,600 white silk threads of unknown material, and a small gold ring to embellish the whisk. This thing was succeeded by jianghu for 2,000 years, but it has never been refined as a life thing, and on the path of darkness, it does not get the slightest bit of evil filth. In addition, 30% of the drag down the river water transport, and the pure moonlight from the bright moon in bright color. This trip is really rewarding. After drinking, Chen Pingan got up and said, "You may need to withdraw from the city for a while." Wei Jin suddenly raised his head. Chen Pingan said, "Unfortunately the realm is borrowed." Wei Jin laughed angrily. "Why doesn't Master Lu lend me the realm? Even if I lend it to the Wei Jin, maybe he will be engraved by the wilds in turn." Chen Pingan smiled at Chao Jun. "Look, we de Jiangxian Wei can enter the summer palace." The body shape disappeared in a flash and he returned to the city of Luqian and Heishou. The battle record has ended and Heishou has been waiting here for a long time. Chen Pingan clasped his fist and said, "I'm sorry Mr. He, let everyone withdraw from that half of the city." Heishou smiled and agreed. Before leaving he hesitated. The old master turned out to hold a fist with Chen Pingan. "It seems to be in this city. One is not a disciple of Confucianism for the time being, and the other is not a Confucian temple to accompany the saints. It is more like a river and lake encounter." After Heishou and the gentleman left, Chen Pingan stood on the side of the city, raised his head and glanced at the sky and the moon. Han Xiaosa returned to Haoran through the place where she returned to the ruins. She followed the decree of her brother. She really went to study in Baidi City, especially reading a few more books on war. The ancient demon who returned to the world, after confirming that no one was being followed, swaggered and flew away, and then saw a tall woman in white clothes. Chen Pingan made a point to the toe and swept down the city. Chen Pingan stood on the ground, facing the tall city head and said, "Excuse me, Master Lu, and show up for a while." Lu Chen was puzzled and joked, "Is it a matter of lettering that needs to be done by the poor? This is a bit embarrassing." Chen Pingan was silent. Lu Shen did not continue to gag, and from the Lotus Dojo, a mustard heart came out and appeared beside Chen Pingan in the form of a Taoist figure taught by Yujing's 3 palms. Lu Shen could not guess Chen Pingan's mind. On this trip, he followed the 5-sword repairmen all the way to Toil, and finally Chen Pingan succeeded in slashing the wild ancestral mountains. If the ancestors of Tuyueshan made the Great Wall of Jianxi an old almanac, then Chen Pingan made Tuyueshan an old almanac as well. In addition, the move to drag the moon is about to be completed. To talk about splitting the accounts, it means sitting on the ground and splitting the spoils, and it is not his turn. However, all the damages can be ignored, adding a round of bright moon color to the Qingming world. The benefits of the road are immeasurable. Lu Chen has made up his mind that the poor road has completed his merits and returned to Baiyujing. "Brother, you have to squeeze a smile for yourself. Give yourself a thumbs up. You still have to have 2 hands, otherwise the matter is endless. Are you embarrassed to complain about the slack and laziness of the younger brother in the previous 100 years? Not only have they made up for the last 100 years, but even the merits of the next 100 years will be earned early." Furthermore, the sword box on Lu Ji's body was borrowed or not given by Peng Dao. Chen Pingan took off the lotus crown and returned it to Lu Chen. The green gauze robe on his body also dissipated on its own, and then put away the 2 narrow knives folded on his waist. Only faced the great wall of sword chi with the back of the sword in the blue shirt. Daofa Haoran Shitian. Sword energy lasts forever, Thunder Pond is heavy. Qidong Qin. Fierce. Above the 2 sections of the city, there are 18 characters in total. There are Dao Fa Haoran and Shitian engraved on one side. Thunder Pond heavy ground. On the other side, the sword energy will last forever. Qidong Qinmeng. Old Master Heishou began to rush people. Everyone must evacuate the city head immediately. Wei Jin and Chao Jun have already left by themselves. Ma Kuxuan, Yu Shiwu and his party have also gone south, and the rest of the foreign monks who have come here to travel here have to leave one after another. Chen Pingan said, "This trip to the barren hinterland, the guardian who walked with the hidden official Chen Pingan to protect the way is awe-inspiring. On the battlefield of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, there are two types of guardians. One is the sword servant who is enshrined by the family and is from a rebel background, similar to the great sword immortal Li Tumi of the Yan family and Nailan Yeshing of Ningfu. The sword servant said that there is no waiter." The derogatory meaning. The other is a high-level sword repair, responsible for guarding the low-level sword repair, so that the latter will not die prematurely in the war, hence the name swordmaster. Therefore, the guardian of the guard not only walks along the road, but also guards the younger generation. The teacher of the teacher, every time he passes the sword, it saves people and preaches. Lu Chen broke through Xuanhuan with a solemn expression. "Amazing Lu Shen, fortunate to be with you. Ping's grass floats without roots, floating in the water without indulging in it. 10,000 years of criminals and sword repairs, like duckweed floating in the sky, dead without graves. Only sword energy will last. And the natal flying sword of Qin Qingdu, the eldest sword fairy, is named duckweed. The great wall of Jianxi that has stood for thousands of years, and the last hermit of the last generation of Jianxi." Looking at each other silently. Qingshan sword repair, holding a long sword night tour, with fierce sword aura far away in the highest part of the city to engrave. The person who engraved the word Ping is Qin Pingan, the swordsman. Sword of Coming Chapter 874. There is still a 4D chapter before 1 o'clock in the morning. Lu Chen rolled his sleeves and waved his hand to create a ban on heaven and earth, helping Qin Pingan to hide the bleak weather of the fall, and reminded with his heart, "Since you have planned for a long time things far away in the sky, anyway you can't control it. Then leave it alone, it's better to clean up the immediate matter first and return to the city immediately." Half of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, where He Dao is located, can help Qin Pingan to stabilize Dao's heart and realm. The mountains and rivers within the small world of the human body, a heart of Tao like a flat boat, drifting in the stormy waves, then the half of the Great Wall of Jianxi where He Dao is located is the best ballast in the world. Qin Pingan nodded and said hoarsely, "Wait a moment." Lu Shen asked, "Why don't you fall to the front of the city? At least you don't have to suffer so much." Qin Pingan gave an answer that made Lu Chen speechless. "The monk fell into the realm and the mountains and rivers are broken, but they can benefit the martial arts. According to the method taught by Uncle Li, I can find out more of the mountain and river context formed by flesh and blood. It can also be regarded as a means to improve the physique of the martial artist." Lu Shen instantly understood. Wufu is full of vigor and knowledge. Take a trip to the barren world. For Qin Pingan, who was in a terrible fall, of course he couldn't afford to suffer for nothing. At the moment, there was a drag oil bottle beside the two of them. It remained silent all the time, carefully looking at the two human monks. A young human sword repairer and a self-proclaimed helper by the former. One decline, one rise. This makes it very surprised. The 14th realm cultivation base can also borrow people? This is more shocking than seeing a 14-level monk. The world after 10,000 years is really surprising. Through the picture scroll of time given to it by that existence and several books similar to Xianxia, it learned that the person in front of it was a Taoist priest. In the ancient times, the world's Qimen, regardless of the human race or the monster race, were collectively referred to as Taoists. I never imagined that there is now a monk's way, as if the word Dao has been monopolized by the Taoist priests. The lotus crown worn on the head of the young Taoist priest is one of the status symbols of the Baiyujing Taoist priests. Lu Chen was also observing the ancient great monster who was repairing the ascending realm sword. "It's only a few steps away, and am worried that the other party will give myself a sword without asking indiscriminately." At this moment, the big demon turned into a young face, looking at the age of a weak crown, yellow hat and blue shoes and a linen shirt. But it doesn't seem to be a bit hostile, on the contrary, it looks like a horrendous scholar who travels to study, or from a relatively poor family background. The problem is what it looks like as a fart. It is indeed an ancient monster whose combat power can be completely comparable to the barbaric old throne. Lu Shen asked in his heart, "It followed up to the top of the city? This guy's natal magic seems to be able to control the heartstrings, we all have to relax a little." Qin Pingan nodded and said, "Let it follow." Qin Pingan certainly can't believe it, but she can't believe it. On the road of spiritual practice, I am used to complicating simple problems all the time, thinking and thinking more and more. It seems to be thankless, but in fact, in order to one day face all the messy and complicated situations and be able to solve complex problems. Simplified, this is another kind of flower and fruit at the same time. Lu Xun stretched out his hand to put Qin Pinggan's arm, shrank the mountains and rivers and came to the city together. When he arrived at the head of the city, Qin Pinggan sat on the ground and sat cross-legged on the head of the city. He put his hands on his knees and exhaled a heavy breath. Although his body and spirit were bleak, the martial artist was so strong that he still made the monster look at him with admiration and physical toughness. "I'm not losing to the monster race." Seeing the young race's palm facing up, breathing and breathing gently, it is a life thing that moves the 5 elements, its face is 7 orifices, the mist is like white snakes and between the sleeves, it is like a green dragon lingering around. It nodded in approval and said, "Good weather." Somehow when I came here I had already learned the Diya dialect of Zhongtu Shenzhou and the Dali Mandarin dialect of Aquarius. Lu Xun reminded, "It is best to take out all the external objects that have not been practiced." Qin Pinggan took a deep breath and took off the night tour behind him, a sword-raising gourd that had been a hip flask for many years. Take out the Xingxian can 2 narrow knives with different kings and ministers. A whisk, a set of sword formations and a coral pen holder. 3 treasures of the rank of immortal soldiers. The eyelids trembled when he saw the ascending realm monster race sword repair. Is not an ancient soldier, or a fairy soldier cast by later generations. Lu Xun was just like a babbling housekeeper and continued to ask, "How to deal with this inexplicable guy in front of me?" Qin Pinggan can rest assured to be a hand-handling shopkeeper. Lu Xun can't rest assured that there is an ascendant peak swordsman next to him. If he is the only one present, even face-to-face quarrels will be indifferent, but if he wants to protect Qin Pinggan, Lu Xun is really worried. Qin Pinggan obviously did not intend to just pick up his sons like this. He was not in a hurry to become immersed and turned around and asked, "Did you give yourself an alias?" The big demon immediately knelt down and whispered, "Never." Qin Pinggan thought for a while and suggested, "It's better to say like a candle, like a candle, like a candle, like a candle. How do you feel about it?" The big demon nodded and said, "Good name." It seemed to feel that it was not sincere enough and added a saying, "Fortunately." Qin Pinggan smiled and said, "But in my hometown, whether monks or ordinary people want to take root, you can give yourself a pseudonym as soon as the household registration file says." The real body of this great demon is a spider. And spiders are also called proki and shizi. So in the small town of Qin Pinggan's hometown, there is an old saying that has been passed down orally from generation to generation: spiders gather Pepsi. The old people use spiders to make webs as a sign of joy. They saw spider webs at home. No matter whether there are spiders in the webs or not, the owner of the house does not usually clean them. Only during the New Year's Day the old man gently rolls it up with a broomstick. And then let the children at home take the broom and send it out. The child holding the broom on the way also needs to say a few words like, "Thank you for the old, please add the new happy," which means saying goodbye to the old and welcoming the new. When Qin Pinggan left his hometown for a long trip, he discovered that Howren had the custom of Qixi festival. The women wore new clothes and placed melon and fruit cakes in the courtyard. They looked like spider webs as well as handmade colorful embroidered paper cuts. After burning incense and candles, the woman held the colored thread in her hand facing the lamp shadow, and threaded the thread through the pinhole, in order to be clever with the gods. If the real body of the great sword immortal Zhang Tianlu, is a kind of auspicious beast, then the spider is a kind of happy insect that can predict auspiciousness. Qin Pinggan also found patterns on some temple murals and some literati calligraphy and paintings with spider silk hanging down and spiders hovering, and it was called Happy Falling from the Sky. You must know that Qin Pinggan is a man who is on the threshold of King Fifang's shop and refuses to move without waiting for the phrase, Gong Shi Fa Kai. It smiled and said, "Let me think about it." Flicking through the books in Xianhu, planning to find a more elegant pseudonym for herself. Lu Xun rubbed his eyes. This fellow Taoist even had a somewhat shy look. I met for the first time in that round of Haotsai Mingyue, but it was not such a gentle temper. It glanced at the vast territory south of the city head, and remembered the previous conversation. "If the master expels you, you will return a swordsmanship to me." The host. The light and fluttering sentence of one of the highest ones, it was like Baizé held his head and smashed hundreds of big pits on the ground in the early years, and then dragged it to the bright moon and threw it fiercely, smashing into an old nest. Its swordsmanship in the early years, it was the sword holder who had been asking for it. As for 10,000 years later, Baizé let it wake up and then wake up. Of course, after climbing to practice, Baizé has been severely taught. When it heard that name, it immediately came to a sudden. I dare not say one more word. Even because it was worried about troubles, it took the initiative to use an ancient closing the mountain secret technique to block all reveries related to the word master. Only left a very heavy thought for himself, reminding himself not to disobey this person, a human monk named Qin Pingan. So Lu Qin said that it is good at manipulating heartstrings, and what he said is true. Qin Pingan said, "We have 3 chapters of the law and we have returned to the world with me. Taoists must abide by it." It sternly said, "Master, please speak." In the gap between finding a name for herself, she also learned a lot of how to call her. "First, after returning to my hometown with me, you are not allowed to shoot at a trainer who is below the Yupu realm, no matter what the reason is." It nodded, the Qi trainer under the upper 5 realms, all magic powers, all attacking magic weapons, even the flying swords of sword repair, just treat it as tickling it and worry about it. Secondly, in the ascendant realm, the 2 monks of Yupu and Immortal encounter conflicts. You can detain them and ban them, but you can't kill them without authorization based on your preferences. It still has no objections. The avenue is dangerous, so be careful. When I woke up this time, I first encountered a large number of sword repairers. There was a bright moon in the sky. No, it was 2 bright moons. If you said nothing, it was gone. Then I looked down and added that there was a missing moon in the world. Mountain. Today's awe-inspiring world is too scary. The sun reminded him that he seemed to be restrained, but in fact he was kind, and he had to know what was good or bad. Finally, when you get to my hometown, you will treat it as if you were going to the village, do as the customs, talk less, watch more, practice carefully, and be a good person. In addition to these 3 things, my downfall mountain has few rules and no landscape taboos. In addition to the realm, you still need to cover up so that you don't need to deliberately conceal your identity as a monster. It nodded, I have written all the reminders from the sun. Qin Pingan glanced at Lu Shen. In fact, Qin Pingan is also very strange. It seems that the amiable young monk in front of him is too far apart from the ascendant swordsman who first met on the side of the bright moon and on the spider silk. Speaking like a schoolboy who is listening to the teacher's lectures, Lu Shen said in his heart, "It may be a kind of secret swordsmanship to cut the character, suppressing all the fierce nature, this kind of thing, you are not unfamiliar." Qin Pingan said, "In the future in the Howran world, I will help you to be rational when you encounter an unreasonable monk. You have to adapt quickly to this kind of going to the village and doing the same." It smiled and said nothing. After all, is an ascending realm sword repairman. In the wild world where the strong respects the strong, he still has to rely on the realm to speak. Qin Pingan didn't take it seriously and smiled, "After talking about the truth, you will come out again." He just hummed, "It's pretty much the same." It saw that Qin Pingan was going to heal his injuries and said, "Young master, I have given myself a pseudonym, Unfamiliar, is it appropriate? If the young master thinks it is feasible, he will call me a little stranger later." Lu Shen smiled awkwardly. Eavesdropping is really not authentic. At the same time, Lu Qin secretly raised the level of swordsmanship of this senior Shizhu. Qin Pingan is not much better. He takes one bite at a time and finally cultivates a kind of supernatural powers that can be heard by the old cook, but then he has another one? Qin Pingan smiled and said, "What's wrong with this? But you can just call my name later." It nodded and said, "Okay, son. Xiao, this is a meeting ceremony." Qin Pingan spread out his palms, like a pocket-sized moon, rising slowly among the mountains and rivers in the palm of his palm, hanging high in the sky. The moonlight shattered by the long sword was broken and round. Lu Shen smiled. "This is my gift to the sun in return." It twisted the bright moon with 2 fingers, gently put it in its sleeve and then turned its palm. There was an ancient relic, xianxia, full of moonlight and snowy white. Under closer inspection, more than 100 buildings, ancient styles, row upon row. Lu Shen's eyes hinted that Qin Pingan, "Don't be so polite. This is a veritable former site of the Moon Palace, such as the Dragon Palace of the ancient Dragon King of the 4 Seas." Qin Pingan thanked him and put it in his sleeve without hesitation. After Lu Xianying and Xie Yu's wedding, there was money for them. Lu Shen sighed and roughly guessed Qin Pingan's thinking, the boy with good fortune really is a boy with good fortune. Qin Pingan began to stabilize his realm, just like in the world, he had to quell his rebellion and clean up the old mountains and rivers. Returning from the end of Wu Fu to the real level fell to a level of vigor. From the monk's Yupu realm he fell all the way to the Jindan realm. Lu Qin and Taoist Shizhu sat farther away, chatting together. I took out 2 pots of special peach pulp immortal brew from Baiyu Jingshin Xiaoqing, and took out a piece of talisman paper as big as a sketch of a bucket as a tablecloth, put a few dishes with wine, hand-picked cucumbers, cold pig ears, and finally a plate pine nuts and almonds are full of dang dang. Looking at the slightly restrained Taoist Shizhu, Lu Qin became more and more surprised, controlling his mood and changing his mind. This is obviously a method of ancient gods. These old predecessors have used many lost methods, which is really eye-opening. Lu Qin asked with a smile. Senior Shizhu returned to the world this time, how do you feel about it? Xiao Emo looked melancholy and said, there are 2 things that are 2 different things, but friends are scattered, the heart is like a knife, and the grief is broken, and the feelings are uncontrollable. Pause for a moment. Xiao Emo raised the wine glass and made a more concise summary of his mood, just one word, bitter. Lu Qin followed by raising the wine glass and tapping it lightly. I heard this, the trail is about to stop senior. Xiao Emo said, but it's okay to say. Lu Qin smiled and said, life is hard to come by. Besides, there are people who share hardships and suffering will not be so bitter. Xiao Emo was deeply impressed and smiled, friend Lu Taoist sees you well. Lu Qin asked, the predecessors seem to be in the later generations. The reputation is not obvious? The implication is that you have such a high level of predecessor, why you have not left a series of feats in the wild world, which will be passed down in the world for thousands of years. Xiao Emo nodded and said, I like to concentrate on swordsmanship. I don't like to fight with anyone. I'm really good at doing things with power and prestige. Lu Qin sighed, the hero is nameless, it's wrong in the world. You must go with your predecessor. After Xiao Emo and Lu Qin each drank a glass of wine, they thought for a while, I once hunted down Yangji, but unfortunately I was not good at swordsmanship. It took more than a month to kill Yangji, but Junyan stopped and saved him. I was one enemy too and I ran away if I couldn't fight. Lu Qin shook his hand and almost spilled the drink on the ground. He quickly cast a spell to pour the drink back into the glass, then drank it with his head up, wiped the corners of his mouth and quickly apologized. I heard that the feat is like a thunderbolt in the sky. Got a gaff. Although Xiao Emo had doubts in his heart, a 14th level monk, why did he make a fuss about this kind of thing? But the other party was like that. Joining, Xiao Emo also smiled a little more on his face. There is no way this ancient great demon that has been sleeping for a long time has more memories, or those tragic battles in which all the gods fell like heavy rain 10,000 years ago, and the corpses of the great demon piled up into mountains after the death of the great demon. Nowadays, the majestic mountains that are regarded as the ancestral mountains and main peaks in the barbaric world are almost all turned into remnants of the corpse of the great demon's true body. Naturally, it never feels that any catch and fight is worthy of the word peak. Lu Qin and Xiao Emo talked about the old co-owner of Diluo and the ancestors who moved to the mountain. Zhu Wei is still happy now, but on the contrary he was detained by the Confucian temple at the site of the alchemy furnace abandoned by Daozu. Xiao Emo listened seriously, apparently an excellent listener. After Lu Qin finished nagging, he took a sip of wine. It turns out that Zhu Wei and Yang Ji have never formed a Taoist couple. Looking around, Xiao Emo then sighed with emotion. The Tao is uncertain, and the 3 realms are insecure. It is like being in a firehouse, full of suffering, endless karma, and terrible fear. Lu Qin nodded and said, the firehouse in the 3 realms, the clouds and the water are cool, and it is becoming more and more valuable for people to travel freely. Lu Qin picked up a chopsticks dish, chewed slowly and asked curiously, Senior is still studying Buddhism? Xiaoma smiled, I was fortunate enough to listen to a monk's statement under the Bodhi tree. It is beyond the barriers of words and can accommodate guests from all directions. It is truly incomparable. Lu Qin couldn't talk anymore. He has never dared to deal with the Buddha. Xiao Emo asked, the son in his hometown seems to have a major legacy? Lu Qin nodded and shook his head, yes, no more. Wen Hai is careful, young hidden official, 2 completely different kinds of people. Careful, pursue the maximization of profit. Qin Pingan is always pursuing errorlessness and preventing the worst result from appearing. As Qin Ping's successor, Beta Sheng Zheng Zhuzhong in fact, did not rank high on the top of Zhong Tu Shenzhou earlier. Otherwise, Pei Cup brought his disciple Chao Ci back from the Great Wall of Jianqi, and returned to Middle Earth from the Fallen Mountain, and asked about Baidi City. But for the hidden Zheng Zhuzhong, Lu Qin always felt that he couldn't be too high on him. Only 1,000 days is a thief, there is no reason for 1,000 days to prevent thieves. When Zhou Mi felt that Qin Pingan was most complacent, and the Saint of Rights never sat in the awe-inspiring world, the opportunity was indeed rare and fleeting. Then Zheng Zhuzhong, who has already entered the 14th realm, is indeed the most suitable person to play against Zhou Mi's irrational hand. The question is, did Qin ping and intercede with Zheng Zhuzhong? Or did you do something quietly? In either case, Lu Qin felt that Qin Pingan would pay a high price. Xiao Mo said, "When I follow the sun back to my hometown, I think there is always a chance to do my best." Lu Qin smiled and said, "You can have it, not too much." Xiao Mo nodded and said yes, then looked into the distance, smiled and said, "I learn the sword faster and make the sword faster." Only mentioning swordsmanship, did it reveal the aura that a peak demon should have. After Lu Qin and Xiao Mo talked about the customs of the world. In fact, there is no shortage of strange people and strangers in the world. Qingming Tianxia, the territory is roughly divided into 19 states, while Haoran is Jiuzhou. It can be seen that the mountain and water transportation of the two worlds are very different. Even in a world full of Taoist officials, there are still some temples. Those Buddhist monasteries and dragon elephants, the Dharma is difficult and incredible, beyond imagination. Lu Xun traveled the world and visited the big temple. There was an old monk in a small temple who was an unknown person. He was close to the heart of the sky. The room where the old abbot was located was a place that could accommodate thousands of teachers and sons. See, Xian Du Guan Sun Dao Chang Wu Shuangjiang. Needless to say, the year-old Chu Gong Shou Sui, the guy with the nickname Xiao Bai, seems to be overestimated but in fact has been underestimated. A free repair sword fairy named Nye Bixia in Yenzhou, who has been in the cloud and water for 3,000 years, his whereabouts are uncertain, playing the world. The great monk Xuanhuan, the Taoist name is Nanyang Yu, the nickname is a CI poet, and an iron flute is attached to his waist. He claims to be "Heaven knows me sincerely," but he is the existence of "Heaven raises the word man with 100 evils." A Shanin feather guest named Tai likes to raise geese. Lu Qin mentioned more than a dozen names in one breath, and the life and deeds of any Taoist official can be written as a strange and strange. As for the way of martial arts, Lin Jiangxian, the world's first martial artist. And the hard work of Runyue Peak. His name is hard work. As a result, martial arts practice is not hard at all, even if you switch to practice it is not hard. Knowing that naming works so well, Lu Qin changed his name to Lu Yudi, and Taoist name Ant. The Bai Yujing in the Qingming world is similar to the Middle-earth god continent in the awe-inspiring world, not the Middle-earth Confucian temple. Is in charge of the entire world and its jurisdiction is like a private boundary of a sect. On the other hand, the territory that really belongs to the Confucian temple is actually only the 3 University Palace and the 72 Academy. These things are all talks between Lu Qin and Xiaoma Dao, friends at the wine table at first sight. I just accidentally listened to the young hidden official. How could it be considered that Baiyu Jinglu Zhangjiao collided with the enemy and rebelled and killed the individual unjustly? Whoever dares to wrong the poor Dao is about to move out of Brother Yu. Although Qin Pingan is like an old monk entering Ding, in fact the conversation between Lu Chen and Xiao Mo can be heard. Before Ning Yao from the colorful world, the sword soaring, if it was not a temporary intention, otherwise she could bring Qin Ping in a piece of spy information about the Qingming world, which is the result of the collection of the sword repair of Fei Xingcheng, roughly recorded. Major events that have occurred in the Qingming world in the last 1,000 years. The intelligence taught by Zhang Lu can of course be able to find out and fill in the gaps, and compared to those rumors they will be closer to the truth. Lu Daoyu's second hometown high-ranking people come out in large numbers. Presumably, Bai Yujing, who is a big leader in the world, will only be even more unattainable. Xiao Mo sighed with emotion, "I will not go to travel in the future." Lu Xun smiled and said nothing. This was too early. Xiao Mo asked, "What is the place of the sun's hometown?" "After all, I will settle down there in the future." Lu Qin was full of triumph. He held a cup in one hand, shook it lightly, held chopsticks in one hand and flew under the chopsticks. He said vaguely, "The Taoist friend is asking the right person. Xiao Dao has set up a fortune-telling booth for many years. Well, there is a reputation. Old, young, women and children, when they saw the trail, their eyes and complexions were full of enthusiasm from the heart. Let's make an analogy. Your son, how was he seen in the Great Wall of Jianxi? That old Lizhu cave sky is just how popular it is." Xiao Mo leaned forward, holding his sleeves empty with one hand, and twisting an almond from the dish with the other. Listening to Lu Daoyu's words, he put the dry-fried almond in his mouth and chewed and swallowed it before he nodded clearly. "Friend Lu Dao is very popular, I don't think it is strange." Lu Qin raised his hand holding the chopsticks, blocked his mouth and lowered his voice. "It's just that Brother Xiao Mo needs to pay attention to something. When you get there, listen to your son's advice and you really have to be careful. As for the reason, let Xiao Dao be, fellow Taoist said slowly. Xiao Amo listened to Lu Daoyu's introduction, and was full of vigilance at the Liju cave sky, frowned slightly and was very sad. As expected, he was a veritable dead man. But the most dangerous thing has actually passed. Because there is no need to return swordsmanship for the time being. Once Qin Pingan, the young hidden official, engraved the characters Ping, or the words Qin, and Du on the side of the city. Then it will be brought back to the city's head by the supreme being who taught him swordsmanship, then stand still and be cut off by Qin Pingan. Anyway, it will have to let the latter cut out an engraved combat merit. Add the previously existing Qin character. May come together with two names or Qin Pingan. Either Qin Qingdu. Qin Qingdu Xiao Amo is of course very familiar. Was a sword repairer who was not the best in his early years, but had the most stable ascent. After reaching the summit, Qin Qingdu was the most difficult to deal with, the sword was the most ruthless, and there were many strange things. Lu Qin raised his wine glass. I can rest assured if there is a small street friend as the protector. Xiao Amo shook his head and said, I'm not a protector, I'm just a dead man. It does not have so many curved intestines. Just like meeting the supreme being before, the two sides reunited after a long time. Even after 10,000 years, it is still grateful and awe is still there. We'll never fight back. This has nothing to do with the swordsmanship and realm of both sides. Otherwise, even if you are against Baizé, if there is a dispute, there is really a great dispute involving life and death, even if it can't be beaten, is it possible that you can't even fight to the death? When will sword repair only hand swords to the lower realm? There is no such reason. In addition to fighting with Baizé from the world to the bright moon, Hao Kai, the great ancestor who later occupied Toyue Mountain and opened up the Hall of Heroes rises. There is even the first monk in heaven and earth. There are two sword repairmen who are in the same generation as Qin Qingdu, one is Yuan Xiang and the other is Long Jun. Which one hasn't played before? Of course they all lost. Brother Xiaoma, what do you think is the most important thing to be a human being? Living for a long time. For example, 10,000 years ago, it formed a net to catch all the flying birds in the sky. The genus of Luan, phoenix and crane, are all food for the belly. There is another one who flutters his wings and travels between the world and the earth, who likes to drive away from the sea. Jiaolong after gathering, swallow again. Friends Lu does not seem to agree? You have to speak of conscience. People treat people as scholars and I serve as scholars. Xiao Mo quickly checked the Xianhu books to find the meaning of the word, guosher. Before you return to your hometown, can you go to see xianxia? Qin Pingan suddenly asked. Of course it's not to let you recognize his identity as the first apprentice. This is your own family affair and I don't mix it up. Xianxia, also known as Gu Qingsong, is a strange man who doesn't move in the name of realm. He once helped Lu Shen to punt the sea to visit the immortals, so Chao Rong and He Xiaoyang have been regarded as unregistered disciples of the master Lu Shen. Gu Qingsong was at the Confucian temple. He had promised himself that in the future, he would take care of all the disciples of Luopishan he met on the path of spiritual practice. Lu Shenqi smiled and said, You just don't take the fall seriously? Qin Pingan said, Habits are good, practice makes perfect. That's why you don't know when I am here how many times the golden core has been broken, and how many times have fallen. Xiao Mo sighed sincerely, the young master is a true sword and immortal. Lu Shen said, No problem, I promised you, just meet that fool. Qin Pingan even had spare energy and threw something to Lu Qin. After Lu Shen took over, it was the coral pen holder and said in surprise, Gave me away? The young hidden official squinted at Lu Zhangjiao. Lu Shen said angrily, I can try to get half of the Dragon Palace revenue from Wang Dongji, but how do we divide the accounts? Qin Pingan said, Teacher Lu takes care of it according to his conscience. Xiao Mo smiled and nodded. It seemed that the son really regarded himself as his own person. He had spoken so politely before, but when he came to Lu Daoyu, it seemed to be different. Qin Pingan said, You and I are divided into 3 to 7. The premise is on the Yunxia mountain of Aquarius Island. You have to help me figure out a countermeasure. If it is feasible, we will divide the account between 4 and 6. When Yangxiashan Kai Jinjian helped Fei Jian spread the letter, Qin Pingan must pay back the incense. What's more, the Gingyun Feng Dixian I just met, Huang Zhongho, the owner of the peak, is also quite interesting. He can be regarded as a half-drinker. In the past 100 years, Yunxia Mountain could not stop the trend of gas flow, and the skin was empty, so even if Yunxia Mountain was included in the sect, within 300 years the Yunxia 19 peaks, including the green juniper and gingyun, and those beautiful mountains and rivers that have not yet been opened by the immortals, will become a cloud of smoke, and become a place with thin spiritual energy that is not suitable for cultivation. And the decline of Yunxia Mountain's luck is quite strange. In the view of Qin Pingan, who was cultivated in the 14 realms at that time, it was not even the two characters of mountain and water that could be solved. Wonderful, there is a treasure in the poor road, and it is quite fate with that Yunxia Mountain. Qingxia Yui is not dead, it is a coincidence, and the right medicine is prescribed. Lu Xun laughed, and from his sleeve he drew out a jade, more embossed. This object has a big strangeness. The color can change with the seasons, showing different auspicious patterns and ancient seal characters, corresponding to the 4 seasons. Qin Pingan nodded. Then I'll help Master Lu to meet Senior Gu on the sea, and then go ashore and take a trip to Yunxia Mountain in person. Lu Xun wondered, don't you send this thing by yourself? Qin Pingan smiled and said, learn do you? Otherwise, I have to go to Zhenjianfeng to find Huang Zhongho for a drink in the future, and I will lose my taste. Lu Xun asked, do you? Who is sacred? Qin Pingan did not respond and became immersed again. Lu Xun had to continue drinking with Xiao Mo and stop talking. Xiao Mo looked at the young Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown. Being alive, it is inevitable to feel lonely. Who knows to ask for the truth but not for the fish? At this time he recognizes his freedom. Zheng Juzhong deserves to be Zheng Juzhong. Lu Qin suddenly showed joy. This is completely blocked and there is no omission, and some hidden dangers have been solved easily. Qin Pingan opened his eyes and spread out his hands. Come on with a pot of wine. Lu Qin threw a pot of peach syrup from Xinxiao City. Qin Pingan opened the mud seal, took a big sip and whispered softly, damn, I will kill this one day. Xiao Mo still said from the bottom of his heart, the young man is a true sword and immortal. Lu Xun wiped his face. This little fellow Taoist in the Luapa Mountain, he can surely get mixed up. The downfall of the mountain world is another very ordinary day, sunny and sunny. Today Julien was on the side of Huiming Mountain in Daxing construction, and took Jiang to go to the end in person. The old cook was fighting, and the young monk was helping the craftsman on the mountain to flick the line. The little Nuanshu is still busy on the side of Luapa Mountain. In the morning I first went to the master's house on the first floor of the bamboo building to clean it. The books on the table were accidentally skewed a little bit. The accountant's Mr. Wei Wenlong was reconciling with Zhang Jiajun, who was half of his disciple. Zhang Li Changming sat aside and drank tea in silence. Miu was sitting on the stone bench beside the cliff, sipping melon seeds, and staring with a small Zhou Qinghuang incense man who came to the mountain to burn incense. Without Chen Lingjun being there to thread the needles, but the young actually didn't know what to talk about. If the Tsingyi boy is here, it will be lively, and there will always be some words that make Miu confused. For example, when it comes to getting people's hands soft, Chen Lingjun will look at each other with Xianghua Shaoran, and then a loud voice laughing, a belly laugh, rolling around with his belly on the table. Even Miu turned his head a few times before knowing what the two embryos were talking about. Miu was wondering, really all the skills learned from the janitor Jing Dafeng? This made Mi De Jiangxian more fascinated by the brother Gale. The old cook, Wei Shanjun plus Chen Lingjun, one by one, they all like to push the credit to Zheng Dafeng anyway, so in Mi De Jiangxian's heart, there is an extremely stalwart image capable of literary and military skills. Looks dignified. The game of chess is very good. Even Zhu Lian and Wei Bo couldn't win. They can also talk about the knowledge of imperial examination system with Chao Qingqing and Yuan Lai, two young reading seeds. It is said that every day guarding the gate here, he will patiently give instructions to Tsin Yuanji. Speech is humorous, capable of energizing, vulgar and elegant. White-haired hairpins are always showing up, and when men are pouting there is nothing wrong with women, so they have to stand aside. At the gate of the mountain, the right guardian of Luapa Mountain is dozing off on a bamboo chair, holding a golden pole and a green bamboo stick, and a chicken pecking at rice. The little girl in black rubbed her eyes, and began to expect the good guy mountain master to take herself to the Red Candle Town to play together, walking around the rivers and lakes regardless of distance. There are good days during the day and good evenings at night. Fireflies are flying, crickets and frogs are arguing, and the flowing water between the fields is stopping by. The weeds dozed off in the breeze and the stars in the sky blinked at the world. The millet grains jumped up one by one, holding a golden pole in one hand and a hiking stick in one hand, playing a set of crazy sword skills learned from the money. Chen Lingjun was at the pavilion on the mountain road, pulling his good brother Bai Xian to watch a beautiful scene. Bai Xian made a pot of wolfberry tea for himself before going out. Chen Lingjun said that drinking this kind of tea would make him look like an old-fashioned quack. Bai Xian is very annoyed now. It's not like practicing sword, it's really hard to learn boxing. Just look at it and use it. Fortunately, as long as you don't enter the ring, you will still be invincible. Chen Lingjun often used which pot to open and not to mention which pot. He said that the last time you competed with Pei Qian, it was very powerful and everyone was going to fall down. He was so shocked to stand back. If it were not his own brother, Bai Xian would have rolled up his sleeves and had a fight. A penny stumped the heroes. Chen Lingjun was on the side of Luapa Mountain a few years ago. He was shy in his pocket and had no money to hold his own. He really couldn't keep the money. In those years when Luapashan was the hardest, Chen Lingjun was desperate to save face. In fact, he paid out of his own pocket and changed the way to send money to his mountain. Except for the untouchable daughter-in-law, there is indeed no spare money on hand. Later, Shaman's salary, most of the money was on the Luzhou trip to Beiju and made a few friends. He was used to spending a lot of money and it was gone early. So every time he looked in the mirror, Chen would spend a lot of money to talk, and he had to brew for a long time about what to say, so it was not a waste of money. Fortunately, I met the Chief Zhou, who is rich and powerful, but is 100 times better than Wei Shanjun. Because Chief Zhou left 2 bags of fairy money, a bag of rain money and a bag of small summer money, all to Chen Lingjun, saying that he was asked to help him, and don't let Fairy Yidefeng Liu's mirror flower water moon be too deserted. Before there was a drink in Qilong Lane. Chen Lingjun, Chief Zhou, and the host Jialao Xinxian all had a good time. Chen Lingjun drank a blushing face, stood on the bench, patted his chest vigorously and assured Jiang Xianxia, "Which one of our brothers and whom don't talk much, we are all in the wine, see you later." Yidefeng, the female cultivator Lu Runyan, was secretly opened by the fairy in Nantang Lake. There were not many visitors, but the aura of Yidefeng was not small. Jinghua Shuiwe, who was just supported by 2 people, one called Bengli Jinjuan and the other called Longli Xiabatio, the shot was outrageous. In Qilong Alley, the white-haired boy at the New Year's shop was so angry that the little dumb boy was so angry that he pulled the girl peanuts from the shop next door, soaked in the sun at the door, and ate the pastries on credit. I was thinking about cheating some money from Chui Peanut to pay off the debt. Old Xinxian Jia came from his Chao-Tu shop to the next door at the counter, chatting with old brother Shi. Although Shi Ro annoys this neighbor who likes to show off, she has to admit that this old Jia is really not a mix of food and drink. For example, every February 2nd, the blind old Taoist will let his disciple Tianjie be the money dragon, pick up a kettle, put in a few coins, go to the well to draw water, and on the way back, sprinkle the pot of water all the way, and finally pour the remaining pot of water and the coins into the water tank in the backyard of the shop. In addition, every time to Qingming, burning paper money at the corner of the street in fact pays more attention. In Luapa Mountain, the most caring about these old customs, except for the steward Zhu Lian, is this old fairy Jia who has traveled north and south for more than half his life. Neighbors' celebrations will also help. Just eat a meal and don't charge money. Not only small towns. In fact, several prefectures and counties in Longzhou will also invite the more and more famous old Jia, a wealthy portal of course. You have to give a red envelope depending on the size of your heart and do what you can. It doesn't matter if you give too much, if you give less. If the family is not well off, the veteran will not take a penny, eat a meal and give a pot of local rice wine, which is enough. People in Luapa Mountain may really like to drink or eat as a meal, only Jia Sheng. In fact, neither Miyu nor Qinling are so old-fashioned to drink. Today the old Taoist leaned against the counter and chatted with Shi Ro about his mountain lord. The fairy Jia stroked his beard and smiled. "Our mountain lord's words and deeds are cautious, don't underestimate it, this is a kind of precept. In the entire Dali Longzhou boundary, except for a few monks, there is no idea what happened up and down the mountain. In fact, almost the entire Aquarius gas trainer is so ignorant. Because of that vision it was too fast. The sky opens with holes, a white light flashes away. In the fallen mountain, only Cui Dongshan, lying in the corridor on the 2nd floor of the bamboo building, noticed something wrong. The Waowation demon over Qilong Lane felt a terrifying power that was almost suffocating. Is like a huge calamity in which the ascending realm great monk breaks through the realm. Mountain monarch Weibo felt in his heart. In an instant, Weibo even mistakenly thought that the entire Beiyue boundary would be destroyed. He just waited until Weibo left the mansion and came to the top of Piyun Mountain, and found that there was nothing unusual. Illusion? Is certainly not an illusion. That was Zhou Mi's handwriting personally to the world. Is Zhou Mi's first real sharp shot after reaching the sky. It was just an extinction disaster that was originally enough to make the entire old Lizhu cave disappear, only because one person blocked it, it disappeared in an instant. A strange man who seems to be a visitor, slender, wearing a snow-white robe, standing at the table at the gate of Luapa Mountain, with a gentle smile, turning his head and asking a little black girl softly, "Can you sit?" Sword of Coming Chapter 876. The second chapter update is a bit late, 14,000 words chapter. Yes, of course. The little girl hurriedly put down the golden shoulder pole and the green bamboo stick, reached out and grabbed the rope of the messenger bag and ran all the way to the table. She was so tall she would have missed 2 steps if she knew it. Xiaomili raised his head and asked, "If a guest is just passing by and is thirsty and is very anxious, there will be white water on the table. If you want to rest for a while, look at the scenery, you can drink tea, I will go and boil a pot of hot water for the guest." With a small face, it seems that he is looking forward to the guests not being anxious. The man smiled and said, "I'm not particularly anxious to hurry. Because before Li Xing returned to Howren, he had to stay near Luapa Mountain." Millet Grains immediately smiled brightly, "My own tea is so famous, but some old seniors who pass by here like my husband said that it is delicious. The guests wait, sit down and I will go to boil water and make tea." Seeing that the guest was still standing, Xiaomili immediately glanced at the long stool and added with a smile, "Guests can rest assured, although it was raining not long ago, I wiped them carefully with a rag and sleeve. I dare not say that the tables and stools are spotless, they must be fairly clean. The right guardian of Luapashan ran to wipe every half an hour, can it be clean?" The man smiled and said, "Okay." The little girl in black returned soon, standing on tiptoes with skillful movements and clever hands and feet, and handed the guests a cup of hot tea. The man took the teacup with both hands and thanked him. Millet scratched her face, smiled shyly, waved her hand softly, said goodbye, returned to the bamboo chair on the other side of the mountain gate, stopped and turned around and called her if she had something to do with the guest. The man was sipping tea in a leisurely manner and looked very immortal. Seeing the little girl's gaze, the man smiled and lifted the tea bowl. Xiaomili smiled, a little embarrassed, turned his head quickly and continued to sit on his own. In the distance, there was a boy in Tsingyi who hiccuped and saw the millet grain sitting on a small bench. On the other side of the table, there was also a strange man sitting on the table dressed like a big white goose. Qin Lingjun swayed his sleeves and shouted from a distance, "Yeah, Millet, are you coming again?" Xiaomili replied, "Oh, Jingqing is back to the mountain." Qin Lingjun asked, "Would you like to help the right guard?" Millet grinned and waved his big hand, "Ha, don't use it." When he got closer to the table, Qin Lingjun began to slow down, and his sleeves stopped swaying. Seeing that man, he looked like a scholar, a good scholar, and a gentleman who speaks but doesn't do anything. Qin Lingjun stood at the table just between the guests and the millet grains. Qin Lingjun thought, "Luapashan Qin Lingjun, am seeing your husband. I don't know if the husband is a visiting friend or just passing by to enjoy the scenery." The man smiled and said, "You are welcome, you and my master are good friends." Qin Lingjun was at a loss. He had too many friends from the rivers and lakes, and he didn't know who he was talking about. Anxious, worried about being a young Taoist priest on the ground. The practice of the little Taoist priest himself is estimated to be relatively tired and lazy at ordinary times, sparse and ordinary, with a low level of realm. But the master who can't hold others is the master of the underworld of Luzhou and Beiju. Qin Lingjun continued with a smile and asked, "Mr. is from Hongzhou town, right? Has he ever been blocked by a fart boy who set up a stall in the pavilion?" The man continued to answer the wrong question. "My master is Qin Zhuolio from Beiju Luzhou." Qin Lingjun suddenly realized that his thing, "I finally met a normal person by Uncle Qin." The more he looked like Qin Zhuolia's disciple, a scholar, a bookish man. But Qin Zhuolio who is too poor is fine. Is it possible that he has taken a rich apprentice in his pocket? What is missing to make up for? Qin Lingjun coughed a few times, his sleeves shook and he sat on the bench. "Then you will count on your seniority. You don't need to call my uncle. You can call me a friend of Jingqing. Anyway, your master is not here." Intersect peers. Seeing that the man stopped drinking tea, he smiled playfully. Qin Lingjun took a reassurance pill, and he was certain that Qin Zhuolio deceived a rich kid at the foot of the mountain. He didn't even know that the Taoists in the mountains of my generation, and the colors are permanent. How can one judge his age by his appearance? Could it be that Qin Zhuolio is not authentic? He has never mentioned such a good brother on his disciple's side? Damn, if you're so unpretentious, next time you meet, it's up to me how to deal with him. Suddenly, Qin Lingjun's inspiration suddenly appeared. and he was a little bit nervous again and said tentatively, Qin Zhuolio has accepted a good disciple. I think my brother, your realm is not low? Qin Lingjun felt that he was quite good at never making the same mistake. Zheng Juzhong seemed to be smiling but not smiling and said, not low, not high, temporarily the same level as the master. Be sure. Qin Lingjun laughed heartily when he heard the words and gave him a thumbs up. Not bad, not bad. Zheng Juzhong smiled and said, the flying dragon is in the sky, Yin Yu Tian. The old sword blade is astringent, and the color is still alive. When the thunderstorm passes, the dark roar on the wall makes peace with it. Qin Lingjun heard this and kept nodding. Are you dragging text with me? As expected of Qin Zuolius' apprentice. Qin Lingjun no longer had the slightest doubt. As for how the other party bypassed by Xian and Zhao Shusha, he sneaked over here. Anyway, there is a big white goose on the mountain, and there is also a Wei Shanjun to the north, and there is always no mistake. Cui Dongshan stood at the top of the mountain road steps, squinting at the guy at the mountain gate who was chattering with Uncle Qin. I have to admire Qin Lingjun's bolder life. In addition to the heavenly vision, there is actually a small ambush underground in Longest Boundary, which is extremely hidden. Once when Hai succeeded in thoroughness, the consequences would be disastrous, and all the immortals of the fallen mountain would die in the end. Fortunately, they were all cleaned up by Zheng Juzhong, as clean as those long benches. The previous Baidi City Lord was obviously cautious and tried to be foolproof. Before he could stop the chess piece, he had already turned the Luapa Mountain and the Vassal Mountain back. Only Zheng Juzhong, who is in the mountains, is not trapped by the stream of time, but all his words, manners and looks are reversed with the time and flowing water, and the clothes are seamless. Of course, Cui Dongshan chose to stand still in the middle of this river. Zheng Juzhong seemed to be asking about Cui Dongshan on the mountain. Do you think that the long river of time is actually going backwards but we don't even know it? It seems to be a good proof of this matter. Even young children can do it, can't you just take a step forward? But in fact, even Cui Dongshan couldn't guarantee anything once the matter was really delved into. Almost unsolvable. Cui Dongshan said, thanks to Mr. Zheng for his righteous action. There is no return for this great kindness. Zheng Juzhong shook his head. Righteous shot? Not righteous. What's more, there is never an unrequited kindness in the world, otherwise it will be a charity on one side and ungratefulness on the other side. Don't pretend to be a fool here, even if you are only half an embroidered tiger. Cui Dongshan sighed. Since he couldn't be private, he had no choice but to do business. Cui Dongshan raised 2 fingers and then added another finger. As for the construction of Baidi City in the wild world, Luapu Mountain is willing to help, such as recruiting 2 or 3 sword celestial beings. Zheng Juzhong seemed to be too lazy to let Cui Dongshan tremble with these little cleverness and said bluntly, I was at the Qilong Lane shop before and I negotiated a deal with your husband. You are a student, don't overdo it. Cui Dongshan was a little helpless. In fact, he was suspicious when he first saw the couplet at the New Year's Eve shop earlier. Although it is undoubtedly the handwriting of the old fairy Jia, the content of the couplet is so dangling no matter how you look at it, fools can see that something is wrong. So at that time Cui Dongshan couldn't laugh. He grabbed the couplet and ran out of the shop, saying that he wanted to show Mr. Jia's brother, and scared the old fairy Jia to the point of death. Fortunately, Cui Dongshan scared the old fairy and soon gave it back to Jia Sheng, said it's fine to keep hanging. In fact, Cui Dongshan had already studied the material, text, signature and seal of the couplet at that time. It was true. There was no mystery at all. It was really just a very ordinary couplet and even the handwriting of the old fairy Jia. Undoubtedly. When Zheng Juzhong broke the secret, Cui Dongshan let out a long sigh, and truly understood the true meaning of the understanding is not far away. Learning is not in the couplet itself, but in Jia Sheng who is not far away from the couplet. At the same time, I reminded my husband that as long as he knew this, he would not be far away from the center of Baidi City. This shows that Zheng Juzhong is very likely. When his master Qin Qinglu was still Jia Sheng, Zheng Juzhong had already been the first to board, just like living next to his master for many years. Zheng Juzhong observes the way and learns swordsmanship with the Dragon Slayer. In fact, the previous 2 Zheng Juzhong were indeed in the wild world, but Qin Pingan had a voice in Chaotu Shop and Old God Jia. But Jia Sheng himself was like a person responsible for receiving and sending envelopes. People for both parties. Jia Sheng didn't know the content that came. Zheng Juzhong quietly followed Han Xiaosa through the return to the market, and then returned to Haoran with Jia Sheng as a landscape fairy. He landed across the sea and came directly to Qilong Alley. As for why he made such a fuss, he deliberately moved from, knowing is not far away, it's just Cui Dongshan who showed up over there to make the matter come back afterwards. Let this half-embroidered tiger think about it, Baidi City is a farewell to each other among the colorful clouds. More than 100 years have passed, why is the chess power declining instead of increasing? Cui Dongshan suddenly wanted to understand something and suddenly said angrily, Mr. Zheng is too much. Is too much. Zheng Juzhong smiled and was about to leave. Cui Dongshan hurried to keep up. Can't you change a method that is more beneficial to both parties? Mr. Zheng, who is about to break free from the three realms, why bother to be frustrated? Zheng Juzhong was too lazy to say a word. Cui Dongshan walked sideways and said sternly, I can play 10 more games with Mr. Zheng. Since they are no better than the previous Kaiyin 10 games, do you think I am very free? Zheng Juzhong walked slowly. You may feel that losing chess is tasteful, but I think winning chess is boring. The boy in white with a red mole around his eyebrows, after all, is not the pinnacle embroidered tiger who has finally made it into a state of perfect mental and physical intelligence and too high to forget feelings. There is too much worry. The more humanity, the weaker the chess power. Zheng Juzhong sighed. It's like the catchphrase Cui Dongshan often puts on his lips, Im Dongshan. It's true, young Cui Dongshan, after all, is not the Cui Yang that year. The young scholar, who was the first disciple of Wensheng's line, visited Baidi City. The two sides played against the clouds. Sitting across from Zheng Juzhong, Cui Yang Nianziluozi said nothing, but his expression seemed to tell Zheng. Center, you can beat me in this game, Cui Yang in the next game will definitely be able to beat Cui Yang in the previous game. As long as there are enough games, Zheng Zongshang's winning side will become smaller and smaller. This is the real reason why Zheng Juzhong is willing to play 10 games with a young scholar. Obviously lose chess and lose again and again, but he is more confident than winning chess. Zheng Juzhong never looked at his own game record except for the Kaiyin game. If Cui Dongshan hadn't guessed the deal with Chen Pinggan anyhow, Zheng Juzhong would not say anything more. In return for his help to stop Zhou Mi, Zheng Juzhong told Chen Pinggan to give up his plan to establish his next clan in Tonghizhou. It's that simple. As long as it is not Tongya Island, Aquarius Island, Middle-earth God Island, or even the Wild World, they are free. Is Baidi City planning to make plans in Tonghizhou? Absolutely not. Zheng Juzhong just made the young hidden official feel uncomfortable in his heart. What you failed to accomplish in Shijianhu, waiting for you to become a hermit of the Great Wall of Jianxi, a disciple of Wensheng's family, the Lord of Luopa Mountain, and even a sword fairy. In that Tonghizhou it still couldn't be done. Let you have a layout in Tonghizhou for a long time, continue to take the lead, work hard and plan far-reaching. It seems that the time and place are favorable and there is no shortage. But you Chen Pinggan just can't do it. Zheng Juzhong once promised Cui Yang to protect his younger brother. If this is not a protector, how can it be counted? Cui Dongshan said boredly, some people just bully my husband because he is young and not high. Zheng Juzhong stopped. It's not about Cui Dongshan's innuendo, but people who feel that Cui Dongshan's words are too weak. The weak are not weak in body, weak in legs and feet, not in the eyes of ordinary masters, in the eyes of mountain people, nor in the eyes of mountain monks. Rather, he likes to make excuses when things happen because a person's temperament is too weak. Cui Dongshan raised his hands. When I fart, is rarely so flattened. Who made this guy next to him be Zheng Juzhong? Even if Zheng Juzhong's evangelist mentor and dragon slayer Qin Qinglu was willing to use his sword, he might not be able to protect the land boundary of Langzhou so well. In Cui Dongshan's view, there are only a handful of people who are truly capable of both offense and defense. The Lord of Baidi City is certainly one of them. Cui Dongshan raised his sleeves with both hands and asked, since it's already up, are you still taking a walk here? Zheng Juzhong said, waiting for Chen Pinggan's second post, Li Shixing. But Chen Pinggan was still too soft-hearted. He didn't want to ask me or delay Li Zixing's practice, so he had to do business with me. A person whose cultivation-based strength cannot be judged by common sense. Junior brother Lu Qiqing once spoke to himself for Li Shixing. Zheng Juzhong is looking forward to a game with Li Shixing. Cui Dongshan asked, what if my husband is begging you? Zheng Juzhong said, what else? I won't agree. Suddenly an old scholar appeared behind the two, holding Cui Dongshan's head with one hand, moving aside, reaching out and grabbing Zheng Juzhong's arm. Haha laughed. Mr. Zheng, take a step slowly. Go back. Drink tea. Zheng Juzhong stopped, shook his head and smiled. Mr. Vincent, it's no longer necessary to drink tea. The old scholar said seriously, "Mr. Zheng, please give me a face." It was so straightforward. He rushed to Luapa Mountain before and eavesdropped all the way, and the old scholar finally couldn't help it. Of course, Zheng Zhuzhong knew it well, but he just didn't expose it. Zheng Zhuzhong choked for a while. An unprecedented thing. The old scholar clutched Zheng Zhuzhong's sleeves and whispered softly, "Why should a smart person embarrass a good person?" Cui Dongshan remained silent, staring blankly at the profile of the old scholar. Zheng Zhuzhong laughed, turned his head to look over the table and nodded. "The tea in the Luapa Mountain is indeed good. Then it'll be generous. Would you like Wensheng to have a cup of tea?" The old scholar dragged Zheng Zhuzhong and walked back, laughing. "Old Shan." Cui Dongshan just stood still. The old scholar turned his head and stared. "Why are you stunned? Pour tea quickly. Your eyesight is 1,000 miles worse than our millet grains." Cui Dongshan squeezed out a smile. Pai Dian ran to the table first to bring tea and water. The old scholar said to Zheng Zhuzhong in his own heart, "Thank you. Be thick-skinned when begging for someone, thin-skinned when thanking someone." Zheng Zhuzhong glanced at the back of the white-clothed boy and replied with his heartfelt voice, "Wensheng, don't thank me, I actually have selfish intentions." He may not be the first disciple of Wensheng's line, but he must be a more powerful new embroidered tiger. The old scholar was non-committal. "I will definitely visit Baidi City often in the future." Zheng Zhuzhong smiled and said, "When Sheng is short of wine, I can send someone to the Confucian temple. Obviously to remind you old scholars not to go." The old scholar stomped and complained, "What a courtesy to me, isn't it? The 4 worlds have different times, almost exactly one in spring, summer, autumn and winter." The 12th floor of the 5 cities of Baiyujing, 5 of them are Verdant City, Lingbao City, Nanhua City, Xinshao City, and Yushu City. In Verdant City there are the Hanggu, the old site of Mianqi, the peach forest of Xinshao City, and the bourne of white clouds, all of which are famous in the world. The number of vice lords of the 5 cities ranges from 1 to 2 or 3. Each depends on the owner's preference. Just like Nanhua City there are as many as 3. 1 soars and 2 immortals. If it weren't for Brother Yudo to stop him, Lu Qin could do it again. Add 2 or 3 vice lords, and even make an exception to make Yu Pu Jing served as the deputy city lord. Baiyujing has only 1 city and 2 floors, and there will be a habit of celebrating the new year, which is roughly the same as the customs at the foot of the mountain. The Verdant City, also known as Jade Emperor City, also has Yunshui Tower and Linlang Tower. The children taught to write peach symbols, and the Taoist returned the perennial routine. Staying up all night to watch the night, the world will add a year old. Pray for the world, every family, peace and prosperity, happy prosperity and peace. For those who do not know the cold and heat, it is actually a small trouble. The Spring Festival couplets posted on New Year's Eve will be taken back on the Lantern Festival. In addition, you have to draw peach symbols and hang them everywhere. Fortunately, it is natural to get used to it. It's okay. What's more, the happiest ones are the young children. Not to mention the joy and excitement, the key is to get a bunch of red envelopes. In groups, walking around husband, give New Year greetings to the celestial elders. Take a few snowflakes here, a few over there, and occasionally you can get 1 or 2 big red envelopes with small summer coins. The bits and pieces are added together, but it's a sum. Not a small New Year's money. The happiest thing is to meet the lavish teacher Lu Zhang, who will give you 2 small summer money or Guyu money for the New Year's Eve. You have a share, every time on the first day of the new year. Lu Zhang teaches as long as he doesn't. If you go to Tianweishan, or have never traveled far away, you will have a small red envelope with your left hand and a big red envelope with your right hand, which will make the little Dao children line up. Master Lu asks the Dao children a question, Dao books, scriptures, and pretends if you answer them. If you have Guyu Qin, you can only give Zaya Shuqian if you can't answer it. In fact, the questions are very simple. It is a pity that Master Lu is not in Baiyujing at the end of this year. A bunch of Taoist children's heads are put together. Everyone has to make up the red envelope and ask him to make up the red envelope. If you owe debts, you can't owe money. Jiang Yunxing murmured in the place where it was rumored to be all the white clouds in the world. It seems that the wild world has become a mess of porridge. Then the little Dao boy, who had been watching the door on the Downfall Mountain for many years, found that a door suddenly appeared on the other side of the sky, which was chopped out by the sword aura. Seeing this vision, within Baiyujing the immortal master and Taoist officials swept away like a group of fireflies. Near the gate opened by Ning Yao's sword. 2 groups of Taoist officials in the Qingming world, each hovering in the wind, the boundaries are clear and they look at each other. On one side is the Taoist official who is ranked in the immortal class in Baiyujing. On one side is the great Xiandu temple, Sui Chu Gong and Kai Shou Shan, the immortal powers who are dominant in various states. Intentionally or unintentionally, the latter gathered at Dao Chang Sun's side, and confronted the cultivators by Yujing from a distance, and the two sides made a battle that the well water did not offend the river. In addition, there are some sporadic monks who do not rely on either side. Most of them are Shanzhui Xiu, who does not enter the orthodox school genealogy, or practice Taoism, which belongs to the side door that is not recognized by Yujing. All three parties want to witness the spectacular scene of moving the moon with their own eyes, which is destined to go down in history and spread for thousands of years. Yujing has a small group of Taoist officials who are most concerned about this matter. They are not high in realm, but their status is detached. They are known as historical officials on the mountain, and they specialize in compiling the orthodox history of Yujing and the entire world. Similar to the daily notes of the xianxia dynasty, recording the actions of a Taoist official in the world, regardless of good deeds and bad deeds, are not taboos for the venerable. Yujing issued the edicts of the world for each Dao. The 12th floor of the 5 cities taught Taoism to the Taoist officials of the world, the changes of the major dynasties under the mountain, the 4 seasons of the weather, the 8 directions, the increase and decrease of the household registration of the Taoist officials of all countries. The large and small Taoist palaces were abandoned. All by these historians. The detailed records are in the book, and apart from the 3 head teachers of Yujing, no one is qualified to read this history book. However, Sun Daochang gave a comment: the pen is smooth and weaker than the weather, and he dare not say the real good and bad things and waste his pen and ink. Then it was suggested that they move from Yujing to Xuandu Temple and keep the wonderful pens and flowers from then on. The head teacher of Yujing Yu has never sent down a decree, let alone showed up in person. Naturally, no one has acted, taking in the bright moon to move into the Qingming world without authorization. What's more, it is not wise to act without authorization and take risks. On the other side of the gate, the sword spirit was awe-inspiring, and there was a battle between Li Sheng and Bai Zhe. If they were carelessly trapped in it, it would be the end of death. Aspiring people may not have the strength to intervene. Besides Yujing, there are 3 people who are both courageous and powerful. One is too lazy to move, the other is unwilling to appear too early. There is also a Taoist buddy who does not want to overshadow the limelight in public. It is Sun Daochang and the 2 women's crowns not far away. They are not too young. Dashuan Dugwen's Sun Daochang stroked his beard and smiled. He'll just say, "Why haven't I seen the second skin Lu San for a long time?" It turns out that he is going out for a walk again. Sun Daochang sighed. Just now he glanced at him and saw him. Fellow Taoist Chen's lotus crown, and Master Lu, who was sitting inside and beckoning him vigorously, stroked his beard and smiled. "I have to admit that this time the little third child has done a lot of work, so I'm the one who replaced me. If you are really invincible, you will definitely have to give the younger brother a few enthusiasm. Give nicknames to friends for nothing, add bricks and icing on the cake." Sun Daochang is a master who claims to be second in the world, and no one dares to be the first. That fellow Qin Xiaodao, who is inextricably close to the poor Dao, is brave and handsome, and his demeanor is still better than that of the past. Looking at his wealth and luck, it seems that he has returned to his old career and made a lot of money. After all, the kind of leaving home is not done by everyone. Last time I traveled far away from home, from the awe-inspiring Beiju Luzhou, I received 2 nominated disciples who are serious and esoteric. Biding Elementary School Ho Yi Zhanqing, and Di Yuanfeng, who was full of man's shoes and bamboo sticks all the way. The original Lu treasure of Kaik Mansion can also become a successor to the old master, but it was missed. In Sun Daochang's words, the elderly who have reached the age must deal more with young people so that they can be vigorous and wear off some twilight. It's just about teaching Taoism. The old Guanju himself didn't take too much care. Anyway, there are many disciples and grandchildren in the Taoism, and teaching Taoism is more patient than him, so he threw Zhanqing and Di Yuanfeng to the 2. The disciple of the age, the veteran Taoist, gave the reason for this is extremely convincing. There is no objection from the Patriarch Hall. It is said that among you brothers, you should get closer and move around, or you won't be able to meet several times throughout the year, which is unreasonable. The young master of the Dachao sect, Su Jun, is now a ghost repairer in the Yupu realm. He joined hands with the Taoist couple to fight the wind. The latter is a female crown at the pinnacle of ascension, named Chaoga, Dao title reinvestigation. She is also the founder of Liangjingshan. These 2 big sects that once met each other to fight for life and death, have established the next sect in history, but they were all destroyed by the other sect. It can be seen that the enmity between the two sects is huge. Therefore, Dao Chang's son had to go out and said something from the bottom of his heart. There is no such thing as a marriage that cannot be solved in the world. As soon as this remark came out, the whole world was amazed. Sure enough, son Guanzhu spoke highly and powerfully. It is rumored that the old Guanzhu had a wedding wine at that wedding banquet. When he returned to his own temple, he found a young girl with the lowest seniority and a very young age. Have to be beautiful and strive to then let Master Lu come to our Taoist temple to insert the door. The little girl nodded vigorously, confident enough. Grandpa said that Lu Qin fell in love with her at first sight, and he was lying on the wall and peeking at herself. Besides, on Fatty Yan's side, this statement has also been corroborated, so it is not her random thoughts. Fatty Yan is in the Taoist temple and his business is doing well. Just a copy of the 100 Swords Immortal Chop, the sales volume is very impressive, the price is a bit more expensive. Not long after, a very exquisitely engraved and prefaced by Jianxian was released. It was divided into 2 volumes, 2 printed scores, sold separately for the first volume, 2 small summer coins and the next volume list. Selling price for 3 small summer coins by Yes preface. Isn't it worth a little summer money? 2 copies are sold together for 3 small summer coins, so fools don't buy 2 copies. Fatty Yen can often pick up some peach blossoms and peach branches, which are made into bookmarks and peach pen holders. The market is very good. Because he hinted that Xuandu Temple seems to be in a worrying year, big pilgrims compared with the past, the incense money has been reduced a lot, and it is not so rich and powerful. So the immortal money he earned is to be shared with someone. He also said that he was doing a dojo in a snail shell. If he was allowed to spread out the stall and keep the daily jindujan, Fatty Yen slapped his chest every time the fat trembled, and hit the pork belly with a chopstick. Actually, it's weird and disgusting. The little girl rolled her eyes every time or turned her head away from it. Fatty Yen, if I marry someone, would you be sad? What nonsense, don't you be heartbroken? Less than 100 caddies? Ha, thin into half yen fatty. Chaoga, like Shuangjiang, was once one of the 10 people in the Qingming world, but because of retreat for many years, they all withdrew from the list. In this matter, only son Daochang of Dashuan Duguan, the most stable, is not one of them. Because the old Guanzhu has never dropped out of the 10 list since his first comment, and even his ranking hasn't changed in any way. Chao Gu stood beside Su Jun, her eyes full of tenderness and poetry. There is also a female crown next to Chao Gu, who has displayed a very clever blindness to make people look at flowers in the mist. Her appearance in the eyes of others has changed hundreds of ways. The 14th level female crown turned her head to look at Daochang's son, her expression unkind. Son Daochang smiled at her with a guilty conscience. A big man who hasn't been young yet, how can there be no love for the sons and daughters of the heroic shortness? Not far away, a middle-aged handsome man with a beard named Yao Qing, whose name is Zimei, is named Sholing. It was the Qingshan dynasty that produced a group of 5 young men from the 5 tombs. This dynasty that is a well-known geomantic treasure land, a well-deserved golden jade jungle, Yingche Daochang. The emperors of the 3 dynasties in the Qingming world are not the vast world, but at most they have spent more than 100 years. Here is the opposite. Almost everyone who can wear a dragon robe and sit on a dragon chair is a great monk with great aptitude and advanced Taoism. Longevity and longevity, every emperor's house is an incomparably long existence of family preaching. The emperors of the past can refine the dragon veins, so only those dying dynasties in the west of the sun, among the dragons and grandchildren, can surely be among them. The embryonic cultivators of the 5 realms, often it will mean the decline of the national fortune, and there is no need for the Qingtian supervisor to remind. Sun Qing once accomplished a feat, beheading 3 corpses and enrolling in immortality. 3 corpses: Jiexin, Peiji, Wei Judao, Yuan Mountain, 1 immortal and 2 jade. In the world of Qingming, Jijixian is similar to the rice thief, the porter, and the Yitzi teacher. Although it is not regarded as the evil spirits that everyone can punish, he definitely does not dare to approach the Baiyujing realm casually. However, Sun Daochang gave Sun Shofu a nickname, 4 unsimilars. Yao Qing himself didn't care. But Pei Ji, one of the 3 corpses of Yao Qing, had been in trouble with Guan Jianxian in the great profound capital. After that, Dashuan Duguan took a large group of Zhejiangxian to the Qingshan dynasty to travel, in the name of making friends, but actually blocking the door. But Sun Daochang himself did not show his face, otherwise he would bully others and went, and only then became the youngest generation with several willing teenagers and became a year-end friendship. To become famous as early as possible, as soon as possible to beat others. The woman standing side by side with Yixiang, Yao Qing is the national teacher by O. Slender body, extremely beautiful appearance, natural and charming. There is a hand halberd on the waist, named Iron Chamber. She is a martial artist who has stood at the top of martial arts for more than 100 years. She is one of the top 10 martial arts masters in the Qingming world and ranks third. Different from the 100-year review of the air trainer, some people think that the interval is too short, and the pure martial artist is the Jiazi review, which is still too long. After she made the list for the first time, Bai Root was at the bottom of the rankings, and then almost every 10 years she would kill the one in front of her so that in less than a piece of time she asked the punches 4 times. Victory, the death, 3 lives won, the only one survives, the boundless martial artist who came has fallen. By the time Bai made the list for the second time, it had already ranked among the top 3. So I have been comparing her with the Pei Cup of Howren. And Bai has indeed always wanted to break his wrist with the so-called female Valkyrie. Both sides are national teachers and both are women. Dao Chang's son glanced at the little girl. Bai confronts others and likes to take the first level. The veteran Taoist chief has always been curious about whether such a weapon with a side blade can cut his thighs if it is not easy to carry and hang on the waist. Even if the Wufu's body is tough enough, the magic weapon is sharp and the robes are cut, wouldn't it be happy together? It's a pity that Aliang didn't stay in the Qingming world for a long time, otherwise with that guy's temper he would definitely have to ask questions for himself. As for myself, after all, I am too old to open this mouth, otherwise it is easy to fall into an old and disrespectful reputation. With the help of the old masters waving his sleeves, a landscape painting created, although the picture is blurry, but it is possible to see a general view. Zhan Qing and Di Yuanfeng glanced at each other, and they both found each other's faces unbelievable. They really couldn't link the young hidden official who even Qingming world would often talk about with the guy who was greedy and fearful of death in their hometown back then. Lu Tai and Yuan Ying stood in an inconspicuous place. Yuan Lu, the king of rice thief, is sorrowing with his fellow villagers, and a pure martial artist from the same line as a knife hunter, has also come to join in the fun. Wang Yuanlu, who bowed his head and shrank his shoulders, saw the romantic and suave Master Lu, a Taoist in the line of rice thief, who gave people a sneaky posture, sneaking past him as if standing next to Master Lu relatively stable. Wang Yuanlu is still the shabby attire with a felt hat, cotton shoes and a green sermon gown. He is not stingy. This is thrifty and he never forgets his roots. Although both he and Qigu were born in the Qingshan dynasty, they were not close to Yao Qing, the first assistant of the parent official in his hometown, and by the national teacher, and they did not even have the slightest affection. Sun Daochang turned his head to look at the skinny monkey-like junior rice thief, and smiled at his beard. "What's the matter? I don't say anything when I see the poor road and am going to kill him?" Wang Yunlu said with no good air, "Take care of you." The two sides, who are very different in age, seniority and state, did not speak with their hearts. Sun Daochang said, "Melon peel." Wang Yunlu replied, "Little baby." Sun Daochang smiled and asked, "Buck a bowl?" Wang Yunlu nodded and said, "Don't make the difference, the most expensive one comes." Daochang's son really threw a pot of immortal brew over. It seems that cursing is cursing, drinking is drinking. The rice thief has a lineage and is not recognized by Yujing. Its status on the mountain under the Qingming world is somewhat similar to that of a thief who has fallen on the ground. When can I find a warm Kong at? You. Either Minger or later. The old View Master's move was obviously to support the rice thief, and he would not give Yujing a little bit of face. Unlike the sparse corpse Jia Immortal, the lineage of the rice thief has become a climate in the Qingming world, with a large number of people spreading in the land of the 3 states. Just ask for a Taoist genealogy, but don't go to the court official's office as a Taoist official. If they must be an official, then they simply don't even want the Taoist official. And this is the situation created by the master Sun Daochang of Xuandu Guan with one hand. It is rumored that Yu Dou had been in charge of Yujing for 100 years, and he almost had to kill all the Mi pirates himself, but was stopped by the brother of the master. The fellow villagers around the young Taoist priests have been worried all the time. Just talk to the old Guanju? Are you really afraid of being beaten to death? Sun Daochang, who has heard of the Dashuandu temple, is notoriously small-minded. The greatest joy on the path of cultivation lies in his fondness for turning over old accounts, and he is good at sappling people halfway through the thunder and thunder. The whole world knows that Sun Lao Guan's decent style. Pan Dao has no other advantages, just a little bit jealous like hatred. No sand can get in his eyes. You let the sand in the eyes of the poor road and the sand in the shoes of the poor road so as not to delay your practice. you just walk on your feet. Wang Yuanlu was an unknown person in his hometown, and he went out for a long trip for the first time. He bumped into the incognito Daochang's son halfway. Then he did some business in partnership and lost a lot of money. It was not because of money scams but actually earn money, but old-fashioned Long lied to Wang Yuanlu that he was his ancestor, and worried that Wang Yuanlu would not believe it. The old man even produced a genealogy to make Wang Yuanlu recognize his ancestor. The old deity, who looked very immortal in the street, when he saw Wang Yuanlu squatting on the side of the road gnawing pancakes, he felt enthusiastic and grabbed Wang Yuanlu's arm and said something like, "It was so alike." Wang Yuanlu was stunned on the spot. After that, the old Taoist claimed to be wandering away for more than 100 years, and finally he became a great monk in the Middle Five Realms, who was highly respected and acclaimed in the arena. Unexpectedly, this time he returned to his hometown with good clothes, and the family heirs were so incensed and decayed. No more, frustrated, but fortunately, there is only one Wang Yuanlu left in the descendants of future generations, who will not help him. In fact, at that time Wang Yuanlu was already at the age of his establishment, and tears were still in his eyes. After all, he was not a stranger in a foreign country, but he met his own ancestors. After knocking his head, he sat on the ground and hugged Sun Daochang. One calf can't cry sound. At the beginning, Wang Yuanlu made a mistake by mistake, and relied on luck to embark on the path of spiritual practice. He has only just started to practice for a few years. Of course, Wang Yuanlu is not really lack of heart, but he also has his own cares. He thinks that he is too poor to marry a bachelor. He has been young for 20 years, and he has not been able to mix with the most inferior Taoist genealogy, but only years. Year after year, guarding those little-known caves in the mountains is not worthy of a successful old god. What did the immortal cheat? Money and sex? Or is it a package of tattered books? Wang Yuanlu took his breath, and the implication was to remind the ancestor who had just recognized that these books, regardless of whether they are family members, give 100 taels of silver, without the snowflakes of the gods on the mountain. Money. Wang Yuanlu should be honored old ancestors. Besides, since it's a single pass, your old man can pull out some silver from his nails for his juniors. Isn't it too much? As long as he can sell those books, he will immediately turn his head and go back to the hometown to find a good-looking mother-in-law and marry him. It doesn't matter how old he is, he will be a big child and he will be good for childbirth. Anyway, his age is not too young. Baby. Even if he still couldn't get the status of a Guangzhong Yaozu Taoist official, he still had the incense stick. At that time, Wang Yuanlu, where did he know that his future life was such a life on the mountain that he could not even think of? Yuaning was a little strange. In his impression, Wang Yuanlu, who was at the same table drinking with his future mate, was so cautious as to be with a countryman and a thin bamboo pole. Even if he was sitting and drinking, he didn't dare to straighten up. Met Lu Tai, that kind of shame and filth came out of his bones, and he didn't seem to know how to conceal that humbleness. How come to Sun Lao Guanz's side, be so open and speak magnificently? Lu Tai smiled and explained with his heart, this Wang Yuanlu will be great and he will become more powerful as he goes back. If Bai Yujing hasn't taken him seriously and let him go, he will suffer a lot in the future. Yuaning was quite surprised. It seemed that Lu Gongzi had a higher evaluation of Wang Yuanlu than Su Jun. Yuaning asked. Bai Yujing's masters who are proficient in hexagrams and images are not among the few, right? Lu Tai took out a folding fan from his sleeve, tapped Yuan Ying's head and said with a smile, I don't understand what I don't understand. Of course I know it so, but deliberately didn't take it seriously. That really invincible feels that he is really invincible. Chant. Yuan Ying smiled and narrowed his eyes. Lu Tai opened the folding fan and the Lord came. He is a burly Taoist man with a fishtail crown on his head, feather robe, and a fairy sword in his hand. Delay the month and you're done. Qi Tingji and Lu Ji took the lead to return to the Great Wall of Jianghu. The two sides did not go to the head of the city, and their bodies fell on the southern ground. The latest engraver in Qingtu, the hidden official Chen Pingon. Qi Tingji raised his head to look at the big character at the highest point, smiled and said, Don't you have any taste? The sword repairman who wanted to engrave the Great Wall of Sword Qi most was of course Lu Ji. A Liang has already engraved the lettering, and the left and right don't care about this kind of thing at all. Even if an ascending demon is killed, he may not even be willing to engrave. In a Liang's words, this guy is too ugly to be embarrassed. But it doesn't matter, you can do it for yourself. Lu Ji curled his lips, don't dare, for fear of being held hostage. Qi Tingji was a little surprised. Lu Ji could tell a joke? It's just a bit cold. Lu Ji asked curiously, If you cut and ascended again in the future, will you still engrave here? In the battlefield of the Great Wall of Sword, the reason why it was difficult to kill the ascending realm Great Demon was not because Tingji's swordsmanship was not high enough and the killing power was not enough, but the Great Demon escaped too easily. But now the situation of the two worlds is reversed. With Tingji's strength, there is a complete opportunity to catch and kill a certain ascendant monster at the end of the road, and then decapitate with the sword. Tingji shook his head. It's best to end with the word ping. The sword repairer's life here is like floating and not sinking. A city soars, taking root in wuxialover. With the addition of those sword fairy embryos, it is like duckweed scattered across the world. Today's foreign land, over time, will become their hometowns in the future. Tingji raised his head and looked at the other half of the city. Our hidden official has fallen a lot. Lu Ji was a little worried. Is the price too high? Tingji wondered, what's the matter with that monster sword repairer? Why did you drink alcohol with Master Lu? Lu Xun was at the head of the city, waved to Lu Ji and shouted with a smile, Sister Lu Ji, here and here. Lu Ji and Tingji went to the city with the wind. After landing, Lu Ji looked confused. Is something? The person who wants to follow Master Lu to visit by Yujing is Haosu, not me. Lu Chen lifted his chin towards Lu Ji, smiled and said nothing. It turned out that Lu Ji at this moment was still holding a handful of Nanming, and he couldn't put it down, and he was also very easy to do with his waist. A herring flies around Lu Ji, swinging its tail leisurely. Lu Ji did not speak either. Qin Pingan said, I'm fine. Ning Yao will return soon. Tingji smiled, Haosu won't go back here, just let me give you a message saying that the sword repairman who is now in the Qingming world will let you rest assured, he will help to stare, in short, will not let people bully casually, although he dare not promise to protect the shelter casually. He has the life of Jianxiu, saying that he is not a hidden official like you after all, and he can't be the housewife who cares about everything, but he can guarantee that once a Jianxiu accidentally dies in a foreign land he will never get revenge. Qin Pingan nodded and said, this is enough. In a sense, Haosu didn't perform his duties as a criminal officer at the Great Wall of Jianxi. He never thought that he chose to be a criminal officer in the Qingming world. The deterrence of an ascending realm swordsman, no matter which world he is in, is huge. In particular, Haosu had personally killed the ascended realm monks in the Haoran world, under the noses of the Temple of Confucianism and the Sage of Li. Qin Pingan turned his head and said to Lu Xun, Teacher Lu, you can help me ask Haosu, would you like to separate some of the merits of the moon discussed with you by Yujing? You can kill an ascendant realm in the future on by Yujing's side. Don't take responsibility. Lu Qin had a headache. You have to ask the second senior brother about this matter. He is really in charge. I don't dare to pack a ticket at this moment. Taking care of things is not the style of the three-handed master, but hiding things is his way of doing things. Qin Pingan smiled and said, you can let Haosu make your sword as much as possible within the 100 years of your time in by Yujing, and you can also be considered as a step down a step for that invincible. Isn't it always okay? What's more, unlikely to take the initiative. Lu Qin helplessly said, okay, I'm afraid of you. Pang Dao just discussed with the second senior brother about Mo had to drink and be courageous and dare to speak. The disposition of my two brothers is well known in the world, and he is notoriously indifferent to the poor Dao. Pleasing to the eye, picky in every way, just hope that the poor say goodbye to doing bad things. Besides, the poor Dao has to put the ugly words first. By Yujing's side, the 5th floor and 12 cities, there is no distinction between superior and inferior. According to the decree made by my senior brother in the early years, there are only a few major rules. Besides, most of the things all the city masters, to be able to reject the will of the 3 masters according to their own preferences, and it is completely possible to refuse to respect them. No matter what, Pang Dao will try his best to facilitate this. In fact, Yudo is quite optimistic about the sword repair of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. The reason is very simple, the sword immortal line of Dashuan Duguan really dominates the world. Too much kendo luck. Dashuan Duguan was once said to be the Great Wall of Sword Qi in the vast world. Then this saying that sincerely praised Taoist temple and Sun Daochang became widely circulated. As a result, he annoyed Sun Lao Guanzhu. It is said that the old Dao was so angry that he could scold me, but how could he scold Jianqi the Great Wall? Pai Dian came to the door, so that the ascended realm monk who was the first to put forward this statement must take back this sentence. Otherwise the matter is endless. Even if the friendship that our brothers have accumulated for thousands of years is lost, it will be completely ended from now on. Let's get off the beam. The other party had to report to the world through the Zhongmen Shanshui mansion, holding his nose bitterly and giving a new statement that Dashuan is not the Great Wall of Jiangxi in the Qingming world. This was the contented old master, patted the good brother on the shoulder, reminding the other person to pay attention in the future, spit a nail and not talk nonsense. This kind of remark in fact came out of Sun Daicheng's mouth. How it sounds wrong. Qin Pingan said, "There's something I have to trouble sect Master Qi and Mrs. Yan Yan. There is a green plum view on Nantang Lake in Beipingzu. More than 10,000 ancient plum trees have been carefully planted. Most of them are dead. Turn around and ask her to take a trip. See if there is any way to save it. I will definitely not let her go for nothing." Qi Tingji nodded and said, "Well, she is now anxious to have a legitimate reason to return to Howran to visit the surrounding areas. The old master of the plum garden is really afraid of death. Staying in the wild world, she feels distressed every day. She always feels that being on the battlefield is too dangerous. She has changed her way to find a few crappy excuses and wants to return to the South Pasuajo sect to stay." Qin Pingan introduced with a smile, "This fellow Shizhu Taoist will return to the Howran world with me, and will serve as an anonymous offering to Luapa Mountain for several years." An ancient great demon who was soaring to the top of the realm, slightly restrained, stood up and straightened up again, smiled and said, "Just call me Xiaoma." Seeing Qi Tingji was greatly surprised. Lu Ji didn't care at all. He was the best enemy, just hacked to death. "I just don't have any lettering. It's nothing more than giving up a natal flying sword in exchange for a city head lettering, no loss." Lu Qin clasped his fist and said, "Farewell. Pang Dao will go to the gate of the sky first, and then go directly to the Howran world. The green mountains will not change to the long stream of green water." As a result, no one gave a kind words. Xiao Mo intends to wait for his son to speak first, and then exchange a few words with Lu Daoyu who has met him. Lu Qin kept the fist-in-hand posture. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Master Lu has met Senior Gu, don't forget to visit Yunxia Mountain." Qi Tingji followed, "I will have the opportunity to visit Master Lu in the Qingming world in the future." Lu Ji said, "I'm not going." Only then did Xiao Mo say goodbye. "Farewell Lu Daoyu, don't let it go, there will be a period later." Lu Qin felt a little better now. Qin Pingan stood up suddenly and bid farewell to Lu Qin with a fist. The next time the two parties return, it will probably be by Yujing in the Qingming world. The two sides are no longer the identities of the last hermit and the awe-inspiring Lu Shen. It is the identity of Liju Dongtian Qin Pingan and by Yujing's three head teachers. Lu Qin smiled slightly and nodded slightly, turning into a rainbow to go to the sky. Confirming that Lu Qin is far away from the city, Lu Ji asked in his heart, "Qin Pingan, what about this sword box? She really likes it. What's more, it's easy to use." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Lu Qin will definitely return to Howran in the future. If you go to Nan Pasuajo to find you first, don't care what he says, just push to my side and make sure you don't let your mouth go saying that this deal, the buyer and the seller are Master Lu and Qin Pingan. Of course the sword box will be returned, but Qin Pingan has to show up to discuss the matter in person, or Master Lu will retrieve the sword box at that time, and then go to the Luapa mountainside to bluff, deliberately making a deal and want to make too money. There will be unkindness. But if Lu Qin finds me first next time, it would be better. I will hold him for a while, leave him as a guest in Luapa Mountain, and inform you in private. You will find a place first. Avoid him, such as Baidi City, or the merits of the Confucian Temple Lin, Shenkong Temple where the monk knows well." After 3 or 2 times, Master Lu knew it in his heart. Lu Ji nodded frequently. In fact, her original intention was that if it really didn't work, she would ask Master Hermit to discuss with Master Lu. She was willing to spend money to buy a sword box, but she was still good at cutting people. Alone is not good at bargaining with people, can't wipe the face, so I want to ask Qin Pingan to help negotiate the price. Anyway, this trip I made a lot of money, a lot of treasures and gods, in case I will spend it again. No, when the money is not enough she will take credit. The big deal is to let the Dragon Elephant Sword sect or Qin Pingan will make up for it first. Women's shopping fun is actually half of the bargaining price. Lu Ji is just not good at bargaining, but that doesn't mean she doesn't like bargaining. In fact, Lu Qin didn't care so much about the sword box, this thing was rather tasteless to him. Of course, Qin Pingan didn't really want to help Lu Ji hay down the sword box. He had already thought that the coral pen holder that was taken away by Lu Qin would return half of all the proceeds from the former Dragon Palace site in the future. With Lu Ji's temperament, when she enters the Ascension realm in the future, she will definitely travel the colorful world first, and then go to the Qingming world. So Lu Ji just couldn't say it and couldn't take it seriously. Xiao Mo reminded softly, "Is the sun waiting for Dao Lu to return to the city?" Qin Pingan smiled and nodded. Qi Tingji took the lead to return to the ferry, leaving Lu Ji, waiting for Ning Yao to return before leaving. While waiting for Ning Yao, Qin Pingan glanced at the far south. There were no more cultivation bases in the 14 realms. Even with exhaustive eyesight, he couldn't see the scenery too far away. Thinking of a trivial matter, I slowly checked my memory, and chose the location of the teacher in the xianxia school in the future. The location is far away from Luapa Mountain, too far or too close, but Huang Tinghua seems to be pretty good. At the former site of the Heavenly Court, over the Golden Arch Bridge, beside Zhoumi, a woman always stood on the railing. Under the blue sky, Yudo, known as the Invincible, relied on a world of great roads and days to reveal a majestic Dharma statue, holding a bright moon in his hand and walking in the void. Ning Yao Yujin returns to the world. Li Sheng and Bai Zhe, who had hit the sky all the way, returned separately. The Qin Pingan in Dalijing City overlapped with Qin Pingan, who had returned from the Great Wall of Jianxi. Qingshan is back with a sword, and a snow-white spider is parked on his shoulder. Ning Yao followed Qin Pingan, and the two walked to the inn together. An old scholar sitting at the entrance of the inn basking in the sun, holding melon seeds in his hand, seeming to be eating melon seeds, but there are actually few melon seeds on the bench. It seemed that I was just sitting like this, waiting for people to return home. Only when I saw the closed disciple named Qin Pingan, he was really safe, and the old man came to eat melon seeds again. You're tuning in to this Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.